Imagine world suddenly plunged into an ice age. Outside, temperatures have dropped to a steady minus 60 degrees Celsius. In such conditions, heat and food have become the most valuable resources in the frozen concrete jungle of South Korea. The survivors initially tried to survive together, but quickly realized that there weren't enough resources for everyone, and then a real war broke out in the cold corridors of apartment buildings. But amid all this chaos, there is one guy, Hang Feng, who is fearless in his fortified base with heat, girls, and plenty of food. He is a regressor who not only went back in time before the apocalypse began and prepared himself properly, but also gained superpowers that allow him to clone and increase the size of food. He didn't stop there, and later built himself a real fortified base with heat, greenhouses, and even a sauna. So, how did it all begin? Let's find out. The transmission cuts off into silence and is replaced by the roaring voice of someone calling out Han Feng. The guy is making his way to open the door while quivering in the cold. Peeping through the hole, he discovers that it's actually his crush Hyona, who can't stand being in the cold and can barely talk. He opens the door without hesitation to see if she's doing all right, and quickly invites her inside. In an unexpected turn of events, Hyona leaps up to kiss him, much to Han Feng's shock and amazement. She's out here putting in effort in the kiss, because by the end of it, bro is at a loss for words and can't describe what's gotten into her all of a sudden. Keep in mind, she was supposed to be his crush, so the dude is probably feeling like a gigachad on the inside for finally scoring a win. It's at this moment Hyona confesses her feelings, stating how she's always loved him. After descending balls deep into a terrifying apocalypse, she has begun to understand that someone like him truly cares about others. To sell her point even more, Hyona makes him touch her body so that he can sense her racing heartbeat, stating that she's ready to do anything with him. And yes, that's the honey trap that our guy ends up falling for. Because while he's busy out here imagining the birds and the bees, Hyona doubles down on rubbing her thigh between his legs, causing him to get even more lost and careless in his feelings. He also shares his feelings right back, stating that while she truly means the world to him, it doesn't make sense for them to behave this way right now. Hyona is an excellent manipulator because she tells our boy to close his eyes so that he can enjoy the process. Full of joy, he closes his eyes, questioning what's going to happen next. He's probably got the excitement of a child while this is happening. But then, well, dude's first kiss with his crush is followed up by his skull getting bashed by her bastard boyfriend. A heavy smash against his head leaves his body in a puddle of blood. Poor guy is quivering in pain while Hyona expresses her terror. She wasn't expecting them to actually murder someone in cold blood. But her boyfriend reminds the bitch that she can't play innocent, when from the beginning they both understood this guy had to go. They weren't going to spare Han Feng, not when everyone in this world is out for themselves in the apocalypse. Instead of caring about him, they express their happiness having discovered Han Feng's resources and loot. As for the nice guy who tried to show someone kindness, well, he's eating shit right now, drenched in his own blood and unable to move. The clinging of death succumbs to him, and the last thing he sees is Hyona getting excited with her man. His demise happened all because of one ruthless woman's planning, so in his final moment, he makes a vow. If he's given a second chance, he's going to stop being someone else's toy to be used and discarded. As his consciousness fades to black, the terrifying feeling is replaced by a shimmer warm light, drawing him near and near. At first he thinks it's a way for him to get into heaven. But then, his innocent expectations are tarnished as his spiritual body experiences a world of pain and bursts into 100 pieces. By the end of that traumatizing sequence, he jolts up awake from his bed, his face is full of sweat and he questions his surroundings. Han Feng was just fading away just a few seconds ago, and now he's okay. It's not just that he's fine, the world is fine too. There's no signs of an apocalypse. The sun is warm even after 30 minutes of waiting. It's the kind of warmth that he never expected to see again. From the calendar, Han Feng checked and learned that today was June 28. The date of the apocalypse in the original timeline is supposed to start on July 15th. This means that he had a post-death regression that led him to arrive back in time just a few weeks before the apocalypse. The feeling of shock, amazement, and confusion all show up on his face. He clearly wasn't expecting to be reborn, but this time he's returned with a few changes. Let's talk about that glowing red hand for a second. Ever since Han Feng regained consciousness, this guy's hand just can't stop glowing red. He tries waving it off, and yet nothing happens. To describe the sensation, the glow feels warm and it doesn't hurt or anything. At first, he thought that his mind was playing tricks on the guy, but then Han Feng sneezed out of nowhere, leading to yet another intriguing development. The same hand that was red a second ago is now glowing a bright green, adding even more to his confusion. But there's a difference this time, because Han Feng actually loses control of the magnitude of his glowing power, causing it to get even bigger. In a state of hurry and panic, he stands there looking lost at his newfound problem. The radiating glow out of nowhere starts shrinking in his hand. The behavior of the glowing effect is odd and different from the red one. Taking a seat, he expresses his sudden drop in energy. Yeah, ever since the green one activated, his body has been more drained than ever. Frustratingly waving his hand in anger, Han Feng comes to a sudden realization. This is exactly happening just like those awesome manhwa stories he likes to read. In the same fashion, the main character is reborn, and this time with overpowered abilities. So in order to test his own, Bro pulls out a damn knife, hoping for some miracle to happen. But funnily, nothing goes his way as the blade doesn't react and he's standing there looking like a clown. Not to mention his tummy is grumbling because of the energy loss he experienced. Checking his fridge turns out to be a waste of time because there's just nothing in there. The situation is growing more troublesome for him than he thought. He has to eat at least something or he's going to risk going unconscious again. An idea comes to mind when he spots a jar of roasted soybeans, the only snacks that could be feasibly used in the apocalypse. Even though it's not a proper meal, it's filling enough for now. Reaching for one of the beans, he pops one in his mouth, but the moment he does that, the soybean explodes into a fully grown bean plant. His radiating glowing green hand is gone, and so is his exhaustion. Han Feng doesn't get if it had something to do with the soybeans, or if it's something he did. He grabs and pops open one of the bean sprouts, amazed to discover that this is his new power. Han Feng is impressed and wants to study it intensely, but with his current state, he has a couple of issues to take care of firsthand. First up is stocking up on supplies so he doesn't go short during the apocalypse. To the supermarket he goes. In the next scene, he's navigating through a busy crowd, all of them lost in their thoughts and chattering about. Han Feng is confused and collects his thoughts. So far, he's got 2 types of radiating hands, and the green one is known to be more unstable, causing him added effects of exhaustion. Then there's the last part, perhaps the most interesting of the bunch. The moment he touched the soybeans with his glowing hand, they became proper bean sprouts. He still can't figure out the specifics of his power, causing his frustration. While he's lost in thought, a familiar voice graces his ears. Hyona, the same bitch that betrayed him in his previous life, is here to see him. She's drop-dead gorgeous, but that's the thing. Getting involved with her is literally going to drop you 6 feet under the ground. Han Feng is pretty shocked to run into her again like this. A little more background on his crush. Lee Hyona has been his long-lost crush for 3 years straight. He played every trick in the book to get her to like him back. But deep down, our boy knew he was just a backup, if anything. And now, after what happened to him, after the way she deceived him and got him murdered in cold blood, he is pissed. Rage is filling up his body, but he's not the type to go ballistic on someone considering his situation of being reborn. Han Feng assures himself and calms him down, hoping to take his revenge properly some other time. For now, he's got some supplies to gather. Hyona shows concern for the guy, waving her hand in an effort to grab his attention because he appears spaced out. Trying his best to maintain politeness with her, he praises Hyona for being so beautiful that it stunned him for a bit. She calls him a smooth talker in return, and thinks that it's a good opportunity to invite him out to go shopping. But even with her attempt, the girl gets straight up rejected as he moves past Hyona like she's not even worth paying attention to. This gives her a reality check so hard that she's lost for words. The reality is, Han Feng fully understands that she's only being so kind as to invite him so that she can use him as a personal bank for her own groceries. He's done being someone else's pet, so that won't happen anymore. The Waldemar Shopping Plaza is known to be the most well-stocked supermarket in the region. In the original timeline, the moment the Arctic apocalypse began, this place was cleaned up and emptied up in a single night. It's still unknown who managed to rob it like that. But for now, Han Feng's objective is to stock up as much as humanly possible. Being intelligent, he actually discovered a survival guide list to get all the stuff he needs. Stuff like food, winter clothing, medicine, necessities, fuel, and a whole bunch of other useful items. Well, while he's got a huge shopping list, there comes a second problem. Bro doesn't have enough money to do shit. While he's sulking, the guy receives a sudden message, proving him eligible to grab a giant loan of 170,000 yuan for this year. It's just the lottery ticket he needed after all. Who the hell is going to repay debt during the apocalypse anyway? And so, using all of the loan apps he could find on the internet, Han Feng began twiddling his fingers, making sure he got loans from everywhere. The scene switches to Hyona, who is pretty damn frustrated with the way he treated her today. This bitch is a stuck-up who can't get over the fact that her personal simp refused her like that. It tells you a lot about her personality, but I'm sure more didn't need to be said after she got the guy killed in his previous life. Hyona is cursing Han Feng for being a pathetic loser without a car and doesn't expect to be nice to him anytime in the future. Speaking of the devil, a car drives up to her and honks at her. Hyona's reaction is one of shock when she discovers that the driver is actually the same guy she was talking shit about. It's Han Feng. He drops by to talk to her, stating how he purchased the vehicle just now. After all, his father has been making a ton of money in the States, so it's only natural he sent over some cash for him to have fun with. He also tells her that he was busy taking his father to the airport. This fact actually cools her down, making her think that she was turned down because he had an important job to attend. She apologizes for asking him out during an important time. In usual Gaslighter Pro Max Girl Edition fashion, she acts cute while crying and complaining about how cruel he was. Han Feng's reaction is interesting to say the least. First he calls her foolish, and then grabs her close, stating that he won't ever ditch someone like Hyona, as she's far too important to him. The arrogant chick thinks that she's scored the lottery, so she plays on his feelings again, hoping to manipulate him by saying that she feels the same way about him. She recommends watching a movie with him and having some nice dinner. But right as she's saying these things, our boy says peace the fuck out and is already tending to his luggage. He complains about how busy he is with the stuff he's got to take back. Even Hyuna is stupefied as to why he bought so much stuff out of the blue. In return, Han Feng plays it cool and says it's because he wanted to. To raise her expectations, he tells her that he also got Hyuna a present. Feeling all happy and bubbled up, she decides to head home, hoping to see it later. As she's leaving, Hyona's got a really satisfied look on her face, thinking she killed that. But she doesn't know that our boy also shares the exact same look on his face. They're both manipulating the other, and it just so happens that he is never going to let out the secrets of his stockpile. It's the one ticket he's got of surviving this damned apocalypse. When that moment comes, when the world sinks into despair and destruction, Han Feng fully intends to take his revenge on the bastard who killed him as well as Hyuna. He also confesses that it's making him eager to enjoy the apocalypse this time. Yeah, something tells me Hyuna is about to eat shit, and it's going to be really damn satisfying when that happens. The day of the apocalypse is only 2 weeks far. That day, immense heavy snow will cover the planet, and the temperatures will drop close to -20 degrees Celsius. Over the course of the next month, all temperatures will experience a gradual drop, reaching the likes of -70 degrees, and the world will be fully covered in snow. Going outside will become physically impossible, and that's the reason food is so important. He's brought all the stuff back to his apartment, fully packing it with proper covering so that no one suspects him of hoarding supplies. For the most troublesome supplies, he's going to make sure to move them at night when no one's around. Speaking of the apocalypse, a secondary issue will come in the form of power supply. With its instability, fuel is going to be necessary. And it just so happens that Han Feng has purchased a year's worth of fuel to make sure nothing goes wrong. To combat his next problem, he knows that the heating systems cannot function anymore, so he brought a construction crew to alter his house properly, adjusting it so that everything is reinforced and resistant against the apocalypse to come. Finally, he's made up a dedicated room for supplies and inventory, so that nobody suspects him and that he can access anything whenever he wants. By the time he wrapped up all of his preparations, July 14th was already upon him. Now, there was only 1 day left before the temperature annihilated itself to an uncontrollable degree. With all of his preparations finished, the final item on his checklist is to study his superpower. In order to get out of this winter apocalypse without freezing to death, even Han Feng knows that relying on his supplies won't be enough for him to survive. And it's here when his plant-based powers will come into play as a beacon of hope. In front of him are the same soybeans that he actually managed to grow using his own powers. And now it's time for the taste test. The issue is, he's yet to figure out the main trigger for his ability. But anyway, Han Feng decides to take a spoonful and, despite his fears, hopes that this food is edible at the least. After finishing up half the plate, it's safe to conclude that these beans aren't producing any terrible effects. This means that he can safely produce and eat food using this power. But the tricky part is figuring out how or what makes his hand glow like that. Based on his experimentation, he's only tried his ability on soybeans, so he inspects his fridge, hoping to find some other veggies to try it on. Noon is quickly followed by the evening. A drowsy and weak Han Feng opens his eyes, questioning if he ended up passing out just now. He's holding broccoli in his hand, and the kitchen is splattered with vegetables. He can't even think properly because of the exhausting effects of his own power. That's the only drawback so far. Eating the same soybeans from earlier, he comments on how this way, he successfully managed to learn something new about his ability. Let's talk about what went down right before he went unconscious. He ordered a bunch of stuff down to test his power and used it on a different set of plants. Here's the strange part. Some of the plants were completely non-reactive. But as for others, seeds, for example, grew into proper plants, just like what he experimented with the soybeans. There's also a third category. Some of them detonated right in his hand, which remains to be a mystery as to why. Han Feng also discovered the charred substances that shared the appearance of coal upon their detonation. But it's a good thing because these same substances can be stored and later reused to provide warmth. With this, he successfully found a way to keep himself warm in the harsh apocalypse to come. Excited, he concentrated on honing his powers and experimenting on a few more. While he was failing at first, when Han Feng tries focusing his power, the magical effects are prominent, giving him what he wants. The guy was deprived of energy and went down on the floor. Back to the present, he appears to be really confused about the logic of his own power. Some plants work, others don't. It's hard to find what works and what doesn't. Still, from this experience, he's realized the key part of the trigger. It's actually imbued into his consciousness. So he tries meditating on an ethereal experience where he is one with nature, an experience that connects his mind and body all the same. The fruits of his imagination end up becoming successful, because right after opening his eyes, Han Feng is satisfied to discover his glowing green hand. This confirms his suspicion that his ability is linked to his consciousness. To test it out even more, he tries his ability on a bunch of meat for good measure. Poor guy finds himself disappointed when it doesn't work on meat, because that would mean he's got to live off of plants for the rest of his life. Even after concentrating and begging his powers to work, nothing happens. This makes him question his thoughts again. Remember his meditation technique? When he does that, he experiences two unique colors, one being red and the other green. And so far, he's only experimented with green. So this time, he closes his eyes shut, hoping to connect his mind to his second ability. To his shock, his hand starts glowing red and affects the meat, turning it into a disgusting spiky blob that is barely recognizable anymore. Feeling so disgusted by the effects, he tosses the meat on the ground and approaches it slowly for another inspection. Han Feng pinches the meat and then grabs it again, questioning if the meat reacted to his red radiating light. It also seems like the meat was cooked properly, which begs the question if the red light is only responsible for heating stuff up. Inspecting his hand again, he starts to realize something. It's not that the meat was cooked, no. It's the opposite. This thing is actually reverting back to a process of disintegration. From this revelation, he's found a discovery. The green light speeds up the evolutionary process, and the red light slows it down immensely, reverting it into disintegration. In an effort to combine the two, he clasps his hands together with the meat. A burst of yellow forms and the same meat turns into a larger slab than ever before. But that makes him question what happened to the soybeans that he also had in his hand. They disappeared, which probably means they merged with the meat in some way. Han Feng is really amazed by the output of his own powers, as after further inspection, he comes to the conclusion that the meat is the freshest he's ever seen. He's excited and wants to try it out one more time. But his luck isn't so kind to him, because bro ends up failing so bad that everything turns to black. He's slamming his hands on the floor in frustration, but eventually settles with patience. There's lots of time for him to experiment with his powers. He's happy that he got to make a whole bunch of different discoveries in just one day. If only he can master this ability to its fullest. Bro thinks he's going to become Superman and stand at the top of the world. But then the idiot realizes that food isn't the only thing that's necessary to save his life. Right now, he needs a weapon to protect himself from other humans. Right as he's thinking of going out to buy a weapon, the realization dawns on him. The apocalypse has begun. Just like last time, the world is experiencing an absurd amount of snow in July. He goes out regardless, believing that it's necessary to find a gun before temperatures reach -45 degrees. At the same time, he can't exactly buy a gun when it's illegal in the country. As he's busy in thought, he sees a broccoli hairpunk ranting about how he's the younger brother of Lao Wang from the Shigang Lida group. You know, the typical "my brother's got more money than you" tactic for winning petty arguments. Han Feng actually recognizes this clown from somewhere, thanks to his shitty fashion style and all. The funniest shit is how the people have decided to dub a name for this guy, calling him Homeless Joe. Let's talk about Li Zi, or Homeless Joe, who lives in the same neighborhood as him. The guy's known to be a contractor who has networks with everyone around. People come around asking him what's up and what's going on. And he acts like he's the busiest dude in the block, about how he's so busy dealing with his projects with his big brother. Bro doesn't even have a job, and he's always seen whining on his phone, pretending like he's got millions and millions on a project to spend some time on. Seeing this guy, Han Feng wonders if the idiot can help him get the weapon he needs. He greets Homeless Joe and pretends to know him for a while. So the thing is, this guy doesn't really know our boy at all. Han Feng pretends to be Xiao Han, taking advantage of his pride and acting like they're long-lost friends who should remember each other. The homeless idiot gives into the bait and apologizes for not remembering, especially when he's got so much work to do. Han Feng checks his surroundings and quickly closes in on the punk, explaining his entire situation. When he's done explaining, Homeless Joe experiences a jolt of shock, questioning what the hell this dude needs a gun for. At this point, Han Feng is at a loss for words. Before he can even whip out a proper excuse, the blonde punk warns him that guns aren't something to be taken lightly, because they're illegal. Even though he's got connections that can get him weapons, that doesn't mean Homeless Joe is in the mood to get into some kind of dangerous business. Han Feng clarifies his situation, stating that he needs it for self-defense because some people have a grudge against him. He talks about a made-up story of how he ran into a guy on his way to work. They were both on a bike, and that man carelessly spat in his face. Of course, it pissed him the heck off, so he confronted the clown and started beating the crap out of him for everyone to watch. After humiliating him, he left the man to his way. The man actually held a grudge and told him that he'd return with his buddies. And so the very next day, Bro got destroyed by the entire gang. They were clowning on him and roughened Han Feng top to bottom. After that beatdown, he's been wanting to have a self-defense weapon to protect himself. Luckily, Homeless Joe is sympathetic for his story and makes a huge deal that spitting on someone is definitely a step too far. He thinks this kind of behavior should be punished, but Han Feng is starting to think that maybe this guy ended up missing the damn point of his complaining. Still, Homeless Joe wraps his arm around him like a guardian angel and promises to save the day. He's gonna make his call to his big brother, and everything will be sorted out. Han Feng is glad that things are going his way. Homeless Joe recommends they take the boss because his luxurious car is being serviced right now. Han Feng is okay with that, showing Homeless Joe that he's got a vehicle for them to work with. As they're driving their way, Homeless Joe is shocked and asks about the price of the car. Our boy reveals that it cost him $700,000, which appears to be a pretty good deal in his eyes. Bro is out here snapping pictures like he's some kind of Instagram heartthrob. The hilarious part is that he captions it as if the SUV is his own. Speaking of the big brother he talks about, his punks are out chilling with a fire, commentating on the absurd weather conditions. Han Feng's car stops by and Homeless Joe pops right out. The guy is out here acting smug and shit. The rest of his boys can't believe that Homeless Joe's got his own SUV now. And this guy is such a slimeball that he even tells them he bought it for $700,000 of his own pocket. Han Feng is left with the impression that Homeless Joe is seriously quite bold for saying something like that in front of the owner of the vehicle. In the next scene, the punk brings Han Feng to his boss. As you can guess from a gang leader, dude's got tattoos all over his body. He's displeased to see his brother here and immediately shows the blonde punk the door. To that, Homeless Joe puts all the pressure on Han Feng, stating that his friend over here wants to buy a gun. The gang leader is surprised at first and gives our boy a mean-ass look. Han Feng is terrified, while the boss is a bit annoyed that they came all the way here in search of one lousy gun instead of something more interesting by comparison. The boss tells his lackey to fetch a handgun, which is tossed over to Han Feng for a price of $6,000. However, our boy isn't in the mood to play around with tiny dick pistols. Nah, he's here planning to go full John Wick mode and requests a longer weapon with a scope. The boss is alarmed by the kid's audacity and confronts him for demanding a goddamn sniper rifle. He reminds Han Feng that he isn't here in a position to negotiate or search around as if this were his own shopping mall. Yep, the boss is a stuck-up guy who is going angry for no reason. That's where Homeless Joe and his stories come to the front. He whips another one of his stories again. This time it's about Han Feng's wife who cheated on him 3 times. By the end of that storytelling session, the boss throws up a furious tantrum, feeling rageful on our boy's sake. The ridiculous stories are movie material from the looks of it. Anyway, the boss agrees to the request of a sniper rifle at last, stating that it's still going to take a few days. Han Feng is grateful that his request is being tended to. Chengzi, the underling, is told to arrange a semi-auto for him as well. The boss has actually decided to take pity on him and has thrown in a free gun as a gift for the guy. Han Feng is truly starstruck when he sees him offering the handgun without any cost. Returning his gratitude, our boy decides to slip up an important piece of information to the gang. He talks about how he's friends with the government and how the weather conditions are only going to get worse from here on out. This means it's best to stock up on supplies quickly because they will run out soon. This time, Han Feng maintains an air of seriousness in his gaze, adding on to the weight of his advice. The boss agrees to take his advice, and that's how they ended up concluding the meeting with the boss. Returning back, Homeless Joe talks about how he handled that meeting like a pro mediator. He also thinks that it's good that his brother was in a pleasant mood today. Han Feng is really grateful and even hopes to buy him a bunch of cigarettes. Homeless Joe puts up an act of goodness at first, but then eventually caves into his offer. The funniest thing is how he's requesting 8 cartons full of cigarettes for the job, thinking that it should be an easy request. While he's ranting about, Han Feng is focusing on his checklist. He's got everything he needs for the apocalypse now, and the rest of the time will be spent studying his abilities. The only thing he's got to solve is how to work around his food troubles, and then it will be all smooth sailing from there. Right as he's confidently going about his plans, Bro slips right in front of Homeless Joe and takes a really bad fall. Han Feng's leg is in shambles as he quivers in pain. Homeless Joe doesn't even know what the hell happened so suddenly. Our boy has strong suspicions that he probably broke his leg. He hands Joe the keys to help drive them to the hospital. Staring at him in silence, the blonde punk shamefully reveals that he doesn't even have a driver's license. So instead, he's got to take the old school approach. The punk tries to help our boy lean on his side, but the scene is so damn depressing that Han Feng orders a taxi to avoid the torture. In the next scene, we're at the hospital. In the receptionist area, Ji Yun, the head nurse, is working the night shift, and observes how the snow is only getting heavier with every hour. Suddenly, she receives an emergency call to come to the hall as they're short on staff. By the way, our boy really did end up breaking his damn leg. He's at the hospital, devastated to receive the report of his fracture. An hour of observation is necessary before he can leave with his meds. He planned for everything just for a random factor to knock everything out the window. Brother Lee bids him farewell, stating that he's got a bunch of deals to take care of because of his super busy schedule and all. Well, that brings Han Feng back to square one. He's all on his own, and this time he's got a bad leg to take care of too. The hospital is swarmed with people. There's a sudden uprise in patients because of the insane weather conditions and alarming temperatures. It only shows how bad the situation is going to get outside in a few weeks. Han Feng is busy waiting for his medicines, but the queue is just way too long. He spots the pretty head nurse in the distance, who is currently helping around by checking the patient's pulse. She's quite reliant in the hospital, so the doctors and other nurses are happy to make use of her. While she's doing her business, it knocks the wind out of our boy. Han Feng is swooned and fails to believe that someone can be a head nurse at such a young age. She's also extremely kind to every patient, not to mention her adorable looks from top to bottom. Yup, he's simping again, but this time for a different lady. While he's admiring her looks, an old man requests for her aid and she comes rushing to see him. He tells her that his back is suddenly hurting, but Jinyan can't help but remind him that they're already short-staffed, so it's going to take a while to take his request. The real goal of this sleazy old man is to take advantage of the head nurse. He slips a camera just below her legs to take a photo while she's clueless and tending to the request. She promises to get back to him with an X-ray when they're less overwhelmed. But the old geezer doesn't stop there. He goes on full PDF file mode and grabs a hold of her body. The naive head nurse still doesn't suspect anything and assures him that a proper physician will be here soon enough to examine the patient properly. But here's the issue. The old geezer doubles down and cops a feel of the hospital's finest bakery. Before he can pull more shit, our boy throws his damn crutch in his face, making him fall to the ground. The head nurse is alarmed and questions if the old man is okay, while Han Feng apologizes for not knowing how to use a crutch. Yes, because when you don't know about something, you throw it right at someone with full speed. Han Feng acts like he's checking on the old man's phone, right as the old geezer shouts at him to stop. Our boy spots the picture in his gallery and gets pissed. He can't believe that this bastard not only snapped a photo of the nurse but also had the gall to touch her like that. He confronts him at once, threatening to call the security on him to have the old geezer escorted to a cell. After all, it would make for one less annoying patient in the hospital, especially one who is there to take advantage of others. Also, Han Feng is in no mood to return the phone, promising to release the report on social media if he catches the creep pulling stuff like this ever again. Unable to do anything, the old man runs away in frustration. Yes, the same guy who was having back problems 1 second ago can suddenly sprint faster than light, right out of the hospital. Even the head nurse is at a loss for words with how fast he ran. Meanwhile, Han Feng is left with the impression that some people are truly at the height of naivete in their world. He shows her the photo and points out how the guy had ill intentions from the beginning. Han Feng is okay with her handling this situation, and even hands her the phone to report to the police. Jinyun is really happy and retrieves the device, but she's also got an alarming question. Wasn't Han Feng's ankle injured? And that reminds him he's just fractured his damn leg and acted purely out of adrenaline. So this realization is when the pain really sinks in as he shouts in pain. A while later, she quickly has him bandaged up properly. Han Feng luckily doesn't feel much pain anymore. The head nurse is really grateful to him and promises not to let any other people take advantage of her. But while she's saying that, our boy's foot is being driven up right into her two personalities. Han Feng is under the impression that this girl isn't going to learn anytime soon. Jinyun is called again for her duties, so she clumsily runs away, reminding our boy to return after a week for a proper checkup. Han Feng internalizes that unfortunately, he will never be able to see her again because of what will happen in 1 week's time. He leaves with that depressing thought in his mind. The following day, the weather conditions take a turn for the worse. News reports of heavy drops in temperatures are being sprung all over the world. Even Dubai and Egypt are receiving heavy snowfalls, which is unheard of. The experts ranging from 46 countries have come to rush an immediate meeting to discuss what's truly going on. According to these experts, the severe cold is only temporary and will break after a few days. Still, the people are warned to stay inside and follow proper procedure to stay comfortable. By the way, Han Feng appears undisturbed in his modified room. He's got a heater with endless warmth, and he's got nothing to fear honestly. The news keeps talking about how the disaster will pass, but he knows that it will never happen. It's just a lie to control the reactions of the public. It's pure bullshit, and it makes him feel like a clown believing in them the first time around. But this time, things are different. He's ready, really ready. He's fully loaded out with stocks, and his heating system is up and running. For now, there's practically nothing left to bother him. The building group chat is actually going crazy. talking about how insane the cold is getting and how they can't manage to stay warm here. The interesting thing about this group chat is that one anonymous person flat out reveals that the Ice Age apocalypse is about to begin, and that the snowstorm is something caused within the Earth itself. The messages shock Han Feng because nobody is supposed to know about this information just yet. Han Feng's mind instantly registers this random mysterious dude as someone he should definitely be wary of. After all, being the protagonist of the story, Han Feng's supposed to be the only one who knows about the upcoming apocalypse. The once happy housing complex residents now look like a mob on a leash, tagging the property management to step up and fix the mess this snowstorm's been causing them lately. Since reading endless blind text messages is boring as hell, the group chat turns into a metaphorical theme park where all the residents show up as chibi cat avatars. The angry residents are not thrilled with how things are going. If the snow keeps piling up in front of the exit, they won't even be able to go grocery shopping. They paid a fat chunk of money just to get lousy service. If anything, they want to have a talk with the property agent if management can't make their money worth it. On the other side, the property management team is in a state of panic too, apologizing nonstop for the inconvenience. But a few half-hearted apologies won't ease the frustration weighing on the residents because of the poor management. Honestly, they want refunds. This shit ain't not worth it. Amid all this chaos is our guy, Han Feng, who's clearly annoyed watching these residents drain their energy arguing over nonsense. It's not like the complex owner has some magic powers to undo the snowstorm, but not everyone in the complex has given up hope. One resident, Jian Zhuiyu, is mature enough to admit they can't fight a blizzard. His better idea? They should help each other instead of making things harder. Natural disasters are totally out of the property management's control, so blowing off steam on them is pointless. Well, not everyone in the lobby agrees with Jian's chill attitude. These people are so untamed and short-sighted that instead of working together, they start trashing Jian for dick-riding the property management. Jin tries to explain he's not taking anyone's sides, he's just being realistic and objective. It's completely pointless to back property management into a corner when arguing won't get them anywhere. But once again, the crowd refuses to calm down unless the snow outside is cleared so they can shop for groceries. Starving to death isn't exactly their vibe. Jin does his best to talk sense into this dullard mob. He points out that even if the snow is cleared outside, that doesn't guarantee the roads will be clear too. For what it's worth, he suggests walking to the grocery store on foot, especially since clearing footpaths is way more doable than clearing the roads. Meanwhile, Han Feng is making this sour face after recognizing the dude who's been preaching left and right like a bootleg guru. The way our boy looks at him, it's clear their history isn't exactly pleasant. Suddenly, a BS repellents guy with an annoyed face jumps into the chat. No formalities, he just lays it out. If anyone wants to eat, they need to head outside and start clearing the roads. Otherwise, all the gossip won't melt the snow. Then he logs off. Another guy steps up, ready to head down and help clean the mess outside. This blunt-tongued thug seems to be another figure Han Feng is familiar with. Slowly but surely, the residents start joining the crew to clear the roads. Even the delicate cuties are willing to get their hands dirty for this noble cause. Then there's the unforgettable Hyuna, who's also volunteering to help. Han Feng isn't sure how a pussy like her even agreed to join. Turns out, her volunteering is just a ploy to attract all the gooners who don't want a beauty like her to drain herself when men are around. As expected, she milked the moment and dumped her responsibilities on others. What else do you expect from an opportunistic bitch like her? As Han Feng logs out of the chat, the frustration on his face is obvious. This woman never disappoints when it comes to ruining his mood. Right now she's actually texting him. Why, you ask? Well, because she knows this desperate gooner would do anything she asks, so she wants him to bring her food supplies. She even throws in a bonus pic of her bare legs, thick thighs, barely any clothes, all aimed right at our boy's soul. Han Feng wants to rate her a solid 10/10 for the effort, seducing him with barely their clothes despite the cold. But with his leg broken, even if he wanted to chase the booty, he can't do squat. So he decides to toss back a teasing remark guaranteed to make her skin crawl. And sure enough, his words do the trick. She's so annoyed she wants to stomp on him. Here's a little throwback to what's been going down. Today marks the third day ever since the blizzard started, with temperatures already dropping below 20 degrees. Since this was just the beginning of the destruction about to unfold, the central heating was still running. The internet was still up and running for everyone's daily dose of distraction. So, just like any bored teenager, Han Feng did nothing but scroll through TikTok, watching those busty ladies making shorts. Though honestly, he isn't feeling it. In fact, he is already bored, and it's only the second day of the so-called apocalypse. This got him thinking about what loneliness can really do to a man. His broken leg wasn't helping either, seriously cramping his style and trapping him in place. And it's going to be at least a few months before he fully recovers. With no other option, he dives back into video after video. That's when he stumbles on something awe-inspiring in a news report. Turns out there's a dude with a crazy ability to heal himself. According to the doctors, this guy fell off the 15th floor, wrecking his internal organs and mangling his bones completely. But not long after, the guy started regenerating, like actually healing himself. Thinking about supernatural powers got Hang Feng remembering he had some tricks up his own sleeve. So, he activated the familiar green light glowing over his hand and tried to heal his broken bone. But the green energy fizzled out without doing a damn thing. He tried again, but nope, only failure awaited him. After admitting defeat, he slumped back on the couch, disappointed that his hopes had been raised for just a moment. After hours of endless scrolling, he finally started drifting into the dream realm. In his dream, he was rocking some primitive garb, riding a massive goat. Not just one goat, a whole freaking flock of goats following him, with goat heads flapping as they soared. In this zoomed-out shot, you can see this massive horde following him closely behind. But suddenly, the fun ride screeches to a halt when the goat slammed on the brakes, tossing him off its back. He hurt his leg in the fall, and one of the goats starts licking it. He finds this weird act of goat compassion pretty gross and pushes the creature away, which annoys the goat. Then the goat whipped out its absurdly long tongue, wrapped it around Hang Feng's leg, and jerks it right into the sky. The part of his leg the tongue is wrapped around starts to heal instantly. Right at that moment, Hang Feng woke up in a cold sweat, totally shocked. For real, that bizarre dream messed him up so bad he is literally sweating down to his balls. Suddenly he notices his leg is glowing with green energy, showing signs of self-repair. Not long after, he carefully unwraps his bandages and gingerly plants his foot on the floor. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt at all. Looks like that green light did help him recover, but only after he fell asleep. To test this wild theory, he grabs a sharp knife in a morbid attempt to hurt himself, hoping to trigger the healing all over again. His hand trembles as he reluctantly slices a small cut on his index finger. While he is testing his newfound ability, let's cut back outside. There, the angry mob of residents is finally putting their energy to good use. Thanks to their combined efforts, they cleared the path in front of the main gate. All credit goes to Zhang for his unity pep talk that got everyone moving. Zhang then gives extra props to an old man who had worked the hardest of all. The old man, in turn, praises the twins who'd been grinding just as hard. Then there is everyone's favorite busted nurse Jin Jian, struggling to walk on the slippery snowbed. The twins spot the damsel in distress and lend a hand to help her up. After that, the twins decide to get back to work in order to clear the path further, telling her to call if she needs more help. Jiang notices the snowfall is getting heavier, so he urges everyone to make their grocery run a quick dash in order to get back as soon as possible. Speaking of supplies, the old man suddenly remembers something, but he didn't think it's worth bringing up until Zhang insisted. The old man reveals a rumor from a few days ago. Apparently, a resident had been spotted bringing supplies on a small truck, acting like he was just moving in. Well, Zhang doesn't think much of it. It's pretty normal for someone new to haul their stuff when moving into an apartment. But then the old man adds an interesting detail. He had noticed the guy had gas tanks and a fireplace with him. That certainly doesn't sound like normal moving in stuff. It seemed like this person was prepping hardcore to survive the winter. Before they can mull it over any further, the twins return with a progress report. Suddenly, a guy appears out of nowhere, clearly eavesdropping on the old man's story and eager to learn more about this person who was prepping to survive the winter in advance. But this curious guy quickly gets smacked with a snowball from Liu Yan, who wants him to stop slacking and get back to work. Zhang then steps in to stop the arguing and tells everyone to move out since the main path is clear. Nurse Jin is also hyped to go shopping. Meanwhile, the old man asks Jiang for his opinion, wondering if this new resident already knew about the blizzard coming. Jiang thinks for a second, then dodges the question carefully. He claims that the blizzard will blow over soon, so no need to worry. Worst case, if the storm doesn't stop, they're lucky to have a neighbor stocked with supplies to help everyone survive it. So it's actually a good thing. As their journey to the store continues, the snowstorm intensifies, pushing everyone to move faster. Meanwhile, our lazy boy Hang Feng is still knocked out in his cozy apartment. But his nap gets interrupted by a knock at the door. There is this familiar voice calling him out. When he opens it, the visitor turns out to be homeless Joe, holding the fine stuff our guy had requested. This was the promised gift from Boss Liu. Brother Lee had agreed to bring it because he had stocked up on supplies beforehand and could now afford not to run around the city like crazy looking for supplies like most of the other citizens. But even so, Han Feng was grateful to him for coming in this weather. Brother Lee also had some very interesting information that various rumors had already started to spread about. Last night, some unknown person had cleaned out the shelves of a supermarket in the Eastern District. And when the Boss Liu gang cleared their way out of the snow yesterday, they were met with nothing but emptiness in the supermarket. To Han Feng, something like this seemed unbelievable, to completely clean out a huge supermarket in one night. Who could be capable of such a thing? However, there was no doubt in Brother Lee's words, and it had definitely happened. Hanfeng was now beginning to realize that something even stranger than in his previous life was happening around him. It looked like he wasn't the only one who had gained superpowers. For a second, his thoughts were interrupted by Brother Li. He advised Hanfeng to wear more warm clothes and be careful. After that, he said goodbye and left. Finally, our hero could be alone and think things over. He kept trying to think of a logical explanation for what had happened last night. How could someone clean out a supermarket in one night? The only explanation he could think of was the theory that it could have been done by someone with superpowers from novels and comic books. Someone capable of hiding unlimited amounts of supplies in his personal subspace. The only question was, could people with such abilities exist in this world? And the answer to that question was quite simple. Since he himself had superpowers, someone else could too. This was a disturbing discovery. Now Hanfeng couldn't waste a moment. He needed to examine his superpowers more thoroughly, so that when he encountered other superpower holders, he would have his own strategy to counter them. He simply had to know his strengths and weaknesses, as well as the limit of his superpowers. To do so, he opened his diary, and began to study the already known facts about his powers. At this point, he already knew that his power could react with different foods, both plant and animal. With its help, he could quickly grow them, increase their volume, and also fry them, though with a terrible taste. But still. Unfortunately, there were limitations, which he learned about later. The likelihood of success of power application is not that great and differs for different products. For example, for soybeans, the chance of growing a plant is 10%. For meat, it's even less. Hanfeng kept failing to understand why things worked the way they did. Suddenly, the soybean under the influence of the force exploded in his hand with an unpleasant green cloud. And instead of a normal plant, our hero had a rock in his hand. Just a stinky rock. This was starting to annoy him. The failure rate was too high. Hanfeng had to learn how to use his power more effectively. And he was determined to start practicing hard. After all, nothing helps you learn any skill faster than practice. For this purpose, he spared no time and worked hard until late in the evening. Finally, he succeeded. In his hands, Hanfeng had a fresh and alive soybean plant with pods. Such an achievement did not come easy to him. He was sweating profusely and was already quite a good heater for his apartment. But that was the price he had to pay to figure out a few rules to increase the success rate. He found out that green light energy is not constant. And for different products, it is worth applying this green light for different lengths of time, depending on the nutritional value of the product. If you do not guess the duration of application, you will end up with a failure and get a burnt, stinky stone. That is, you need to know exactly the ideal cooking interval for each product. This brings to mind Hanfeng. Something familiar. One popular music and dance online game that came out a decade ago, where you had to press the right buttons in rhythm at the right interval. It was also conceivable that the value of energy could be compared to the directions, up, down, right, and left. And the value of the energy input to the object had to be correct every second. And eventually a critical point had to be caught, and the process had to be stopped. If you do it right, you'll achieve success, and every soybean will become a plant. After the success with plants, Hanfeng began experimenting with meat. Obviously, but meat was different from vegetables. If you did something wrong in the process, the meat would then turn into a disgusting black slurry. However, the principles in turning meat were still supposed to be similar. The first place to start was to determine how much energy the meat needed. Everything seemed to be working and going according to plan. But here's the problem. The chicken leg exploded just like the previous ones with a nasty black slurry. It looked like it would take him even longer to learn how to work with meat than with plant food. Time after time, Hanfeng tried and failed. The chicken legs exploded one after another. There seemed to be no end to this series of failures. Finally, our hero's patience ran out. He even cried out in despair, cursing this damn ability with an increased level of difficulty. However, the hero was not one to give up, and while the snowfall outside the window only intensified and the temperature dropped even lower, Hanfeng did not stop trying. Traces of it were all over the kitchen. And then came the moment of truth. The last chicken leg. Our hero was already doing everything on automatic with an absent expression on his face and did not even hope for success. Up and down, left and right, red and green energy. It felt like an overly complicated mini-scale game to him. It was repeated one after another, and as soon as he made a mistake, he had to start all over again. The tension was at an all-time high, and this time Hanfeng succeeded. He managed to grow the chicken leg to a gigantic size. With a snort of disdain, our hero said that it was worth it, and collapsed exhausted but happy on the floor. He had finally found a way to synthesize meat. The weather outside was getting worse by the day. The news announced that today, July 17th, was the third consecutive day of snow disaster. In every corner of the country, the same thing is happening, and it seems that mankind is facing a disaster that happens only once in a few thousand years. In order to ensure the basic livelihood of citizens, the authorities are actively fighting the consequences and taking measures to help citizens. It was to such news that Han Feng woke up the next day. How many times had he heard it before? Empty warnings and promises about how the heavy snowfall had paralyzed transportation, electricity, and internet. But everything would be repaired soon, and all they needed to do was wait a little longer. Soon, humanitarian supplies should arrive in the disaster areas. Finally, the news anchor advised everyone to stay indoors and not to go outside unnecessarily. For Han Feng, there was nothing surprising in all of this. He had heard all of this in his past life. Suddenly, a notification came on his phone, followed instantly by several more. Han Feng immediately saw that it was a group of residents of his house who had started making noise again, and he simply couldn't help but join in the discussion. The noise around was unbelievable. Everyone was discussing the morning news. Some believed that the rescuers would come and help them. Others thought it was all empty promises and made plans to save themselves. Only one avatar stood out from the crowd and asked the gullible if they really believed what was being said on the news. It was old Uncle Liu, and he absolutely did not believe what was being said on TV. If everything was under the control of the government, the rescue teams would have arrived long ago. Instead, he had heard rumors from old friends that the government was assembling armored vehicles, tanks, and other heavy weapons in City A, the capital of the country. They are probably preparing for the war that is about to break out. After hearing the very real possibility of an all-out war against an unknown enemy, a chilling silence swept through the group chat full of paranoid survivors. Then came the eruption of concerns, asking Uncle Liu if what he said was true. If it was, weren't they basically done for? Meanwhile, Han Feng was just fascinated by the coming up of the issue of war. He had heard something about this progression in his previous life. Mr. Zhang interjected to quiet all the noise. He asserted that if what Uncle Liu said was true, then they had to start taking survival measures to save everyone. Some owners in the neighborhood had already run out of supplies. With support resources from the government still uncertain, he proposed organizing for those who were facing difficulties. He passionately suggested that those with ample supplies donate some of their stash. To serve as an example, Mr. Zhang pledged to donate half of his supplies to anyone in need. Other owners quickly discussed what was being put forward in hushed tones. One guy wholeheartedly agreed with Mr. Zhang's proposal, as everyone was just trying to get through the crisis. He pledged to donate what he could and even roped in Li Hyona. She knew this crazy guy, Wu Kuan-yu. That man was trying to humiliate her in front of everyone just because she rejected him before. So, Li Hyona had to play some defense, bringing out her meek girl persona while apologizing as she didn't have any spare supplies left. Most of her simps immediately jumped to defend the witch. This little commotion almost made the plan to organize impossible, as they couldn't even unite themselves with selfless acts. But donations eventually started pouring in. A lot of people must have been moved by Mr. Zhang's impassioned speech. Food, clothing, medicine, all the necessities were put forth. Mr. Zhang expressed his gratitude to those who were willing to help. Since there were quite a lot of people to manage, he thought it wise to appoint some owners to take charge of the operation. He would naturally lead the team. It would be an interim emergency committee responsible for planning and distributing donated supplies. Han Feng smirked as soon as he read the announcement. This interim committee thing happened in his previous life too. Sometime later, it would be revealed that it was all a scheme to take other people's resources. Today was the 19th of July, the 5th day of the apocalypse. Temperatures outside had already dropped to negative 40 degrees. Now was finally the day when the building's central heating system was no longer running due to the extreme frost. Everyone was desperately thinking and trying ways to keep their bodies warm without the convenience of heaters. Some managed to make a tiny fire inside their homes. It was the same as the previous timeline. It was terrible now, but the situation would only continue to get worse. The exception to this was our MC, of course. Han Feng was set with all his failed experimental charcoals, perfect for fueling his fireplace. On the table was a fizzy iced cola and a scrumptious slice of strawberry cake. As for Han Feng himself, he was doing what most of us would do in his situation, playing single-player video games while not giving a damn about the outside world. But his peace would be interrupted by a sudden phone call. Taking a break from gaming, he picked up the call while sipping on Coke. On the line was the person in charge of Block 8. They planned to clear the roads in 20 minutes and were in need of manpower in the basement car park. Han Feng resisted cursing this random guy out. These people still didn't get it yet. The snow wouldn't stop piling up. Against his will, Han Feng still chooses to leave the comfort of his home and go down to the main lobby. He reckoned falling out with the neighbors would be troublesome now. He must lower the possibility of his secret being discovered after all. From the first look at the gate, everyone could see the snow had already trapped them in the building. Other volunteers were pissed that the paths they had cleared before had been erased with the highest snow pile they'd ever seen. Deciding to at least get the door open, the volunteers saw Han Feng and called him over to help with opening the entrance. They placed their whole body weights into the door and pushed at the count of 3. Much to everyone's surprise, opening the entrance let in copious amounts of snow and opened the lobby up to the frigidity of a raging snowstorm. The storm was too extreme, and none of them could take the cold. When you get close enough to the storm, even opening your eyes could become a possible injury. Han Feng regretted leaving his cozy couch to subject himself to manual labor and frostbite. If people went out in that weather, death wouldn't be far-fetched. Thankfully, the rest of the volunteers also came to the same realization. Only an idiot would try to go out in that temperature. Speaking of idiots, he was finally here. A voice that sounded all too familiar in Han Feng's ear. It was none other than Homeless Joe, also known as Brother Lee. He was roasting everyone for acting like cowards when they needed to be imposing at tough times like this. The volunteers shivered in their boots while trying to talk Brother Lee out of his stupidity. No one should go out in the harshness of that snowstorm. Brother Lee was built different, though. First, he finished the cigarette he was smoking in one puff. Pumped to go in like the madman that he was, Brother Lee plowed through the snow, trapping everyone in with his hands. The dumbass started chanting like an anime character while literally punching the snow, scattering the pile all over the place. He continued doing this for a while. He even managed to dig a Homeless Joe-sized hole in the middle of the human-length pile of snow. Then came the silence. After a few moments, all the volunteers could hear were garbled pleadings for help coming from under the snow pile. The others had to drag Homeless Joe out of the snow. His face looked purple from the cold and being trapped under the heavy snow. Volunteers finally decided that venturing outside was impossible and closed the gate. Han Feng ran up to Brother Lee, trying to make sure that the stupid gangster was all right. He asked everyone to go to the car park first so they could look for the person in charge of attendance. They could always decide what to do next when the snow stopped. With such a severe blizzard rampaging throughout the world, people were no longer in a situation where the problem could be solved with manpower. In the building's car park, it seemed like the atmosphere was a little more comfortable on account of it being underground. Mr. Jiang, the de facto leader, was surrounded by the owners as always. Upon receiving reports from the lobby, he concurred that the clearing operation should take a pause. Also, from now on, the basement car park will be the designated donation and collection point. Han Feng stayed low-key in the background. This was the first time he had met that guy with the surname Jiang from the group chat. This meant that this was the guy who had spearheaded the establishment of that eventual scam committee. With his kind and well-spoken demeanor, Mr. Jiang would manipulate everyone with politeness and the illusion of support and unity. Mr. Jiang commented about the overwhelming downpour of donations from so many owners. These generous donations would help those who were struggling, and for that, he was grateful. The general vibe in the car park was quite positive. People were feeling good about their selfless acts. It gave them a false sense of unity as they worked on the same goal of survival. Han Feng knew something they didn't, though. They just had to wait and see as the disaster continued to go on for an eternity. They would soon regret giving up their resources. Brother Lee, still shivering from the stunt he tried to pull earlier, decided to head up first and say goodbye to Han Feng. Looking around the car park, Han Feng noticed someone eye-catching. It was that airhead nurse that he had met in the hospital when he broke his leg. She was wearing some type of cute winter onesie while clumsily carrying a stack of boxes. She was clearly struggling to navigate her way through the crowd of people standing around the committee. Given her awkwardness, she eventually bumped into some of the guys standing around. She would have slipped straight to the floor if it hadn't been for Han Feng swooping in to save the day once again. While holding her in her box, he asked if the blushing nurse was okay. When she finally opened her eyes, she expressed her thanks for the save and eventually recognized Han Feng from the hospital. Then she remembered that his leg was supposed to be severely injured. He shouldn't be in the condition to catch falling maidens. Realizing that he acted before thinking about the current situation, Han Feng struggled to think of a way out. He stumbled over his words before getting out that his speed of recovery had always been great since he was young. It was very unconvincing with all the nervous gestures. Fortunately, the nurse was too dense to gather any kind of untruthfulness from his words and actions. She just found his recovery speed to be fantastic. Han Feng offered to help lift her boxes. She declined at first, saying that they were heavy, but our boy insisted. It took a little bit of convincing, but she eventually entrusted the boxes to him. As soon as he got both hands on the supplies, he was flabbergasted by how heavy they actually were. They were unnaturally weighty. Curious, he asked her what was inside. She explained that these were mainly medical supplies that she was donating to those in need. She also acknowledged that it might be a little too heavy, and that she would be fine carrying them to the donation point. Entranced by her beauty and kindness, you could give Han Feng a few more pounds to carry, and he would never complain. Since she claimed to be stronger than most guys, the nurse kept reminding him not to push too hard. When asked if she'd always been strong since she was young, she became a little guarded while answering that there was a reason behind it all. Hearing those cryptic words made Han Feng naturally curious, but she looked uncomfortable telling the story and apologized for bringing it up. It's just that something happened recently that she can't quite explain. Also, they'd been talking and walking for a while now, and she still didn't know his name. Han Feng politely introduced himself in turn. The angelic nurse also dropped her name, Jin Shui. Based on her big smile, it seemed like she really appreciated this unexpected meeting. He was speechless whenever he saw that smile. He would have been in, but Nurse Jin asked what he does, and he truthfully answered that he was unemployed. Talk about fumbling a baddie so close to the finish line, my boy. But thanks to Manhwa logic, an impatient man just happened to pass by, knocking Nurse Jin off balance. Struggling to maintain her balance, she eventually fell on Han Feng. He was the only one she could grab to stabilize. This also led to her soft breasts pressing into Han Feng's arm all of a sudden. Having zero riz, Han Feng just stood there and savored the moment. Nurse Jin immediately pulled away and apologized while Han Feng tried to say that it was no problem. This would have been a perfect first meeting if it hadn't been for Li Hyona rearing her ugly head to approach Han Feng like a sleepless zombie. You could see the effects of hunger and cold taking a toll on her. Like the parasite that she is, the witch immediately pounced on Han Feng, deliberately rubbing her chest against his arm. Grabbing him slowly, she asked who the pink-haired lady was and if she was a friend. Nurse Jin immediately felt awkward and grabbed the boxed supplies away from Han Feng's hands. She just wanted to get her donations logged and not interrupt two friends chatting. Han Feng asked why Hyona was down here while he regrettably watched Nurse Jin scurry her way to the donation point. The witch explained that she came to get some supplies, noting that she was worried about Han Feng, given his inactivity. He scratched his head and told her that he was just about to send a message. She called him a liar, seeing as he was happily chatting away with another lady just now. Then came the inquiries about whether he had any spare food supplies at home. She claimed that she was almost out of food and was wondering if she could share some of Han Feng's. He didn't get pissed off or anything like that. On the contrary, he smirked. Continuing his simp act, Han Feng claimed that he didn't have much food left either, but could spare some to share. But he'd only share food with people who reply to messages. Acting forward, he grabbed the witch by the waist and asked if she would be willing to accompany him to his place for a few days. Not used to the more confident version of her supposed simp, the witch lost her composure for a second. She pushed him away and smiled. Li Hyona insisted that if Han Feng wanted to chat, they could just do so online. Taking that as a flat-out rejection, Han Feng turned back to head up to his place. Being in a very desperate situation, the witch grabbed him before he could get far, telling him to wait up. She asserted that he had changed quite a bit recently. Hyona also claimed that she had always been very serious about her feelings. With the most convincing puppy eyes imaginable, Hyona professed that she didn't want people to think that she was just with Han Feng for his money. So, she's going to need a little more time for something more serious. Han Feng looked at her act with a blush on his face. Thankfully, he checked himself immediately. If he hadn't already died once by her hands, he would have believed those words. But right now he just wanted to tear her ugly mask off. The thing is, he still hadn't found out who the man behind the witch was. Thinking about it now, why would he even go look for the guy when he could just act and proceed like he did in his previous life, until Hyona naturally brought the man over? This time he'll be more prepared. Sure, they have a steel bat, but Han Feng has a sniper rifle. Realizing this, he decided not to rock the boat too much and joked that he was just teasing her. Now, the witch was feeling a little ashamed of putting on another acting masterclass for a joke. Still, Han Feng asserted that he would wait for her message so he could deliver some food supplies the next day. With this, they finally bade each other goodbye. She even told him to hit her up if there was anything he wanted to talk about. As the witch exited the car park, an evil smile crept up at the corners of her vile mouth. Unbeknownst to her, Han Feng wasn't the one being played this time around. He really liked tormenting her on the low-key. 2 days passed without Han Feng contacting the witch. This turned into Li Hyona blowing up his phone with angry text messages about the delivery of the promised supplies. Han Feng was just letting all the salty messages pile in while he ate a piping hot steak meal paired with some fizzy drink. How good would it be to eat some good food while tormenting a witch who killed you in the previous life? Finally, figuring out the method to make some blissfully delicious meat was a game changer. The cold weather outside was perfect for such nice and warm food inside. While everyone was miserable in the cold, this guy was actually sweating it out in his bathrobe. Absolute Chad. He hadn't been just lounging around these past few days either. He conducted numerous experiments that allowed him to confirm 2 important things. First, his meat could not be expanded limitlessly. Second, just like soybeans, meat could be reproduced without a limit. His experiments had already yielded pounds and pounds of it. For every full stalk of beans sprouted, he would use half to grow more beans and eat the other half. He could freely apply the same principle to meat. Under the red and green light, half a steak and a handful of soybeans could produce a whole piece of steak. Exploiting the same process over and over would yield an unlimited amount of steak. After conducting numerous tests to put this hypothesis to the test, he concluded that he wouldn't have to worry about eating good food in the future. Some TV stations were still sending out reporters to chronicle the unprecedented snowstorm on its 19th day. It was August 2nd now, and even the picturesque islands of the Maldives near the equator had reached average temperatures of -42 degrees. The entire island had been engulfed by ice and snow. Even the ocean was freezing at a speed observable to the naked eye. It was unreal. According to expert readings, the ice layer had reached 55 centimeters deep. Similar situations could be observed in other countries near the equator, the supposed warm territories. Watching through his massive entertainment center, Han Feng scoffed at the news coverage. In reality, the situation in the outside world was far worse than the media's portrayal. He was peacefully sipping on his daily red wine when a sudden noise from outside sent a shock to his system. Han Feng hurriedly made his way to the window and opened the curtains. He could see a building engulfed in fire from a distance. This was the 7th explosion incident in the past few days. Even Han Feng was clueless about the cause. But what was certain was that this was not a good sign. There had been a ramp-up in the number of military helicopters flying through the city too. If he was clueless, so were the rest of the survivors. The situation outside was causing panic among the residents. All of them were basically camping around the basement car park to trade for goods and food supplies. Human greed knows no limits, so there were many residents taking advantage of others, leading to several conflicts and altercations. At the center of all this was Mr. Jiang, who was still playing the role of the reliable leader who provided necessary resources to the destitute for free. Today was a special day as Han Feng decided to go down to the basement car park with the other survivors. He'd only been out of his place for a few minutes, and the cold was already getting to him. Every time he exited the comfort of his home, he regretted his decision. The real reason he came down was to gather some useful information. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have shown his face to these people ever again. Before he was given the chance to reset, he remembered a rebellion sweeping through the neighborhood. If memory served him right, it should be related to the people in this basement. Right now, they were still standing by their promise to give away resources instead of outright scamming people. To find out what was really going on, Han Feng decided to do some detective work on this messy and chaotic gathering. Based on the long lines in the collection area, it looked like the number of households facing shortages was relatively high. At the front of the line, a man was complaining about how few resources he was getting when he had donated several large boxes of supplies, while Mr. Jiang insisted that everyone was given an equal slice. With a single canned good and one sausage in hand, the man demanded his donated resources back. But the committee couldn't really do that. Since the disaster was ongoing, Mr. Jiang urged the man to look at the bigger picture and promised to pay back the man in cash several times over once things settled down. But a promise of money for an uncertain tomorrow wasn't worth anything right now. Finally, other people in the line started speaking up against the whiny man. They bashed the guy, telling him to stop being so shameless and move along. It didn't take too long for a mob to form around the idea of hating this shameless man who just wanted a few more supplies for his family. They were thoroughly under the influence of the interim committee. Han Feng knew all too well that there was no way for the people in charge to concede their resources in this current situation. But placing yourself on higher moral ground against those who donated more resources at the start of the crisis was equally shameless. Speaking of shameless, the man, the myth, the legend, finally made another appearance in the basement. It was none other than Homeless Joe. Brother Lee. He looked a lot worse than a few days ago. He looked frail, sickly, and thin. It had been a while since the Gun brothers had seen each other. Brother Lee claimed that he wasn't doing too badly, but it was clear that he was. According to him, he was just trembling from being flustered and powerless, not to mention the cold. He was far from doing not too bad. Brother Lee finally admitted that he had been having a difficult time, just depending on drinking water to suppress his hunger, as he didn't have any food left. When the donation drive was in full swing, he donated most of his resources to the committee. In the end, his own supply ran out before the promised end of the snowstorm. In addition, the rations that the committee doled out were too little. If Brother Lee had only known how bad the weather would be, he would have kept more of his personal stash. Realizing that he had a possible solution for Brother Lee's plight, Han Feng pulled the gangster closer to whisper a favor. Brother Lee pulled away in disbelief. Little Han Feng just offered him 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages to do a simple job. Han Feng made a point of asserting that this would put a significant dent in his supplies. The gangster took it as his little bro was looking for an excuse to give him food. He was moved to tears, promising to remember his goodwill for the rest of time. Brother Lee grabbed Han Feng with sincere intensity and assured him that this small matter would be settled without a fuss. As for the food, he could just swing by Han Feng's house later. But first, Brother Lee really needed something to fill his stomach. so he lined up to get some rations. Han Feng was just pleased with the perfect deal he cooked up. With just a few packs of noodles and sausages, he wouldn't have to come down here personally to gather information in the future. He felt a little sorry for Brother Li, but sticking his nose into other people's business wasn't as important as comfortably lazing on his sofa, eating delicious food, and playing games. Han Feng would have had a perfect journey in the basement car park if he hadn't been spotted by yet another familiar face. After hearing his name, the next thing he saw was a palm heading for his face. Lee Hyona's version of hello for today was a crisp slap across Han Feng's cheek. Not expecting to get assaulted so early in the day, he didn't know how to react to this absurd scenario. With anger in her eyes, Hyona told Han Feng that he had been a disappointment. The broke bitch proceeded to yell at him for not responding to her messages asking for food. She made sure to raise her voice so everyone in the car park could hear. Han Feng was stun-locked. He just stood there trying to process what was happening. The witch he had been messing with just slapped him across the face in front of everyone. He hadn't even settled her previous life debts yet. Now she's coming into his space and slapping him for no reason? This was blasphemous at this point. With his anger rising at an alarming rate, he reckoned that Lee Hyona still saw him as that pathetic wimp, easy to bully. He remained silent for a few moments as she berated him for not responding. She called him deaf and mute, and demanded an answer to her questions. Han Feng took a deep breath, the cold smoking up the air. Then he proceeded to put on another act, sincerely apologizing to Hyona. He explained that his supplies were stolen. He had placed the food he was about to deliver outside his door for a quick second to get his keys, but the boxes of supplies were gone by the time he returned. Han Feng claimed that he tried to look for the culprit, but hadn't found any clues at all. At this point, she looked like a crackhead desperate for her next hit as she asked him if he still had some resources left tucked away. He answered that he didn't have much, only enough to last him a few days if rationed to 1 meal a day. Hearing that he still had some food left, Hyona's unhinged face lit up with a blushing smile. She was back to her sweet girl act, and the transition was flawless. But when she asked Han Feng to split half of his food and just eat 1 meal every 2 days so they could both get through the disaster together, she looked unhinged. Han Feng could barely stand how shameless this woman could be. To be capable of saying such selfish words without batting an eye was terrifying. Well, in her eyes, this man was still just a tool to use when needed and nothing more. Letting her continue thinking that way, Han Feng smiled and lovingly concurred with the plan. He acted like a man who would stand by his promises and split his supplies equally with some girl. She even demanded to get the food now, but he scheduled the delivery for the night, insisting that he had some packing to do. She teased him that she'd be waiting for the message tonight. Heading back first, Hyona wished him well and hoped he wouldn't catch the flu going around. Han Feng bade her farewell as well, a sinister plan already brewing in his petty mind. As early as 8 in the evening, Lee Hyona was already badgering Han Feng for the food. She grew so impatient that she even went to the lobby near his room at around 9:30. She was shivering in the halls, alone, cold, and miserable. Han Feng was back to his favorite hobby, hooking Hyona with bait, then completely ghosting her with texts and calls. The elevator was busted after weeks of cold without maintenance, so if she really wanted to cause a scene, she'd have to take the stairs up to Han Feng's unit. Seeing no other choice, Lee Hyona swallowed her pride and took the creepy staircase. Halfway through the climb, she was already exhausted, with the cold making her shiver. It was a hellish ordeal. If it weren't for the supplies, she wouldn't be doing all this. The exhaustion kept piling on as she had been starving for a few days now. Each step up the stairs took all the strength she had left. You've got to give it to her. There are very few people who would climb more than 16 floors just to leech off someone's food. Coincidentally, even the emergency lights on the higher floors were also busted. This just made her climb darker and spookier. Upon hearing what she perceived as some kind of eerie sound, Lee Hyona anxiously asked who was there. To answer her inquiry, a black plastic bag came directly from the higher floors, on track to land on her pretty little head. Shocked and unable to move, Hyona was forced to just stand there and wait for the black bag to hit her. As soon as the bag landed with a loud bang, the emergency lights kicked back on, and white dust filled the staircase. The always cheerful and smiling Lee Hyona was blasted with flour all over her head and body. In front of her was Han Feng. He claimed that he fell asleep and immediately came running down with the supplies when he saw her messages. When the light turned off, he accidentally dropped the bag of flour, leading to this situation. Wiping off the flour and plastic from her hair and coat, Hyona felt disgusting as hints of her real nasty personality peeked through the mask. Han Feng was quite pleased with this sight. He had specially prepared this mean-spirited prank for her, and it wasn't done yet. He lifted another plastic bag, telling the witch that he packed up his remaining resources for her. Upon inspection, she noticed that most of the food and produce were already moldy. It looked more like trash than edible food. Playing the fool, Han Feng scratched the back of his head and claimed that he worked extra hard to keep these leftovers in stock. There was even rotting meat mixed in there. Then he expertly pivoted to acting offended, grabbing the plastic bag and telling her to give it back if she didn't like it. Afraid of starving for another day, the witch hurriedly grabbed the bag away, claiming that she wanted it. Han Feng looked at her carefully from head to toe. He scoffed at himself. In front of him was the so-called goddess he had been pursuing with all his might before. Right now she looked like a homeless crackhead stuck outside on a winter night. She was rummaging through the trash bag and trying to find something edible in the moldy pile. She even greedily grabbed the remaining bag of flour from Han Feng's hand. Li Hyona was celebrating even half a bag of flour, not minding that she got blasted by the white stuff just minutes ago. She then took off without saying thank you or goodbye, but Han Feng didn't mind. Giving her his literal garbage to eat should be enough to give the witch some stomach problems for a few days. Showering in this weather was also impossible, so she would have to walk around with all that flour sticking to her body for a while. As Han Feng cheerfully headed back to his place, he started feeling something weird. He played it off as if he hadn't noticed, but there was something moving in the background. Keeping his wits about him, Han Feng acted naturally, heading to his unit. He exited the stairwell and walked like everything was normal. A shadow of a figure followed his footsteps a few seconds later. It was definitely a person, judging from the snow boots they were wearing. Taking advantage of the surprise factor, Han Feng actually hid behind the door and pounced on the unknown figure tailing him. He made sure to grab the mysterious person firmly and aggressively, taking them down to the ground. Just as he was about to punch the bastard trying to spy on him, something made Han Feng pause, his hostility dying down. The one tailing him turned out to be a girl with messy hair, sleepy eyes, and ultra-thick glasses. What the hell is going on, bro? Han Feng could think of only one reason why she could be here at this late hour. She must have been spying on him, and our hero wanted to find out her intentions. But all he got in response was silence and a blank stare from under her glasses. The girl was obviously not a chatty one. She didn't say a word, and Han Feng, surprised by this behavior, decided to use more weighty arguments to make her talk. He threatened to take off her coat right here in the cold if she didn't talk. Even that wasn't enough to loosen her tongue. Han Feng got tired of messing with her and decided to let her go this time. But next time, she might not be able to count on such favor if she spied on him. Now she had to stop her silent games and hurry to her home before she got cold. As our hero was about to leave, he suddenly felt someone grab his sleeve. This silent girl wasn't going to let him go so easily. Although Han Feng didn't understand what she wanted from him, she, on the other hand, just stared at him and remained silent. Han Feng told her to stop looking at him, and even threatened her to leave if she didn't tell him what she wanted. But instead of answering, she pointed at something with her hand, and pulled our hero with her. Even a laggard like Han Feng realized he was being shown something. They came to her room. It was surprisingly warm and bright inside. Our hero was even speechless. Looking around, he noticed piles of boxes of supplies. Of course, some of them were empty and the room was full of trash. But the fact that this girl had so many supplies weeks after the apocalypse began was incredible. Had she also prepared in advance? Han Feng directly asked her if she knew in advance that the ice apocalypse would begin, and surprisingly enough, she finally spoke. Although she said some strange things, it turned out that she had done the calculations herself and got the result that predicted a future ice age. She turned out to be the strange person who had been posting in the community chat about the coming of the ice age apocalypse before it happened. Han Feng, of course, didn't understand what she was talking about. It was hard for such a dumbass to realize that by doing research and calculations, one could sometimes know the future without even being a reborn regressor. But Han Feng knew that she probably didn't bring him here to talk about her research. And he was right. She had clearly shown him the real reason. The girl had a lot of screens in her room with CCTV footage on them, and on all of them was our hero. On the first footage, he was picking his nose while carrying a pile of boxes in an elevator. On the second, a delivery service was bringing a dozen gas cans into his room. On the third, Brother Lee brought him a gun case, and so on. It turns out that Han Feng's first guess about this girl upon meeting her turned out to be correct. She had indeed been spying on him, and for a long time. She was now more comfortable than ever and didn't hesitate to change her clothes right in front of our hero. Her room was too warm to wear warm winter clothes. Han Feng still managed to blunder and misunderstood and asked why she suddenly decided to undress here. She simply replied that it was hot in here, but of course he meant something else. Why was she doing it here in front of him? He demanded that she should stop immediately and put her pants back on. Eventually, after a while, as much as he was against it, he had to take off his coat too. This girl had dangerous information, and until he resolved this issue, he just couldn't leave. So, summarizing what he understood, Han Feng realized that she was spying on him due to being suspicious of his behavior when he started stocking up on supplies before it even snowed. Fortunately, This monitoring wasn't for the purpose of gathering information on our hero for blackmail, but to find out if Han Feng was smart and capable enough to cooperate. Now it was just a matter of figuring out what she meant by cooperation. Talking was difficult for her, so the girl decided it was better to show. Along the way, of course, making our hero understand everything in his own way. Han Feng couldn't even imagine what she was going to do by making such movements. Of course, pulling out the generator from behind the bed, instead of what you think she was going to do. She just wanted Han Feng to teach her how to use the generator. She was a master of all things computers and books, but the everyday skills necessary for survival were critically lacking. After a while, the generator was up and running steadily. We'll leave out the fact that running a generator in a room is a very bad idea. Let's assume that this generator was hydrogen-powered and was fairly quiet. Han Feng hoped that this would be the end of her requests, but that wasn't the case. Her blue eyes were asking for help again. This time with the hot water boiler. Our hero quickly set it up, and now she should have hot water around the clock thanks to the generator's power. But still, Han Feng advised her to save water and remember to close the tap. Next, she asked for help with the refrigerator. It was an unimaginable mess, and our hero had to teach her that raw meat should be put in the freezer, not in the refrigerator. Otherwise, it will quickly spoil. Also, she had to keep everything clean, or she would soon get sick. And he wasn't going to do all this for her. She had to do it herself. Han Feng couldn't understand how she had lived to this point without knowing such basic things. He even had to show her how to change and connect the gas cans to the stove. She had to remember the safety precautions and clearly repeat all his actions. It only got more complicated from there. Han Feng had to teach her how to cook and roast food on the fire. Finally, when our hero was completely exhausted, a delicious dinner was ready, and he advised her to eat while the food was still hot. He himself couldn't understand how he'd gotten to this life. He had to spend all day babysitting an adult child. His new friend's ability to take care of herself was too low. Although she didn't seem to be embarrassed at all, the dinner was just too delicious. Han Feng realized that there was no understanding on this matter and awkwardly excused himself by saying that he was just joking. He was incredibly tired for the day and couldn't dream of anything else but his warm bed. Turns out he wasn't the only one tired during the day. When he turned his attention to the girl, she was already asleep, and the table with food as a bed suited her just fine. This was the first time Han Feng had ever seen someone fall asleep while eating, but still, he decided to carry her to the bed. Who would have thought that he would spend the day teaching a child? During the night, the snowfall only intensified and the temperature dropped even lower. Han Feng had just woken up, and he already had guests demanding his attention. It was the same girl again. She had brought gifts to thank him for his help. Even our hero was surprised by her generosity. She had brought so much. But after Han Feng took the boxes away, she continued to stand at the door and wasn't going to leave at all. That look he already knew. She wanted to ask for another favor. She had brought a generator with her and asked him to teach her one more time. She didn't seem to have memorized yesterday's lessons, so Han Feng had to start all over again. After a few days of talking to the girl, he realized that she was a complete idiot when it came to survival. She was also critically lacking in common sense and understanding of what was appropriate and what was not. But she didn't give up, and every day she dragged Han Feng to her room to be taught survival and everyday skills. After a while, she finally managed to cook something remotely edible and resembling a meal. Even such a cooking skill Han Feng considered an improvement. Previously, even dogs wouldn't want to eat such a thing. But in an ice apocalypse, even humans would line up for such food. After so long, Han Feng finally decided to find out the girl's name. She introduced herself as Zhao Xingan. It was still a mystery to Han Feng why she spoke so strangely and what was wrong with her. But he wasn't going to leave her to her fate. Meanwhile, downstairs in the basement where supplies were being distributed to the needy residents, things were not calm at all. The hungry residents were fighting amongst themselves for what little supplies they had left. Chaos reigned, and the residents began taking supplies from each other, arguing that no one could prove whose supplies it was. The weak simply fell from powerlessness, and the strong tried to grab more. It seems that the quiet days in this community are over. People were fighting for resources they felt entitled to. They guarded what little they managed to loot with their lives. Any attempt at stealing quickly devolved into mindless violence. These people punched and kicked one another mercilessly until their fists and shoes were bloodied. While everyone was hastening the collapse of civilization, Mr. Jiang remained calm throughout the storm. He amplified the volume of the megaphone in his hands and stopped the fighting altogether as everyone covered their ears in pain. Bro was using a real sonic attack. That's a real supervillain. After a few seconds of that grating feedback sound, Mr. Jiang finally addressed his fellow survivors. He asked them if they had had enough of the fighting. He picked up one of the badly beaten men and explained that just because of these few remaining resources, they were risking death. Wasn't that the definition of ridiculous? But the masses were still angry. Mr. Jiang was the one who suggested the donation system, and now they only received a packet of noodles every few days. If they didn't die fighting, they would die starving. Mr. Zhang pretended as though he was listening to their complaints about the problem with resource distribution or the lack thereof. He turned to his people and stood on business. If they were fighting for such ridiculous reasons, then perhaps they deserved to starve to death. Mr. Zhang posed the question of who caused this situation in the first place, and urged them to think carefully. The irritated masses blamed him for this. He picked up a piece of bread and started working his magic as he helped the people remember what was really happening. Bread that was originally sold for a few dollars could now be bought from those with abundant resources for tens or even hundreds of dollars. The elite squeezed the unfortunate dry. It came to the point of splitting a piece of bread into 5 or 10 pieces to be auctioned. They used the disaster to get rich. As for those down in the dumps in the basement car park, they had long since run out of cash and resources. But here they were, having an internal strife due to the system that used to work. They were killing one another while the elites, who had plenty of supplies, hoarded their treasures without donating to the common good. They were the ones who raised the prices with malice. And yet here were the poor, starving and fighting to the death. Mr. Zhang asked if that was fair. Feeling that he now had the masses gobbling up his words, Mr. Zhang urged everyone to stop what they were doing and stand united to take back the resources that belonged to everyone. These hungry and angry citizens started rationalizing what they had just heard, convinced that they were being treated unfairly. Why were the rich the only ones getting all the benefits while the rest of them had to struggle just to stave off starvation and death? Mr. Zhang watched as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place on their own after planting a seed of hatred in the people's minds. The dissatisfaction and anger that the masses felt pointed upwards to the rest of the apartment building's residents. The survivors believed that they were just taking the share that belonged to them. Seeing the bubbling of violence, chaos, and desperation, Mr. Zhang smirked silently. In the midst of the mounting chaos, Homeless Joe, also known as Brother Lee, could be seen. Of all the people, he was the only one who could see through the bullshit of that speech. The people had practically gone mad, and something big was about to happen. He had to inform Han Feng as soon as possible. In Han Feng's room, he was just lounging around, pretending to read a book while snoring. He was woken up by the ringtone of his phone. He received Brother Lee's texts about the trouble brewing up in the basement car park. With Mr. Zhang's continuous incitement, the people were now planning to snatch resources from everyone else. They were going door to door and prying locks open. These raiders were armed and ready to cause harm. Brother Lee advised Han Feng to hide and not face these lunatics head on. He could only hope that Homeless Joe could take care of himself out there. Han Feng did not expect things to turn out like this. Although he bought 2 guns in case of a crisis, the idea of using them against another human mortified him a little. Furthermore, if the people had formed such an organized operation and revealed his resources, they would certainly have been gunning for him crazily. They would eat him up and leave nothing but bones. And for that, he needed to be prepared for all kinds of scenarios. For now, he retrieved a bunch of wires, tools, and a couple of fire extinguishers from the stockroom. Using this stuff, he tried to rig his door by crudely strapping live wires on the doorknob for security reasons. Upon finishing his janky rig, Han Feng slowly unfurled the wire on the floor. His little experiment was interrupted by the sudden loss of power, though. From above, it was clear that every building in the area had lost power at the same time. Some people tried to contact management, but they lost contact with those people long ago. Han Feng reckoned that with the snowstorm intensifying and the overloaded usage of power by people trying to keep warm, this blackout would have happened sooner or later. Moreover, the snow built up in most areas, and the abysmal temperatures outside made it impossible for maintenance. Considering all the factors at hand, the power failure and signal loss might be permanent this time around. Once the people realized that the power was never coming back, things would only go downhill from there. Their feelings of panic would only lead to an even more serious rebellion movement. And that's when the real hell would begin. 30 minutes before the power went out, the witch, Lee Hyona, was greedily shoving noodles down her gullet. Her current benefactor was bragging about how he bought resources at 50 times the market price some time ago, and those poor people could not resist as they shut their mouths and sold. For all the resources he had in stock, he only spent $500,000. He also started the practice of auctioning supplies, letting the poor fight just to get a crumb from him. Using this tactic, Blondie earned quite a lot. He ran his hand alongside Lee Hyona's face and asked if she thought she had made the right decision to follow him. The witch smiled and cheerfully nodded. The rich prick was already thinking of doing anything he wanted with this pretty girl, as long as he had the resources to buy her obedience. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps pouring into the hallway. It was the car park people, and they brought tools to break doors open in the middle of the night. Blondie overheard that he was being specifically targeted for spearheading the rise of prices in the group chat. The raiders started banging and kicking his door, trying to force it open. Blondie might be rich, but could all that cash save him from what was coming? He stood there, unsure of what to do as the people continuously tried to break in. Finally, the crazed cult of Mr. Jiang's hungry soldiers had gone full tilt. The snowstorm continued to rage on, not showing any signs of stopping anytime soon. Inside Han Feng's stronghold, the mess had accumulated as wires and supplies littered the ground. He was still working on his Home Alone-style trap on the door, causing a lot of mess. Han Feng did everything he was supposed to do to rig the door, but the energy reading indicated that there was no power going through. Just as he was wondering what went wrong, the hurriedly tied-together bunch of wires exploded and burned. The line must have become live right then and there. Caught in the blast, Han Feng coughed and tried to recover. He extinguished the fire on the wire. He still could not figure out what he was doing wrong and what was making the process so difficult. If the internet were still working, this would not be a problem at all. Unfortunately, someone started knocking on his door without him getting his door trap up in time. Han Feng stood up and carefully looked through the peephole to confirm who was on the other side of the door. He could not see a face, but he saw someone with a very short stature and hair sticking out. It was that outcast girl again. This time, she came over with her signature nonchalant face while asking for help. This was not a good time for Han Feng, as he was busy trying to improvise some traps inside. But then he remembered the incident that sent him back to the past, when he was seduced by a witch and clobbered by a madman. He released his grasp from the door handle, fearing what might be lurking on the other side. Han Feng warned the girl that people were breaking down doors and robbing supplies. Instead of letting her in, he just told her to return home quickly, as he wouldn't open the door for her. Outcast girl stood in the gloomy, cold hallway. Silence filled the air. Then she started banging on the door even harder and louder. When Han Feng still refused to let her in, she chose to sit and shiver at the entryway's floor. The cold was getting to her, and the voices of the raiders were starting to grow louder as they reached Han Feng's floor. They did not care how many residents lived on the 18th floor. They just came here to break every door open. Two rough-looking men surveyed the 18th floor hallway and celebrated the fact that they were the first ones to arrive. They immediately divided up the rooms to ransack. Coincidentally, Han Feng's room was the nearest one. One of the raiders took a crowbar to start working on the door. They introduced themselves as people who delivered resources first to see if anyone was home. Inside, Han Feng had taken the girl and covered her mouth to prevent any noise. When the raiders did not hear any response from the inside, they proceeded to try and force their way into the room using a single crowbar. Han Feng quietly assured the outcast girl that those bastards wouldn't be able to make a dent in his reinforced door. Hearing his reassuring words, she visibly calmed down. The door handle flipped up and down multiple times, but the raiders could not figure out a way in. With the sturdy door getting them nowhere, the raiders decided to mark Han Feng's place and proceed to the next door first. It was a good thing that the reinforced door and handle were installed. With 5-centimeter thick iron plates reinforcing the frame, even the contractor who installed it was shocked. Han Feng was so busy feeling good about his decisions that he forgot to let go of the girl's mouth. He was too afraid to make a noise and attract attention. Still, Outcast Girl thanked him for taking her in before the raiders saw her sitting outside. They opted to wait a few more minutes just to be sure, but it sounded like those raiders were gone now. Han Feng immediately got back to fixing his trap. If he could do this right, those who dared to touch his door again would get electrocuted to death. The girl curiously asked what he was doing, and he introduced it as his electrocution defense measure. He even condescendingly told her that she wouldn't understand even if he explained. Well, he didn't even understand the thing himself, and installing this electrocution device was proving impossible. Little did he know, she was an expert when it came to anti-theft devices and voltage differences. These were very simple concepts for her. So, Outcast Girl coached Han Feng from the side, instructing him to cut the power supply while wrapping the bare wire around the door handle carefully. From there, they connected the next wire from the circuit box to the handle and, for the finale, turned on the power supply. When he measured the live current in the handle, the tester indicated a high level of electricity. When asked how she knew about this complicated stuff, she answered that the true eye of the evil king possessed the ability to see the truth of everything in the world. Since his trap was done with the help of Outcast Girl, he asked what she needed help with. She did not bother telling a story or anything like that. She just emptied out the contents of her backpack on the couch, ignoring Han Feng. Then, the girl boldly declared that the true eye of the evil king would be staying in this place from now on. It took Han Feng a second to process what he had just heard. He was obviously very opposed to having this girl living in his private space, and desperately urged her to go back to her house quickly. Han Feng was so flustered by the idea that he tripped on the wires coiled around the floor, his body launching forward. After wobbling for a few seconds, he fell on the solid ground, making a mess in the process. On his hands was a bright purple color emanating a bizarre energy. Tripping on his feet and falling on the ground should have hurt quite a lot, but it didn't. That was when he noticed where he fell. His coffee table, which was solid just a second ago, had turned into some sort of moldable and clay-like form. Could it be that he unconsciously made the coffee table turn soft? Hanfeng finally noticed the purple light dancing around his hands and immediately connected it to the bizarre soft property of the table. Even the toolbox and the tools nearby had turned wonky upon being touched by the light. He grabbed a hammer, and the metal head bent on itself. Hanfeng waved the hammer around, and it started losing its shape. In simple terms, the purple light could cause items to turn soft somehow. Outcast Girl witnessed this bizarre incident with her own 2 eyes and did not make a peep. She was so quiet that he forgot there was someone else in the room, and got too carried away figuring out his new ability. Outcast Girl just looked at him with the same blank stare. Then she lit up and labeled him as an emissary chosen by the true eye of the evil king, whatever that might mean. Hanfeng chose to play along, assuming the role of a subordinate selected by the evil king instead of revealing his power. This girl's thinking seemed peculiar, so he might get away with it. As fellow emissaries, she proposed that they help each other, meaning Hanfeng's apartment, where he rested, should be shared. Just as he was about to outrightly reject her again, Outcast Girl was already heading toward one of the rooms as if she owned it. He hadn't even agreed to the proposal yet, and that lady already thought they were building a lair for the evil king. It wasn't too big of a problem, so he just let her be. What was more important right now was to figure out what exactly that purple light was. At a cursory glance, it seemed to have the ability to turn things soft, which meant he possessed more than just 2 kinds of lights. Maybe there were many more that he just hadn't discovered yet. The inciting incident was him tripping over the cables and almost crashing into the coffee table that had turned soft. It would be logical to try to recreate the feeling of that moment to reproduce the power. After concentrating on that image for a while, Hanfeng managed to summon the purple lights again. He was getting the hang of calling his powers automatically now. The first thing he tried it out on was the cables that triggered the discovery in the first place. Then, he branched out to other things, namely, a sharp kitchen knife. Curious, he activated the purple light, and its grimy essence quickly swallowed the whole blade. He was shocked to see that the softening effect had no problem working on steel as well. It got so soft that the once sharp knife felt like jelly wrapping around his skin. After that, he went on a spree and tried this softening touch on many other materials too. Every household material he could think of was susceptible to the power. The longer he used the purple light, the softer they became. Other than altering an object's softness, there were no other changes. By itself, the purple light's effect was pretty useless and impractical. Then, another idea struck Hanfeng, a concept that he was already familiar with. What if he combined 2 different kinds of light? What if he mixed purple and green and applied them to a softened object at the same time? It did not take him long to get good at merging 2 lights into one. He grabbed the softened and melted-looking kitchen knife, applied purple and green lights all over it, and screamed, "Bankai," as if he was from Bleach. Much to his surprise, it really worked. The melted and softened kitchen knife returned to its solid state, tough and sharp as ever. Hell, he could even use the blade as a mirror, considering how polished it looked after applying the combined lights. He surveyed the room and found a box of tissues lying around. Curious, Hanfeng did the same thing to a piece of tissue paper and tried to bend it out of shape. He had a very hard time doing so, which meant that he could change the toughness of an item when 2 different lights were combined. Moreover, the toughness that green and purple lights imbued in these objects was quite extreme. Speaking of toughness, doesn't he have a very important and practical use for this ability? Meanwhile, the owners who had raided other people's supplies were starting to act selfishly as they refused to hand over the resources they stole, choosing to keep them for themselves in fear of running out. They argued that they didn't want to split their hard-earned haul with the women and elderly, but they still had to keep it a secret, or they could get screwed if it leaked. While the raiders were plotting their shameless crime, one of them noticed something odd happening on the walls. Much to their disbelief, the wall of the 18th floor appeared to be wriggling around. Shining a light on its surface, a face started emerging from the supposedly solid concrete wall. It moved and grimaced as if it were trying to break free of the wall's clutches. The raiders might be tough criminals when they pillaged for resources, but this was something unexplainable and downright horrifying. As soon as the face's arms joined in, as though it were a ghostly apparition trying to break through the mortal realm, it was lights out. Anyone would have thought that they were witnessing paranormal activity in real life. The raiders hurriedly ran back to the floor below, afraid of what the 18th floor might have in store for them. Meanwhile, Hanfeng was struggling as breathing while stretching the soft walls with his face was quite a hard thing to do. He had to get out of that soft and clay-like mess before he ran out of oxygen for the sake of experimentation. He picked one of his walls as a testing ground for his combined purple and green light powers, but applying these lights to an entire wall was too strenuous. After a while, he managed to get enormous amounts of light to join and blend with one another. It was an extremely exhausting process, but it gave him an even tougher and sturdier wall than he already had. To test it out, he brought out a sledgehammer for verification. He stood in front of the enhanced wall and lifted the sledgehammer up, determined to check if he had succeeded. With a look of anticipation, he began. Han Feng swung the hammer as hard as he could, and it made solid contact with the wall's surface. He did this multiple times, so many times that he could barely hold the heavy sledgehammer properly. Nevertheless, the exhaustion was worth it, as his enhanced wall proved to be extremely tough. He couldn't even scrape its surface with all his strength. Back in the basement car park, most of the raiders had come back to surrender a few bags of their loot. One man scratched his head as he apologized for only managing to seize a little bit of food while being audited. He seemed on edge, and when someone tapped him on the shoulder, his nerves flared. The guy who tapped him on the shoulder proceeded to take him down to the floor, securing his arms behind his back. This concerned citizen was one of the Jin brothers. He pressed down hard and demanded to know where the rest of the stolen food was hidden. The raider denied hiding the supplies, but Jinbro clearly saw him carrying 3 big bags before surrendering just one little bag. Even with his arms getting twisted up, he continued to vehemently deny hiding resources. Since it looked like he was not willing to speak with just a little arm twist, perhaps a good beating would squeeze some honesty out of the man. Just as Jinbro was about to wail at the dishonest raider, someone calmly stopped him with a simple shoulder tap. Much to everyone's surprise, it was the man of the people, Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang urged the young man to let the raider go first so they could talk things out if there really was a problem. He heard the case of secretly hiding food that was supposed to be for everyone and wanted to deal with the matter in his own way. Jinbro finally relented and threw the piece of trash down the ground for Mr. Jiang's sake. When the raider looked up, he saw a helping hand offering its assistance. It belonged to the representative of the basement car park, the benevolent Mr. Jiang. His smile gave the people peace and calm, but there was always something sinister behind that kind face. After a few minutes of talking and convincing, the man finally brought out the rest of the food that he pillaged. Just as previously said, there were 2 more big bags unaccounted for. The man shamefully apologized for being greedy, as he had 5 mouths to feed at home, and the food that was distributed was not nearly enough. Hearing this, Mr. Jiang took his share of today's ration and selflessly handed it over to the man. He respected the rules. People must hand over the things collected to receive rations according to the number of people in a household, but he could sympathize and understand those who were having a hard time living like that. The kind gesture almost made the dishonest raider cry right then and there as he thanked Mr. Jiang from the bottom of his heart. The lying thief, Lao Wang, swore that if Mr. Jiang needed anything in the future, he would be at his service. Turning to the masses lined up in a single file, Mr. Jiang urged them to quickly receive their rations and go back home quickly. The Jin brothers were curious as to how Mr. Jiang got the thief to hand over everything so willingly, and why he gave the guy extra rations from his own share. He insisted that he did not do much and just helped the guy understand a certain principle. Of course, the Jin brothers were curious about this principle. Mr. Jiang explained that in the history of the country, there were multiple times when riots and rebellions occurred due to the clash of benefits between different social classes. However, the nature of these riots was defined as a collective social behavior. If you were not arrested on the spot, you wouldn't be convicted in a court of law. All Mr. Jiang did was inform the man that if he broke the rules, the collective would no longer welcome him. He would become nothing but a common robbing criminal, not to mention the punishment of the law after the disaster passes. That guy would have to face the revenge of the owners he stole from. Those fears compounded and made the decision easy. Uncle Liu watched everything unfold from afar, just a passive observer. He knew that Mr. Jiang deliberately left the fact that within those groups of rioters, there would always be a leader leading the collective's actions. Heroes and even villains will always emerge in troubled times, and he could see that potential in this Jiang kid. As for our MC, he was still busy swinging his sledgehammer on different parts of his house to make sure that they were virtually indestructible. This activity was draining him quite a lot, but at least he has invincible windows now. Now that the entire house has been strengthened and toughness verification is also finished, he can finally chill, right? At that moment, someone started knocking on his door again. This is becoming more and more common. He treated softly on the floor and wondered if it was those resource-stealing neighbors again. Upon arriving at the entryway, he looked through the peephole to see what was up. Much to his surprise, it was none other than Lee Hyuna calling out his name with tears in her eyes while shivering in the cold. This was an extremely familiar scene. She went on about how she couldn't betray the feelings he had towards her. That one can only understand someone's heart during tough times, and only someone who truly loved her would invest in her unconditionally. If he just opened the door, she would gladly open her heart. Han Feng's mind replayed the night he died after being ambushed in his own room. He recalled how this witch and his partner made a dead fool of him. Today this girl was repeating the exact same words she said to him before he died. This means that outside that door, there's a man lying in wait to bash his head in if he fell for the act. Han Feng's first thought, now that his revenge can finally be put into action, was to get the gun and kill this dog couple directly. But he stopped halfway through. Since there was no electricity right now, the enemy hiding in the dark would have the advantage while he was out in the open. If Han Feng can't kill in one shot, then he might lose his life instead. If he used electric shocks, then tricking two people into touching a trap at the same time would be basically impossible. For now, he tried his best to calm down as he turned his generators off. He had one shot at this, and that's even more reason for him not to lose his focus. He needed to calmly analyze the situation. The one posing a higher threat wasn't the witch at the front door, but the man hidden in the dark. Han Feng needs to locate his position and deliver a fatal blow upon stepping out. That first part could be a little tricky though, but he had prior knowledge of how this event happened in the past. As far as he could remember, that man should be hiding in the blind spot behind the door. He estimated the approximate position of his killer through the wall while clutching the sledgehammer tightly. Han Feng had an idea. Although he would need to spend some time to act it out, it could be his best shot. Touching the surface of the wall, purple lights coalesced in his hand as he hoped that this plan would work. Li Hyuna continued acting like a damsel in distress as she desperately called Han Feng's name to be saved. The man she brought to kill and rob Han Feng was already beginning to change his mind, but she insisted that this loser, Han Feng, had a ton of resources. Truckloads of supplies delivered a day before the disaster. Anyone would jump on the chance to plunder enough resources to feed themselves for quite a few days. But they made the mistake of choosing the wrong superpowered target. The wall behind the killer morphed and moved like clay. A sledgehammer-shaped protrusion came out, seemingly trying to break through the soft wall. The killer was starting to hear some weird noises nearby, but Li Hyuna was too focused on performing the scam. When the killer identified that the noise was coming from behind, he was too late to turn around. A freaking sledgehammer coated with a softened cement wall collided with his jaw, undoubtedly breaking the whole thing with destructive force. The witch stood back in shock as she watched her partner in crime fly like a rag doll. She asked what happened, but he was in no shape to talk. His body was shivering with agony and cold. It was right then that the seemingly unopenable door slowly creaked open. Han Feng burst out of his room with a fire extinguisher in his hand and a sly little smile on his face. The haggard witch looked at the supposed loser in fear. Before she could even speak another word, Han Feng let that fire extinguisher rip, covering the thought with that white stuff as she screamed in pain. Li Hyuna was a good actress. She managed to keep her soft cadence as she begged Han Feng to stop spraying her with the white substance. She even ingested some of it, which you weren't supposed to do. The witch coughed and coughed as her body began breaking down from the cold brought on by the extinguishing agent. When she opened her eyes, she saw the rich blonde prick she had brought as muscle to rob Han Feng lying on the floor, convulsing uncontrollably and desperately asking for help. Unfortunately for him, Li Hyuna wasn't in the best position to provide assistance either. Han Feng's hand emerged from the extinguishing agent fog as he reached for the witch. She reacted quickly, but he managed to grab her hair and scarf simultaneously. It must have been the adrenaline pumping through her system, but Li Hyuna managed to break free, though she lost a handful of hair in the process. She was one slippery son of a gun. She managed to stand and run out of the way while screaming for help. Han Feng clicked his tongue as the witch escaped far too quickly. The same couldn't be said for the man he had clocked with a sledgehammer, though. He was still struggling to even stand. Fueled by anger and frustration, Han Feng kicked the rich prick in the stomach. Just as he was about to stomp on the man who had killed him in his past life, the blonde prick pleaded for him to wait just a second. This fool started bringing up his dad's name and all that nonsense. He promised that if Han Feng touched him again, bad things would happen. Han Feng responded by delivering another solid punch to the face, goading the spoiled brat about what he was going to do next. Han Feng didn't give a damn who this prick's daddy was. He intended to inflict as much pain as possible and beat the hell out of this brat to his heart's content. Seeing that threats wouldn't work, Blondie tried a more respectful approach. He called Han Feng a brother, asserting that they didn't even have beef with each other, so the beating was totally unjustified. Infuriated by memories of his past life, Han Feng punched the bastard's head to the ground once more. Han Feng mounted his chest and continued raining blows while voicing everything in his heart. This man had treated his life as if it were worthless. He was killed when he was just minding his own business. With his gloves painted with blood and his eyes filled with malice, Han Feng urged the prick to say something. Blondie might have wanted to, but his jaws and mouth were too messed up to form another sentence. Han Feng stood up and grabbed the modified baseball bat lying on the floor. Holding the weapon that had ended his life and started a new one, he looked at the defenseless culprit lying helpless on the ground. The rich prick cried and coughed up blood as he demanded to know why he was being treated this way. Han Feng's temper flared. The man who had killed him without any valid reason now dared to demand one from him. He raised the steel bat, customized with nails, and swung it down on Blondie's face with full force. The sound of skull cracking and blood splattering filled the hallway of the 18th floor. He had finally gotten his revenge. He had killed the man who killed him. Han Feng's blood was pumping, his adrenaline was spent, and he looked at the gruesome sight before him. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, he almost threw up at the gory mess. Luckily, he managed to turn his head to the side and vomit on the ground. Han Feng tried his best to recover his composure when a familiar voice cleared her throat. He turned around and saw Outcast Girl sitting by the door, quietly playing with the man's blood. She must have seen everything transpire and offered to help him with the mess. They took care of the crime scene quickly. She wasn't even fazed by the gore and blood. Han Feng reckoned there was something off about this girl, and it wasn't a good idea to let her stay in his place. He used the excuse of being targeted by more criminals seeking revenge at any moment to convince her to go back home lest she get caught in the crossfire. Sipping her orange juice, she didn't seem bothered by the threat of more intruders at all. Han Feng just really wanted to get her out of there for her own good. But she was adamant about staying in the apartment, and it seemed like nothing could convince her otherwise. He emphasized that the following days would be dangerous, and both of them could die in the process. She resolutely placed her glass of orange juice on the table as if making a stand. Outcast Girl assured him that the evil king's true eye would protect them no matter what. But for now, the evil king's power is depleted, and she needs some sleep. Han Feng was done with this shtick, so he grabbed her arm before she could lock herself in the room. He demanded she stop trying to brush him off with her wannabe edgy nonsense and listen as they were about to face something very serious. She simply glanced at his tight grip on her shoulder, then looked up. She told him to go on and opened the door to the room. Confused, Han Feng chose to follow her lead and peeked through the door. I don't know what he saw, but it shocked him to his core. Han Feng was speechless. Meanwhile, the basement parking lot was bustling with activity. Some people were loitering around, blocking the way for others who hadn't received their rations yet. Nevertheless, the system worked once more. They were still short on supplies to accommodate everyone, but it seemed peaceful for the most part. Lee Hyona, who had just escaped Han Feng's grasp, lined up with the plebeians to get her share now that she had nowhere else to go and no one to suck up to. She stated her name and apartment number and was given a piece of bread. The witch was still bitter about how everything had gone down the night before. Her wealthy sugar daddy hadn't returned after inexplicably collapsing so suddenly. The only logical explanation was that Han Feng had set a trap in advance, but that only made her more curious about what he had hidden behind that door. Before the commotion, she had seen a light flicker and felt a warm breeze coming from inside. That meant he had some kind of power source. Maybe he hadn't just stockpiled supplies. Maybe he had been prepared for the whole snowstorm in advance. All she felt was bitterness. The sneaky bastard hadn't said a word to her about this impending disaster. He enjoyed the good stuff while she accepted his trash. She wanted to find a way to get a closer look inside Han Feng's place. While she was busy daydreaming and seething, she bumped into another man lined up for rations. The man recognized her, and a mysterious bright light flared right in Lee Hyona's direction. The man with the flashlight cheerfully invited Lee Hyona to Block 5's lobby, where some survivors lit a brazier for warmth. Not interested, she insisted on keeping herself warm at home. But the man was being way too pushy. He bragged about how much food he had, alleging that he had enough food for a few days if shared by two at his house. The creep had always liked girls with her style, so this was his chance to score. Lee Hyona might be an insufferable witch, but even she felt her skin crawl at the creep's proposal. Seeing as his attempts to lure her with supplies failed, the creep started making a scene, accusing her of falsely claiming resources for other households. Which was true. Hearing the commotion, the other survivors were starting to pay attention. Lee Hyona shoved the creep out of the way, slapping him with the food she had just scammed. Humiliated in front of everyone, the creep raised his hand, motioning to bash her with his flashlight. Before he could assault the witch, Nurse Jin intervened. She slapped the creep with so much force it sent the bastard flying to a nearby wall. Seeing how the situation had escalated, the other survivors opted to call their almighty Mr. Jiang to handle the situation. Lee Hyona was stunned by the nurse's strength. In case she's injured or feeling unwell, the angelic nurse handed her a name card and an invitation for a checkup. Not wanting to draw any more attention, Hyona thanked Nurse Jin and tried to get out of there as fast as possible. But the creep was persistent. He stood back up, charged at Nurse Jin, and pinned her to the ground while calling perhaps the kindest person in the building a stinky hoe. Just when he was about to wail on her, someone grabbed the creep off the nurse with a forceful yank. With one swift motion, our favorite gangster, Brother Lee, neutralized the raging creep. His lips might be chapped, and he might be severely malnourished, but Brother Lee cannot stand men who hit women. Finally, Mr. Jiang arrived to defuse the commotion. The creep started pointing fingers at Hyona, snitching about her falsely claiming resources and hanging out with the rich kid, inflating supply prices. Seeing as the bastard hadn't learned his lesson yet, Brother Lee jumped him once more. But before he could get to the creep, Mr. Zhang grabbed the snitching creep by the collar, lecturing him about the committee's purpose. They are supposed to protect the weak and make sure that everyone has something to eat. In the end, all the creep got was a stern warning for his offense. Mr. Zhang approached Nurse Jin and Brother Li, apologizing and inviting the two to the committee. Brother Li passed. He is not interested in robbing others in the name of the committee. He would rather starve to death than compromise his principles. Likewise, Nurse Jin declined, albeit more politely. She can't just accept the committee's forceful methods, but she would be glad to help the sick. While the two made their way out of the car park, Hyuna interjected and asked Mr. Zhang if she could join the group. The witch clung to Mr. Zhang's arm. As shitty as she looked, she tried to use her diminished feminine charms to latch onto someone with power. Being the Sigma that he is, Mr. Zhang clarified that they only accept people who can offer valuable skills. Brother Li is a fighter, and Nurse Jin can treat the sick. A hoe like Lee Hyuna is useless in the apocalypse. The current her has no value worth roping into the committee. The witch racked her brain and insisted that she knew a place that had plenty of resources. Meanwhile, inside Han Feng's room, it sounds like he's playing a guessing game with his new roommate. Between Outcast Girl's hands, there was some sort of black hole. As she pulls one item after another from the hole, Han Feng shears. He's been trying to describe an item he needs, but this girl just pulled out a mannequin. To explain what's happening, Outcast Girl revealed that she has a dimensional storage ability. She can open a black hole that can suck everything in the vicinity. While it's easy to suck items in, taking them out is not as easy. Her accuracy in finding items is very low. Han Feng is curious about the black hole's insides and how the ability works. Outcast Girl herself had never explored the interior before. Since she had no problem rummaging with her hands, Han Feng reckoned that he could take a look inside. So, he inserted his head into the girl's black hole. Don't call the cops. It's not how it sounds like. With half of his body inside the subspace, he opened his eyes to a vast dimension filled with endless supplies. The scale was unbelievably massive. Supplies and random bullshit floated around in chaos, as expected of the superhuman who emptied the supermarkets in the East region overnight. Suddenly, Han Feng started tearing up as he realized something. The space inside the black hole is devoid of oxygen. He forcefully pulled his head out of the gasless subspace and gobbled air like a madman. Just a few seconds inside that accursed subspace was traumatizing enough. He complained to Outcast Girl. She did not even warn him that there was no air inside. It felt like all the moisture in his body was nearly sucked dry. Not minding his complaints, she continued to rummage through her infinite stash, and finally found what they were looking for. As it turned out, Han Feng was looking for remote-controlled toys. Boxes of drones and RC cars poured out of the black hole. Han Feng was so hyped that he forgot about his near-death experience in an instant. On the cold, icy stairs of Floor 18, some raiders try their luck to rob some poor souls again. By now this floor has garnered infamy with rumors of a monster roaming the halls. Glass's raider doesn't believe such supernatural rumors. Besides, Mr. Zhang personally sent them here to scout the floor. They cannot afford to let their boss down. Some of them are skeptical of the info they got from that girl, Lee Hyuna. Still, workers must work and earn their keep. Unbeknownst to the raiders, they are being watched by Han Feng and his new toys. Fortunately, they managed to get the monitoring system in place just in time to anticipate the uninvited guests. They've devised a plan to deal with situations like this one. Han Feng will light the fire, and Plan 2 can commence. Setting a 2-minute timer on his stopwatch, he exited the room. On the stairs, the raiders stopped in their tracks upon hearing a faint and creepy sound up ahead. What followed the sound was a cacophony of lights. The source of those lights was none other than the remote-controlled cars Han Feng had set in advance. The raiders calmed down upon seeing the toys. What they did not see were the explosives strapped on those toys. When the fuse burned out, small explosions filled the stairs, swallowing the raiders. Don't worry, it's not lethal. It was just some lime explosives to blind the intruders. While incapacitated, a drone flew over their heads. On the drone's tail, they saw yet another explosive that made the raiders scatter and retreat to where they had come from. They tried to outrun the flying drone, but Outcast Girl is an adept pilot. Han Feng insisted that they must really teach these bastards a lesson this time around. But in his desire to toy with the raiders, the drone got way too low and too close to one of them, leaving it vulnerable to an attack. In a desperate attempt to get out of Glass Raider's swings, one of the drone's propellers got clipped by the crowbar. With the loss of control on the drone's left side, stabilization became impossible. They can't afford to lose this one, as it's their only aerial toy. Outcast Girl tried to regain control, but the spiraling flying toy had flown out of the window. The timer Han Feng had set finally hit 0, and the firework attached to their only drone exploded like it was an Arctic New Year celebration outside. This explosion caused the right propeller to malfunction, and they finally lost all control. Outcast Girl tried to salvage the situation by making a touch emergency landing outside the window of a certain floor. Han Feng suited up, preparing to go out and get their toy. That drone is way too important to them right now. But their aerial camera caught something odd. Between the stairs lies what looks like a corpse. Upon zooming in, it became clear that the alleged corpse looked an awful lot like Brother Lee. Han Feng wonders what the gangster is doing out on the cold stairs. Maybe he was robbed too. Right now, there are 2 reasons to go out there. Han Feng warned his roommate not to open the door for anyone. He packed some light essentials in case anything happened. Outcast Girl also handed him a radio to maintain communication. As a final touch, Han Feng grabbed his pistol, loaded it up, and hoped that he wouldn't need to use it outside. Flashlight in hand, Han Feng cautiously descended the staircase. The 17th, 16th, and 15th floors were safe now that the scouting raiders had retreated. Based on the measurements from the drone, the temperature outside is already at negative 49.8 Celsius. Without any protective measures, humans will freeze to death within minutes, if not seconds. Brother Lee is in a very precarious situation, and Han Feng needs to be quick if he wants to rescue his bro. Meanwhile, the scouting team relayed what happened to them on the upper floors. Mr. Jiang calmly listened and thanked them for their efforts. For their troubles, all they got was 3 pieces of thick clothes and a pack of noodles each. Given how scarce resources have become, these noodle packs have become priceless, rewarded only for those who contribute to the cause. Looking raggedy as fuck, Lee Hyuna asked Mr. Jiang if she could finally join their group now. He coldly rejected her again. Right now, they can't even confirm if this attack was Han Feng's doing. Moreover, if not for Uncle Liu personally witnessing someone moving resources before the disaster, Mr. Jiang wouldn't even entertain her words. For now, they need to gather up and check the floor with superior numbers. Whether Lee Hyona's information is real or false will be confirmed in this next operation. This is her chance to demonstrate her worth. Taking a steel pipe and gripping the weapon with both hands, she's determined to do whatever it takes to get in. Before going up, Mr. Jiang reiterated that everyone is important manpower for the collective and must mind their safety. With the big boss at the forefront, a sizable raiding group assembled and took to the stairs. Halfway through their climb, they spotted the unconscious and freezing Brother Lee. Taking a hot water canister, Mr. Jiang made Li Zi drink and woke up with his tongue burning. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked at the raiding force surrounding him with contempt. He clicked his tongue, feeling unlucky that these bastards were the ones that rescued him. Mr. Jiang's lapdog jumped into action and demanded that he thank Mr. Jiang for saving his life. Brother Lee just sarcastically laughed at that. The gangster still refuses to bend to the collective's will, calling them out for pretending to be heroes when they're just thieves. The lapdog tried to curse and beat him up, but Mr. Jiang held him back. Once more, the always smiling big boss extended another invitation to Li Zi to join forces with them. And just like before, he harshly rejected the offer. The raiders were getting annoyed at his stubbornness and shamelessness after being rescued. Brother Lee does not like being forced to do as he's told. Before he could turn around and climb up the stairs, Mr. Jiang firmly grabbed him by the shoulders. The shady bastard smiled broadly and asked if there was some kind of misunderstanding here. He insisted that they just wanted to bolster their strength to give those weaker a higher chance of survival. But Brother Lee can see through Bastard Jiang's phony smile. The committee, which is supposedly committed to protecting the weak, had been rationing only 1 meal every 3 days for the elderly. That's practically a death sentence in this situation. Moreover, Brother Lee has no other relatives nearby, so guilt-tripping him into joining won't work at all. On the stairs leading to the next floor, Han Feng is silently observing and listening to their conversation. What he heard just now confirms that Jiang Xueyu doesn't really care about everyone. It also makes sense why they want to rope in younger people while letting the old, weak, sick, and disabled people slowly rot away. If this goes on, the committee will eventually erupt in conflicts. Done with Brother Lee's rudeness, the lapdog jumped in to bark on the gangster's face for not appreciating the kindness they were extending. Lapdog made the mistake of entering Brother Lee's attack range. Without batting an eye, the gangster with a heart of gold headbutted the lapdog as hard as he could. After that headbutt, Brother Lee's whole body trembled in pain, but he continued to stand on business. Just one stare from the man with nothing to lose made the armed raiders subconsciously step back. While his men wordlessly looked at him in anticipation of the next order, Mr. Jiang contemplated. Slowly, the armed raiders got over their fear and slowly started closing in on Lee. While trembling and swaying, struggling to even stay upright, he challenged these thieving bastards to come at him. Still monitoring the situation from 1 floor above, Han Feng noticed that his bro was about to fall at any moment, and he needed help. As much as he wants to, there are way too many raiders down there. If he intervenes, he might fall victim to their numbers. But Brother Lee had helped him out so many times before. Han Feng can't just watch his benefactor throw his life away in a miserable last stand. Suddenly, an idea struck the young man's mind. He pulled out his pistol and aimed downwards. He calmly watched the commotion unravel with a blicky in his hand and a finger in the trigger. No one has even swung at him, and Brother Lee's already swaying like he's about to collapse again. Han Feng finally had enough of the raiders ganging up on his boy and fired a warning shot. The bullet nearly hit Mr. Jiang's lapdog in his crotch, freaking everybody out. Hearing the sound of a gunshot cut through their confidence. They could not believe that someone had a firearm in the building. Han Feng slowly descended the stairs while his gun was raised, demanding that nobody move. It was quite effective in getting the raiders off their backs. Nervously looking around, Brother Lee saw the familiar gun and immediately identified his little bro. While the robbing raiders were shitting their pants, Mr. Jiang remained unnaturally composed. In the crowd, Li Hyona's eyes widened at the sight of the gun-toting Han Feng. He carefully handed Brother Lee his house key, and they slowly retreated while keeping an eye on the intruders. The underlings looked at their big boss for their next move. Some of them wanted to attack the two while they were fumbling around. That thought was quickly dashed away when Han Feng fired yet another warning shot. He had already warned them not to move, and they were still trying his patience. He then ordered them to throw their weapons away and kneel. Slowly, the raiders followed the order while maintaining their fearful vigilance. This should buy Han Feng and his bro enough time to go back to the room safely. After a few seconds of kneeling in silence, and as the duo's footsteps got farther, Mr. Jiang was the first one to stand up and ask if anyone knew who the gunman was. Li Hyona took this opportunity to snitch that it was Han Feng, the owner of the place they were aiming for in the first place. Jiang's lapdog directed his anger towards the witch for not warning them that they were targeting an armed man. Mr. Jiang, de-escalated the situation, believing that Hyona had no reason to lie. He also laid down what this means to his men. If that Han Feng guy even has such a weapon, isn't it only fair to assume that he also has supplies? The thought of stealing more supplies lit a fire under the brainwashed crowd's asses. Mr. Jiang is pretty much convinced that the deliveries Uncle Liu saw before the catastrophe are the real deal. While they have renewed hope of securing more supplies, it might be tough to proceed with their original plan, given that any one of them could get shot. But Mr. Jiang believes that Han Feng is a wuss incapable of murder, or he would have capped a few of them by now. Furthermore, no one can hide in their house forever and not come out, right? Still, the big boss gave his men the rundown for a change of plans. For now, they will return and prepare some safety measures before coming back. They must take down room 1804 as soon as possible. Speaking of room 1804, the duo had finally arrived outside the room. Until now, Brother Lee's hands are still trembling, making it hard to unlock the door, while Han Feng keeps his eyes peeled and fingers ready for any retaliation. As soon as Brother Lee successfully unlocked the door, he felt pleasant, warm air wafting from inside, a sensation he had been craving for. When they got in, Brother Lee was surprised to see a fully functional radiator and a running generator. Behind one of the glass doors was a sea of supplies that would make anyone's mouth water. Brother Lee turned to his little bro and curiously asked what was the deal with this heavenly house. While the gangster was reveling at the luxurious setup, Outcast Girl popped out of her room to ask if Han Feng retrieved the drone. He was so caught up in rescuing his bro that he forgot what he came down there for in the first place. 2 hours and several hefty meals later, Brother Lee has finally been caught up with a portion of the true story. Han Feng simply told the gullible gangster that he had predicted the disaster and had prepared as much as possible. The young man also apologized to his bro for not looping him in. He was just worried about the information about his supplies being leaked, so he limited the number of people who knew. After finishing his meal, Brother Lee stood up and bowed with utmost gratitude. If not for his little bro, he would have starved and frozen to death. The fact that he can enjoy a warm meal again is already an extreme kindness. When the gangster lifted his head, tears of appreciation were streaming down his face. Han Feng insisted that he was just returning the favor for all the help Brother Lee had given him. Feeling moved to the core, Brother Lee praised Han Feng for being such a good guy and brother. Now that he's here, Lee also shared the overall situation in the building complex as of now. Things have become very different now. The last time he updated Han Feng about current events was before the power supply was cut off. Since that day, that Zhang bastard has been going around stealing supplies from everyone in the name of collectivism. He amassed a lot of followers but also made some formidable enemies who disapproved of his methods. Some people could not live off the minuscule rations and left the group, but the big boss seemed not too concerned about the dwindling of their numbers. He might look unbothered, but behind everyone's back, he regularly sends Jin Qinwu, his lapdog, to take care of deserters under the guise of reducing the threat against the collective. Han Feng was surprised. Jin Qinwu and Jin Qinwen used to be a sweet, smart, and caring pair of twins. Basically, this collective committee expanded its influence and size quickly through underhanded tricks. But Brother Lee firmly believes in the saying that evil has its retribution. Zhang and his goons made their biggest mistake when they tried to rob a man named Li Zhenghao. You see, that guy was a boxer who was once the country's middleweight champion. If that was the case, it is natural that the twerps in the committee got beaten up badly. but that Zhang bastards refused to admit defeat, lose face, and lose the respect of his cult. Under his direct orders, raiders kept going to Li Zhenghao to fight. Of course, all of them got pummeled to a bloody pulp. Because of this incident, the boxer amassed a following of his own. Among them, there are two standouts who are starting to make a name for themselves. One is Zheng Yangyu, a boxing fan. He used to participate in underground boxing matches for a few years. He is notorious for his speed. The other is called Jin Zhongzai, another diehard fan of Zheng Hao. He is blessed with overwhelming strength, and he is built like a monster. With these two on the boxer's corner, the birth of a new faction in the neighborhood was imminent. And they hate the hypocrisy of Zhang Shuiyu with passion. Brother Li added that bastard Jiang was desperate to resolve this conflict and finally decided to target Han Feng's supplies. He tried to warn his little bro, but he passed out on the stairs. This is good, as it means that Mr. Jiang's empire is slowly crumbling from the inside. While the trio were discussing their next move, skittering noises could be heard from outside. Outcast Girl pulled out the live camera feed outside the door and saw the raiders gathering right outside. Han Feng stood up to set up his electric door handle trap. Outcast Girl stopped him from rushing and warned him about the smell of sulfur coming from the hallway. Without warning, the whole room shook. Something just exploded outside. Mr. Zhang and the raiders are actually crazy enough to use bombs. By the sound of it, they should be using localized demolition explosives, and they shouldn't be too powerful. Looking at the live feed, it finally makes sense why they're lugging heavy riot shields. It's also apparent that Li Hyona was the one who tipped off these bastards. While the raiders set up their next load, Han Feng hurriedly plugged in his electric trap. A second later, an anguished scream can be heard outside. It looks like the trap worked, and it took down some poor schmuck. The raiders stepped back in fear, but Mr. Zhang ordered them to continue placing explosives. This time, they need to target the borders of the door and double the packets. Blindly following his orders, the raiders armed the walls and blew it up once more. The boom cracked the walls but failed to blow open the entrance. Mr. Zhang is certain that their explosives are not the problem. The doors are just equipped with ample defensive measures. Refusing to give up, Mr. Zhang upped the packets to 3 this time around. If nothing happens, then they'll just continue increasing the load. He is determined to take this house down today. Inside, Han Feng and Brother Li barricaded the entrance as best as they could. The third explosion shook the barricade out of place and nearly shattered their eardrums. After that loud-ass explosion, an odd cracking sound can be heard. It seems like the demolition explosives are doing their job and weakening the walls. If this goes on, the cracks will only get bigger and bigger until they give in. Blocking and barricading the entrance is useless, but Han Feng has another idea he wants to try out. They just need to remove the random stuff they lifted and crammed in the entrance. Outcast Girl stepped in to help. Brother Li was skeptical that the little doll could help much until she raised her hands and produced her black hole. Brother Li stepped back in shock and confusion. When she started sucking in the heavy stuff barricading the entrance, Brother Li nearly passed out at the incredulous sight. The work that should have taken them minutes was done in just a second. Brother Li felt a newfound fear for the little girl and her ability. Without any time to explain, Han Feng activated his purple light, coated his hands, and ran for the walls. He spread the purple light all over its surface, softening it like last time to see if he could reshape the cracks on the spot. He has to stay focused and in control, or the hardening process would take a long time. After making sure that all the cracks were accounted for, he activated the green light for the next part. Thankfully, his idea worked. Combining purple and green lights can repair and strengthen the targeted area. Brother Li just saw his 2 new roommates perform tricks outside the realm of possibility. He is tweaking right now. Outcast Girl popped out and nonchalantly warned them to get down. Just in time for the third explosion, the trio squatted down and covered their ears. Han Feng had just finished strengthening his walls, but new cracks were quickly forming again. This time, the raiders have switched their focus and are now bombing the floor. If that's the case, then it will be useless no matter how much Han Feng repairs the affected area. He had to devise yet another plan, but what he came up with might be a bit dangerous and require absolute trust between the 3 of them. Outcast Girl is down with whatever, and Brother Li is a real ride or die no matter what the move is. All they have to do is proceed according to what Han Feng says down to the letter. After a few more rounds of bombing, the door to room 1804 finally gave in. Those demolition explosives finally did their job and blew the entrance wide open. The raiders remained vigilant as they slowly crept inside with their shields up. They are set on clearing up all the supplies they can find. Mr. Jiang also warned his men of any possible angles for ambush. They swarmed Han Feng's house, sweeping the kitchen and the living room for supplies, and mysteriously, they came up empty. All they could find was some rubbish and a box of seeds in the kitchen. Seeing as they wasted so many explosives for trash and seeds, the raiders turned to Li Hyona for answers. She insisted that she did not lie and directed the raiders to the bedroom. As soon as they tried opening the door to the last unchecked room, Brother Lee came out, kicking the shield into the raiders' faces. Behind him was Han Feng, who had his pistol in his hand. He raised the gun and pointed it at Mr. Jiang. Without hesitation, Han Feng pulled the trigger, but the bullet was stopped by the heavy-duty shield. Han Feng warned the fools to get out, or he won't be so polite anymore. Behind the shields, Mr. Jiang confronted him about hiding supplies and neglecting the needs of the collective, making so many residents suffer and starve. He asserted that they came here to demand justice for such a grave offense. The bastard was shameless enough to tell Han Feng to cough up his resources to clear his conscience, spouting some bullshit about working together to triumph over the apocalypse. Han Feng cannot stand this man's unreasonably righteous, awe-inspiring but ultimately insane words when all they're doing is moral kidnapping. But his men have completely bought into the insanity. They are hanging on to their leader's words while looking like a pack of starving wolves looking to vent. Instead of despairing, Han Feng sees this as a chance to manipulate the narrative. Putting on his award-winning offended face, he asked them what and where the supplies they were yapping about. Lee Hyona interjected, insisting that they must have hidden everything somewhere. She reiterated that she saw the light and even felt heat coming inside the last time she was there. Tired of her annoying ass voice, Han Feng fired another shot that made the witch buckle in fear. Unfortunately, the shield protected her from a clean headshot. Han Feng called her shameless for spouting lies. He added that if this witch had not scammed him into exchanging his food and necessities for useless seeds, he would not have been in such a poor state today. Slowly but surely, the raiders started turning on Hyona. Unfortunately, Mr. Jiang was level-headed enough to stop the internal strife from developing and proposed a simple method to see who was lying. All they have to do is go into the bedroom to check if Han Feng's home is really empty. Han Feng acted tough, but he permitted them to do a thorough check, his finger still on the trigger. After a few minutes of tossing the bedroom, all the raiders found there was some more rubbish and a little girl inside. Outcast Girl then played her part. Calling Han Feng her brother, she hugged him and cried that she was hungry and afraid. Now the raiders are pissed that they worked so hard to break the door for half a day just to get nothing. Evidently incensed, Mr. Jiang demanded an explanation from the witch. Now that things have developed this way, and they've wasted so much time and resources on this raid, she must give a plausible explanation, or the raiders would gladly tear her apart. Slowly losing her mind, all she could do was insist that she was not a liar. While that may be true, no one's buying her words anymore. The only logical explanation she can think of is that Han Feng is playing tricks on everyone. As always, she blamed Han Feng for putting her in a tough spot. Lee Hyona finally snapped and ran out of the shield's cover, charging at Han Feng. He was blinded by her flashlight and got his gun taken away. In a careless twist of fate, the witch managed to grab the pistol. She aimed it at Han Feng's chest and demanded to know where the supplies were hidden. The raiders looked at her like she was utterly insane while she threatened to shoot Han Feng. Egging her on to shoot, the young man continued to insist that she already scammed all his resources long ago. Just as when she was about to pull the trigger, the raiders surprisingly stepped in and knocked the gun out of her hand before she could harm anyone. Mr. Jiang's lapdogs restrained the insane witch while she continuously claimed that she was not a liar. Before Han Feng could grab hold of his gun, Mr. Jiang's hand extended and picked up the blicky. He slowly raised the pistol while staring Han Feng directly in the eyes. His lapdogs continued berating the witch for leading them on a wild goose chase. Before they could start beating her up with metal pipes, Mr. Jiang intervened and stopped any more unnecessary bloodshed. Seeing as their plan failed, he's in damage control mode now. He hypocritically reminded his men that the committee was not a violent group, and Han Feng's house was not an execution ground. Scaring her with the gun, Mr. Jiang is willing to give her a chance to turn over a new leaf. He even apologized to Han Feng for causing distress, and for everything that happened today. Surprisingly, he willingly handed the gun back to its owner, and promised to give a proper explanation and apology soon. Han Feng cautiously took his weapon back, and the shameless Mr. Jiang extended an invitation for him to join the committee. He insisted that Han Feng should mull it over for a bit and get back to him with an answer. As he and his goons retreated, he urged Han Feng to answer at the supply collection spot tomorrow. And so, the trio were left in the mysteriously empty and depressing home by themselves. Han Feng's head hung low, concerned with Brother Lee. With a sigh of relief, he lifted his head in reprieve now that this farce was finally over. With the performance done, they can finally go back to chilling with the comfort of electricity and warmth. Now that his place is compromised, they transferred over to Outcast Girl's surprisingly cozy and spacious house, right above Han Feng's. It's all thanks to her that they can put on such a convincing performance so quickly. You see, before the raiders got in, Han Feng coordinated the plan flawlessly. First, they stored all valuables and resources inside Outcast Girl's subspace. They made sure to leave some rubbish and wrappers in random places to really sell the performance. They even opened the windows to quickly lower the temperature inside. They had to make it seem like they had run out of supplies a while ago. Those committee bastards can just waste their energy tearing down a door holding nothing inside. While sharing a lavish meal, the trio celebrated the fact that Jiang Shuiyu's failed mission, which yielded nothing, would surely stir up anger within the group. In that situation, those greedy raiders will start pointing fingers at the weak links. Since Han Feng has a gun, the unarmed and hateful Li Hyona will definitely get the worst of it. The plan worked wonderfully, but it did not go down without a hitch. Han Feng's gun was even taken. But the young man had already accounted for that as the worst-case scenario. He was mostly certain that when Jiang Shuiyu gets his hands on the gun, he will most likely opt to resolve the situation peacefully to maintain his righteous image. If it did not go down that way, and the madman decided to pull the trigger instead, Han Feng had already emptied the mag with the 2 shots he fired. That way, letting the raiders take the gun on purpose only enhanced the reality of the performance. Brother Li finally relaxed. He thinks that from now on, they just need to pretend to be suffering while secretly enjoying a luxurious life. But Han Feng corrected him. Their main mission from now on is to bring the committee down. Back in the car park, the distribution of poultry supplies continued. Even though they're getting less and less food, the people's gratitude for Mr. Jiang is still there. While everyone is busy with the distribution, 2 sneaky figures are moving in the background. They quickly entered the off-limits area, where only a few were permitted entry. The committee members in charge of securing the supplies are just getting back to the car park. Those 2 sneaky figures, Han Feng and Brother Li, tried their best to blend into the background to remain undetected. Surprisingly, it worked. According to Brother Li's prior investigations, the first 4 floors of the building have been cleared out. The 5th and 6th floors house the logistics workers and their family members. Mr. Jiang and his inner circle reside on the 9th to 12th floor, and the warehouse is likely to be on the 7th and 8th floors. There will be guards posted up from the 5th floor onwards. The duo has to be sneaky, avoid firing the gun, and get by with metal rods as much as possible. As the 2 ascended to the higher floors, there was an odd absence of security. Without even needing to use their weapons, the 2 reached the 7th floor without a fuss. Brother Li is starting to doubt if they're on the right path at all. While it's understandable that the committee is understaffed, having no guards at all is a bit much. Splitting up, Han Feng and Brother Li decided to search the entire floor for the warehouse. Han Feng was expecting some action, but was pleasantly surprised with how smoothly they infiltrated this far. Since the committee still boasts superior numbers, the trio has to work smart and start from the inside to bring the whole thing down. As far as Han Feng can see, that thieving organization is only held together by the promise of supplies. If they can find that stash, outcast girl, or the evil king as she likes to be called, they can go in and empty their coffers. Still, finding the exact room where they hide the supplies within an entire floor will take quite a bit of time, and they must watch their steps along the way. Eventually, Han Feng heard Brother Li giving him the signal. When he saw what Brother Li was clamoring about, Han Feng was flabbergasted. One of the rooms had the word warehouse blatantly stuck to it. This was such an obvious trap. Even the key was left in the keyhole. But if Brother Li was alone, he would have fallen for it already. Look, this dumbass blondie might be a good homie, but he is not the sharpest tool in the shed. There are thin wires wrapped around the key and handle, indicative of the simplest trap there is. If these raiders can afford to bomb Han Feng's door, who knows what kind of trap they have set up. Han Feng had to direct Brother Li not to touch anything and all willy-nilly. For now, they just need to scout and know the key locations for their attack. While the duo was quietly discussing their plan to continue searching the higher floors, the door next to them creaked open. 2 guards came out just as the dumbass duo were discussing their plan to clear the supplies out. They all stared at each other, taking a second to process what the hell was happening. Han Feng regained composure and bolted out as fast as he could with Brother Li in tow. They eventually reached the stairs, but the guards quickly caught up. Han Feng had to step in, save his bro from a nasty concussion, and block a metal rod strike with one of his own. Retaliating, Brother Li landed a painful kick on the guard's groin. That bought them enough time to get back to the staircase and lock the door behind. Unfortunately, the commotion attracted other guards coming from the lower floors. With no other choice, they have to hurry and proceed upwards with hopes of not encountering any more enemies. When they reached the 8th floor, Brother Li noticed Han Feng clutching his right arm. It was probably fractured from blocking that strike earlier. For now, they must find a place to hide, and quickly. Just as they were about to look for a hiding spot, Brother Li saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Before he could warn Han Feng of the figure looming behind, the young man was snatched away into a dark room as if he were weighing nothing. As soon as Han Feng was dragged into a dark and isolated room, the door shut close. When he opened his eyes, the sight of a tall, hooded man towering over him freaked him the hell out while Brother Li bangs on the locked door. The hooded man sternly asked what they were doing on these floors. Trying to salvage the situation, Han Feng lied and answered that they had just come to collect supplies, but his BS did not work. The man stomped on his arm, making Han Feng scream in anguish. Under the hood was an old man with gray hair and an unkempt beard. He urged Han Feng to stop lying as he was not buying it. He saw the duo deliberately avoid the 5th and 6th floors, clearly doing something shady against the committee. When asked if he was tailing them, the old man simply asked Han Feng why he thinks there are no guards around the higher floors. In the corner of the room, the guards who were supposed to watch and roam around the warehouse were unconscious and stacked on top of one another. Before they could talk a little more in depth, the sound of more committee guards flooding into the floor sounded outside. That must mean Brother Lee has been caught. The old man clicked his tongue in annoyance and slowly walked over to the nearest window. He turned the freezing handle, letting the cold, frigid air into the dark room. Han Feng asked the old man what he was doing opening the 8th floor window. He argued that the height is just equivalent to 4 stories. The piled-up snow has already reached between the 3rd and 4th floors. With all that snow cushion, jumping from such height should not be that big of a deal. With the battalion of raiders hot on their heels, they can either jump down or wait to get beaten to death. Speaking of the raiders, they're already working on busting the locked door open. Han Feng is starting to consider the old man's words. The mad lad had already jumped down without hesitation. As soon as the door busted open, Han Feng chose to risk it all and follow in the old man's footsteps. As scary as it was, he jumped from the 8th floor, hoping that the snow would be enough to soften his fall. For added insurance, Han Feng positioned himself to fall hand first, so he could use the purple light to cushion his landing spot. While he lands, the old man digs himself out of the snow, completely fine and intact. Han Feng might have landed awkwardly, but he's alive, albeit a little winded. The raiders up in the window looked at the two like they were absolutely insane. Moving quickly, the old man ran for the nearest window and elbowed the brittle glass open. Even Han Feng was impressed with the old man's relentless survival skills. He followed him into the room, successfully escaping the clutches of angry committee raiders. Mr. Jiang's men did not have the balls to jump and make chase. They had to take the stairs like normies. Eventually, the old man led Han Feng to one of the rooms and lit a fire for a little bit of warmth. Han Feng admitted that he would have been caught if it hadn't been for this bearded old man. He practically dragged him back up to the 5th floor instead of settling for the 3rd. Those goons chasing them would naturally think they'd hide out in the lower levels and are now swarming the place and placing traps. Seeing the uneasy look on the young man's face, Beardy asked if he was scared, which was only natural considering they were chilling on a bonfire next to a dead man. When asked why he saved Han Feng, the old man corrected him immediately. Given the chance, he'd like to off Han Feng himself. He then praised the young man for at least having enough brain cells to not fall for the lame trap in that fake warehouse. For now, he wants Han Feng to spill the beans on anything he knows about the committee. If he clams up or lies, Beardy would gladly beat the truth out of him. Considering that he had taken all those guards down, Han Feng reckoned that the old man was lurking on the higher floors, either to steal supplies or to settle some enmity against the committee. Either way, Han Feng and Brother Lee's appearance must have disrupted his plans. When asked if he has some sort of vendetta against Mr. Jiang and his goons, the old man admitted that he did. He's also aware of a secret that Jiang Shuiyu is hiding. Han Feng perked up and asked what sort of secret that was. The old man stood up, confirming that this kid must be connected to Jiang Shuiyu somehow. Prodding further, Beardy demanded that Han Feng spit out everything he knew about the committee unless he wanted to be the second corpse in this room. The choice is solely up to him. Afraid of being beaten to death, Han Feng started trauma dumping about his unpleasant encounters with that Eisen-looking bastard. To summarize, Jiang blew up his house, stole his girl, and ransacked his supplies. He even pulled out all the stops and threatened them with a gun for the sake of revenge. But a paltry pistol wouldn't cut it. Han Feng mixed in a little bit of truth with a few lies and threw in the pistol bit, hoping that the old man would buy his story. It looks like Beardy did. He sighed and confirmed that a junky pistol is nothing for those big shots in the committee to worry about. The fact that Jiang set Han Feng free without taking the gun proves that. When asked why, the old man presented 2 theories. First, the bastard is just putting on a show to maintain his position as the righteous leader. The second and the more terrifying theory is that he has an arsenal of even more powerful weapons stashed away. Han Feng added that he brought his brother with him to finish Jiang Shuiyu off, hoping that the committee would slowly die without the head of the snake. While the original intention of the committee was good, they managed to help some people survive. Jiang Shuiyu's increasingly pragmatic philosophy got everyone thinking that doing bad is the only way to live comfortably. Even if the apocalypse subsides, the people who've lost their conscience and fallen to depravity won't ever fit back into society. That's precisely why they must put a stop to the corrupt committee. The old man is on board, but he's worried about what would happen if they do succeed. In this world, the strong have always preyed on the weak. Killing Jiang Shuiyu would only plunge the whole neighborhood into lawless plunder and slaughter for the little resources available. If that's the case, they might as well ask for a third opinion. It just so happens that another person has been listening in on their conversation from the other side of the door. Whoever it was, they tried to throw a water canister at the old man's face and missed. Upon retaliating, Beardy was surprised that his fist was stopped by such a small body. He then noticed that the hands holding his fist back were trembling in fear. Beardy repositioned and motioned to bash the Snoop's head, but stopped as soon as he heard her familiar voice. With pink hair and an adorable coat, it was none other than the charming Nurse Jin. Seeing the man inside the room, she recognized him as Mr. Han from the hospital. When things calmed down, Nurse Jin treated Han Feng's fractured arm while she profusely apologized for eavesdropping on their private conversation. She just came by after receiving Grandpa Lee's supplies and for the re-examination. She came in and discovered the poor old man dead, and then she heard the door open. She got frightened and subconsciously hid in the other room. Beardy suspects that the little nurse must have been involved in the old man's death. He sees her selfless dedication as nothing but a joke. While he might be right in some respects, Nurse Jin does not regret her actions. People can say she's cruel or heartless, but only by surviving can she save more people in dire need. Furthermore, Jiang Zuiyu gave her a pass so she could freely walk anywhere she needed. She also benefits from the committee's supplies even if she doesn't directly work for them. But Mr. Jiang has been chasing out a lot of sick and old people recently. Grandpa Lee is one of them. It makes sense. With one less mouth to feed, the committee can hold on to their authority for longer. However, according to Brother Lee, a new faction has been rising in the neighborhood. With those boxers at odds with the committee, Jiang Shuiyu must be eager to eliminate the competition. That must be why he's ramping up the abandonment of the old and sick. He wants to keep the young and healthy, fed and happy. With increasingly desperate measures, there's a good chance that a faction war will erupt sooner rather than later. If that's the case, it would be wise to try and find Jiang's alleged weapon arsenal. Beardy asked the young man what he could even do by himself if he did find the stash. Han Feng asserted that he'll figure something out when he gets there, but he refuses to sit around and die with everyone else. Beardy thinks they're fucked either way, so he won't stop Han Feng from digging his own grave. He then warned the young'uns that Jiang Shuiyu and the committee were just small fish in a big pond. There will be more bloodshed and slaughter for survival down the road. In a dog-eat-dog world, the one that survives till the end wins. With that being said, Beardy opened the window and made his exit. This dude is actually allergic to using doors normally. With only Han Feng and Nurse Jin left in the room, the nurse with super strength eagerly asked if there was anything she could do to help. Han Feng politely declined her offer to help, as he did not want to drag another person down with him. But Nurse Jin is persistent. She heard the whole story, and she can't just stand by while the neighborhood is in danger. She even got furious at that Jiang bastard for everything he did to Han Feng. Seeing the determined and genuine look in her eyes, Han Feng could not reject her. Now that she's on board, there is actually something that Han Feng needs help with. Back in the car park, the guards were reporting their encounter with Han Feng and the old man. Speaking of the devil, the man who they thought would hide like a rat appeared before everyone out in the open. Outing himself in the open got him dragged into the lion's den. In an isolated room away from everyone else, Han Feng got beaten until he was coughing and throwing up. Mr. Jiang's lapdog tied him up, kicked him repeatedly, and warned him of the dangers of stealing supplies from the committee. The brainwashed twin threatened to cripple his other arm if he ever dared to step foot in their territory again. He would have wailed at Han Feng even more if Mr. Jiang hadn't needed all hands on deck to deal with some sort of emergency that had just cropped up. After making sure that the goons had left, Han Feng's body emanated a green light, healing his injuries. He paid the price in the form of bruises and wounds, but he finally made his way back to the committee's area. Han Feng intends to look for the armory once he finishes healing his injuries. He can't afford to waste any more time. Every second counts. After bathing his body with the green light, he softened the rope using his purple light. He even fixed his fractured arm, but using the green light drains way too much energy that he almost fainted in the middle of doing so. He really needs to figure out how to heal specific parts instead of blindly coating his whole body. Right after recovering and freeing himself, Han Feng heard footsteps coming from outside. The door creaked open, and the goons tossed the tied-up Brother Lee in. Fortunately, Han Feng moved fast enough to wrap the rope back onto his body. Seemingly in a hurry, the goons exited soon after, giving Han Feng a chance to check on his bro. Brother Lee's face was unrecognizable. Look, he's not the best-looking guy in his normal state, but his bruised-up mug is even worse. Han Feng added even more injury by slapping Brother Lee awake. At least it was an effective way to wake him up. Brother Lee just wished that little bro slapped the less swollen side. Now he can't even feel anything on the left side of his face. He then recounted how he was dragged through a different room. Before he got caught, he managed to get into the power distribution room and hid inside. In there, he found a big out-of-place hole connected downwards to an unnaturally deep location. Thinking that they would eventually check on the power distribution room, Brother Lee risked it for the biscuit, grabbed the wires, and climbed down to the unknown. He initially thought he would come out of the basement car park 1, but the line extended all the way to basement 2. Oddly enough, there wasn't even a single person in there. All he saw was a lot of boxes neatly arranged, lying on the ground. All of them were sealed tightly. Curiosity got the best of him, and he opened up a few boxes. Imagine his surprise when he saw the boxes were filled with sausages, each one as thick as his arm. He was about to investigate and take a closer look when he heard something or someone come up behind him. The next thing he remembers is Han Feng's wake-up slap. Now it makes sense why the committee and that Jiang bastard are so arrogant. They actually have heaps of supplies down on the lower floors. Han Feng skeptically asked if the contents of those boxes were really just sausages. If they have so much food, why would they work so hard, going as far as to use explosives to try and steal supplies? The boxes had nothing written on them. The contents were just shaped like sausages, so Brother Li assumed they were. Nevertheless, something does not feel right. At least now they know that Jiang Xueyu really has a secret warehouse. Suddenly, the duo heard the guards coming back. They were talking about how odd it was that Mr. Jiang was rushing them to dispose of Li Ziyi when they were trying to rope him in just the day before. Hearing that he has a kill order out there scared Brother Li out of his wits. When the goons entered the room with weapons in hand, the prisoners were gone. Confused, they searched the room. Unbeknownst to the poor goons, the duo had already set up a vengeful ambush. And so, they turned the tables, jumped their captors, knocked them out, and tied them up. Since Jiang Xueyu is going as far as to issue a kill order with his secret stash discovered, whatever's down there is definitely worth investigating. Still, there are tens of boxes in there. Brother Li wonders what they can even do once they manage to get back into the second basement. Han Feng assured him that it wouldn't be a problem once they got together with the evil king. Retrieving and reactivating his earpiece, Han Feng contacted the evil king and asked if the big sister he had sent had arrived. Oddly enough, the little girl asked if it would really be okay to let the girl who snatched Han Feng's gun inside the house. This is bad. Instead of Nurse Jin knocking on the door, it is that witch, Li Hyona. Han Feng hurriedly warned the evil king to keep the door shut and avoid the crazy witch at all costs. But it might just be too late. The transmission was cut, and Han Feng is in the dark about what's happening upstairs. They have to go back up and check on the evil king's status first. For the second time today, the duo sneakily traversed the frigid halls of the lower floors, making sure that they didn't get caught once more. While they were mindful of not making any noticeable noise, loud crashes could be heard from up ahead. The survivors reliant on the committee are evacuating to the higher floors. The injured, elderly, and women, or at least what's left of them, must proceed up the stairs, while the able-bodied are ordered to bring their weapons and gather in the basement. It was pandemonium. They are panicking and trying their hardest to prevent the enemies from coming up and reaching their supply stash. The only logical explanation for the chaos Han Feng can think of is that the war with Li Jinghao's faction has finally started. Whatever the case may be, this hectic situation is beneficial for them. All they have to do is cover up, wear their masks, and try to blend into the crowd until they reach the evil king. The stairs were crowded with distressed survivors, and the duo fit right in. Unfortunately, their plan to stay low-key might not be feasible anymore. Mr. Jiang's lapdog coordinating the evacuation just fell on his ass. Li Jinghao's number 1 and number 2 had intercepted the evacuees and were hungry for violence. Brother Li subconsciously pulled his little bro aside, protecting him from the shit show that was about to unfold. Meanwhile, on the upper floors, the evil king is observing Li Hyona through the door's peephole. The witch carefully moved and stuck her ear on the door's surface, trying her best to suss out if Han Feng was inside, but she couldn't hear anything. She looked highly suspicious in every sense of the word. It was at that moment that Nurse Jin finally pulled up with her med kit. When asked what she was doing snooping around Han Feng's door, Hyona was stun-locked as she tried her best to formulate an excuse. The best she could come up with was that she came over to search for food. Of course, Nurse Jin was not buying such flimsy bullshit. You see, Li Hyona was not alone. Behind her was a whole battalion of emaciated good-for-nothings equipped with weapons. Li Hyona and her goons confronted Nurse Jin, and she stood her ground by saying that she'd been called to treat someone in the room. Unfortunately, the Mad Witch is too sharp to buy that excuse. She had seen the nurse and Han Feng talking before. So, she turned to her miserable goons, desperate for supplies, and whispered poison into their ears. One by one, the creeps approached Nurse Jin as she slowly retreated and threatened to report the disruption to Jiang Xueyu. Hyona thinks using the nurse as a hostage would lure Han Feng out. The goons were not exactly enthused to hold the only medical staff in the building captive. If they keep this ridiculousness up, Nurse Jin threatens to drop the polite act altogether. When they chose to ignore her warnings and kept on restraining her arms, the dainty nurse lifted the goons and smacked them together like they weighed nothing. Hyona and the rest of the creeps subconsciously retreated in terror. Nurse Jin took a deep breath and warned them one more time that interfering with her work carries consequences. The witch has gone absolutely cuckoo. She pulled out a hidden knife from her pocket and swung it at the lovely nurse. She had no regard for the well-being of others. If Nurse Jin was not wearing a thick enough coat, the blade could have cut her skin. Hyuna warned her goons to stand by and be careful of the freak's inhuman strength. While everyone was distracted, the apartment door slowly creaked open. The raiders were confused as the weapons in their hands trembled in unison. The trembling became so strong that it turned into an irresistible suction force. Standing at the door was the self-proclaimed Demon King with her hidden ability in full view. She even executed some useless ninjutsu hand signs to make it more dramatic. Knives, bats, pipes, and all sorts of improvised weapons were confiscated by her domain. She went at it so hard that even Lee Hyona's dilapidated clothes started getting sucked in. The sketchy raiders tried to run away, but the suction was too strong. They thought a ghost was playing with them. Back in the lower floors, the war between factions continued, becoming more violent by the second. Fists were thrown and skulls were bashed in. In the midst of the chaos, Han Feng and Brother Lee are running from a hulking man. Han Feng threw a punch at the wrong guy, and now they're in a cartoon chase scene. Who would not be fuming if a single punch made your cheeks swell to the size and color of an apple? Han Feng threw a shot in the dark. He combined his green and purple lights to form a reinforced glove and got a powerful result in a desperate situation. To make matters worse, Mr. Zhang's lackeys recognized them in the middle of the riot. If they get caught again, those sadists will never give them another chance to escape. So Han Feng thought of a quick plan, separating from Brother Lee. While the gangster picks up their little roommate, Han Feng will serve as the distraction. It's going to be hard to pull it off alone, but he's confident in his chances. Han Feng made a show of running around the basement parking lot, drawing as many eyeballs to himself as possible. He vaulted on top of a car and screamed at the top of his lungs, turning heads from every direction. Han Feng raised his middle finger to everyone in the room and falsely confessed that he was the one who raised the prices of supplies so all the peasants would starve to death. What followed was dead silence. Every raider, no matter which side they represent, gnashed their teeth in anger. It was as though everyone forgot their differences. Now they are united with the same goal, to catch and kill Han Feng first. The first part of his plan was a smashing success. Han Feng vaguely recalls seeing the entrance of the basement car park closed off by a metal gate. Right now, tons of snow are bearing pressure on that gate, and it is waiting to be released. He single-mindedly ran for the gate and failed to notice one of the infamous twins hot in his heels. He got socked off his feet, tumbling all the way to his intended destination. With the metal gate on his back, the angry mob closed into the corner of Han Feng. He touched the cold metal, focusing on stirring his ability. With immense concentration, he covered the entirety of the gate with his bizarre purple light. In fear of the light, the mob stopped their advances. When the light was snuffed out, their anger rose once more. The final push was Han Feng screaming at the bastards to come at him. While the angry mob rushes forward, the once solid metal gate has turned soft and malleable. The material is not nearly strong enough to hold back tons and tons of snow from rushing into the floor. Seeing the incoming indoor avalanche, the mob quickly forgot their beef with the young man. Now it's a run for survival. The avalanche was brutal. It had enough force to wash away the cars neatly parked in the basement. The warring factions were swallowed by the great white coldness, burying them in frost. Those who were fast and lucky enough were able to run towards the exit on time, saving themselves from the incoming disaster. When the avalanche settled, the entire basement floor had been rendered useless and inhospitable. Han Feng planned ahead and found himself a decent hidey hole. After confirming that the threats had been washed out, he dug himself out of the snow. Much to his surprise, turning a giant metal gate into jelly didn't cause him any fatigue at all. Maybe he's getting a lot better at using his abilities. While he was lost in thought, the old man that saved his ass before showed up in front of him. For some reason, he feels as though this weird boomer has been watching him all this time. After confirming that the avalanche had stopped, the mob re-entered the basement. Hearing the sound of footsteps getting closer, the old man forcefully dragged Han Feng away. The two found themselves in a certain remote corner on the first basement floor. Trying to catch his breath, Han Feng demanded to know just who this boomer really was and why he was trying to get all up in his business. Seeing that there is no sense in hiding any longer, the boomer introduced himself as Li Zhenghao, the man leading an all-out war against Mr. Jiang. He offered a handshake to the young man, but Han Feng felt hesitant about his reasons. Well, Zhenghao wants cooperation. He might have rejected teaming up with Han Feng before, but minds can change. Han Feng was reasonably skeptical. He doesn't want to get scammed into something horrible. The way Zhenghao sees things, they are just two parties trying to accomplish a common goal. Upon thinking about it, teaming up with someone capable like Li Zhenghao would drastically increase the chances of successfully dealing with Mr. Zhang. Although he doesn't fully trust the graying boomer, Han Feng is willing to enter into a temporary alliance. The two shook hands as their collaboration was officialized. On a lower floor, Mr. Jiang is doing final checks on all the vehicles he had stashed in the second basement car park. He's only now receiving news about the avalanche that swept through the floor above. The building's temperature is dropping fast, and their people have been scattered all over the place. In addition, their prisoners are nowhere to be found. Mr. Jiang remained calm. He believes that all of these side incidents won't mess with the bigger picture. Within earshot, Li Zhenghao and Han Feng were sneaking around. Zhenghao found this place filled with military jeeps a while ago. He also overheard plans about relocating some of the residents elsewhere. It's a mystery as to where anyone could relocate in the frozen wasteland outside. To find answers, Zhenghao wasted no time and charged in with just his trusty fists. Completely unaware of what was about to happen, Mr. Jiang continued ordering his men around. Their tight-knit operation was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of gunshots coming from nearby. Before they could calm down and assess the situation, the sneaky enemy had already infiltrated behind enemy lines. Zhenghao used his strength and technique to take down Mr. Jiang's inner circle one by one. Trembling in fear and caught off guard, Mr. Jiang's guards started firing everywhere. Zhenghao was not fazed by the sound of gunshots and the smell of gunpowder. The only weapon he trusts is his battle-worn hands. Of course, Mr. Jiang's best guards are stuck close to the boss. They did not account for multiple assailants. It was a big mistake. Han Feng managed to bypass the spotty defense. Now, he has a gun aimed at the back of the boss's head. Instead of panicking, Mr. Jiang smiled and thanked Han Feng for finally showing up. He claimed to know that this confrontation would come. It was only a matter of time. One of the twins turned around to see his boss in a checkmate, and Mr. Jiang urged his boys to stand down. He knows Han Feng as the man who stockpiled mountains of supplies before everything went to shit. He thought Han Feng was in contact with certain people, but that doesn't seem to be the case. When urged to look at his pistol's magazine, Han Feng found a recording device attached. Mr. Jiang secretly stuck that in when the apartment incident happened. Otherwise, he wouldn't have freely given a perfectly good weapon to the enemy. He knew every bit of the plan Han Feng had. If he wanted to end the young man, it would have been done already. In truth, Mr. Jiang still wants Han Feng to join his faction. That way, they can keep sending people to a certain group so the majority can survive. Being a pawn is not really Han Feng's thing anymore, so he passed. With that being said, Mr. Jiang gave a hidden signal, and a bunch of soldiers clad in complete gear entered the scene. Looking at the expert and precise movements, they must be special forces. There were 3 gunmen, each of them aiming to riddle Han Feng's body with bullet holes. He would have kept running like a headless chicken, hoping that he could dodge all the bullets if Zhenghao didn't grab him to take cover. Absolutely mortified, he turned to the old man for an escape plan. Zhenghao urged him to chill out. They're just against 3 special ops soldiers. It's no big deal. Li Zhenghao will play the part of decoy, and Han Feng must find and exploit an opening. The plan was ridiculous. How can you even play decoy when the enemies are equipped with automatic rifles? To prove that it was feasible, Zhenghao left the cover, kept his center of gravity lowered, and charged headfirst. He was moving so fast that it looked like he was dodging bullets without so much as getting grazed. When he finally enters his effective range, the guns in his fists are equally lethal. His close combat skills and reaction time cannot be those of a human. While the old man is dancing with bullets, Mr. Jiang is getting ready to board one of the vehicles to make his next delivery. Han Feng won't let him get away without interruptions, though. With his purple light, he coated the ground, turning the surface into mush. As the concrete softened, the tires sunk into the floor. This was enough to stop Mr. Jiang's vehicle from exiting the car park. Looking at the side mirror and seeing the soft ground eating up the tire, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Han Feng was glad that he could mess with them from a safe distance. Just when he was about to do the next tire, a frag grenade flew in his direction. A hooded stranger found him messing with the Jeep, skipped every weapon there was, and jumped straight into throwing a grenade. While Han Feng's life flashed before his eyes, the hood smiled and saluted. The grenade bounced on the Jeep. The explosion is imminent. Han Feng ate the blast at point-blank range. A normal human cannot possibly survive being in that radius. His body was torn apart. The grenade did its job well. The next thing you know, Han Feng is opening his eyes to the feeling of being tickled. Those goats that he used to dream about are back. They are flocking all over him and licking his entire body. He closed his eyes and just enjoyed the ticklish process wholeheartedly, until he felt an oversized tongue joining in on the fun. Of course, the giant tongue belonged to a giant goat. The enormous and slimy appendage wrapped around his naked body, traces of green light flickering. The tiny flickers continued to grow until his body melted and reformed around the green brilliance. In the real world, his body rapidly repaired itself as the green light chose and healed the damaged parts in the blink of an eye. Han Feng died and was resurrected when his power kicked in automatically. His body might have been restored, but his mind seemed absent. The Jin twin in the driver's seat managed to get the tire out of the sunken concrete and is now ready to drive away. Before he could step on the gas, the whole side of the Jeep swiftly crumbled into nothingness as a red light erased everything in sight. The light flickered ominously, devouring every matter in sight. With a single swipe of his hand, the unconscious Han Feng deleted half an armored Jeep. After tearing the vehicle apart with a touch, one of the twins aimed his gun at Han Feng. He saw the barrel of the lethal weapon aimed at him with bloodshot eyes and grabbed that sucker with his glowing hand. The pistol exploded to pieces, dismantled into smithereens. The destruction continued, devouring the threads of Jin Qinwu's clothes. Mr. Jiang's calmness had vanished alongside the Jeep's roof as he scurried out of the vehicle. Exposed to the bone-chilling elements exacerbated by the avalanche one floor above, Jin Twin shivered in pain. The cold quickly spread through his body as the red light devoured the top of his skin. Within seconds, the poor underling died from the cold. His twin brother saw everything happen and felt the desire for vengeance brewing. Jin Qinwen charged the berserk Han Feng with a metal pipe in hand. He was eager to bust the guy's head open, but it won't be easy. When the metal pipe touched the red light, the material burst into pieces, dissipating in the air. Mr. Jiang called one of his men to request for reinforcements. This is beyond his expectations. Ignoring the surviving twin, the unconscious Han Feng sought a different target. With purple bouncy lights in both hands, he slowly strutted his way to a different armored Jeep. The driver and passenger didn't know what to do as the gooey light devoured the entire vehicle. Suddenly, the exterior of the Jeep started dripping like it was made of melting wax. The vehicle had turned almost liquid. The people inside the armored Jeep screamed for help and tried to get out, but it was too late. With an unrecognizable shape, the material hardened once more, turning the driver and passengers into metal statues. To stop his brutal rampage, someone started shooting at Han Feng. A bullet lightly grazed his cheek, and the green light immediately healed the wound back up. The inexperienced guards trembled as they ran out of bullets. They saw what Han Feng did to their comrades. All they can do now is run for their lives. Covering their retreat, the special ops shifted their main target to Han Feng. They were tasked with prioritizing Mr. Jiang's party. Seeing his playmates change course annoyed Li Zhenghao. At least one of the special ops forces stayed behind to engage him in hand-to-hand combat. Throughout the whole sequence, Zheng Hao is trying to decipher what really is happening with Zhang Xueyu. As bullets chased him down, Han Feng used his purple light to gain some verticality by sticking to the walls. He responded to their lethal force by turning the floor into a gelatinous substance, making it difficult to maintain balance. Once he successfully took away their ability to aim accurately, he closed the distance and erased their automatic rifles from reality with a burst of red flash. Mixing it up a little, the green and purple light shone as their properties made it possible to reshape the remaining metal from the guns into a melee weapon. It was a twisted and crude blade, befitting a man bereft of control of his own body. With one clean swing, Han Feng slit the throats of the special ops agents hounding him. After those last two kills, the exhaustion from using his power to its limits had finally caught up to him. As his body was shutting down, the vengeful twin jumped out of the shadows for a sneak attack. Before Jin Qinwen's metal pipe could crack his skull open, Han Feng collapsed on the cold, dark ground. Seeing as the terrifying monster had become defenseless, Qinwen thought he could land the killing blow. Unfortunately for him, Li Zhenghao is still around to protect his business partner's unconscious body. In a one-on-one, a single special ops bastard could not possibly survive his champion's fist. Today, he learned that Han Feng is a madman when he loses control. After retrieving the young man's body, he heard some movement from outside and immediately ran to hide. Mr. Jiang had returned to the second basement car park with a fresh battalion equipped with riot shields and blunt weapons. He commanded the battalion from the middle while holding a gun tightly as his lifeline. Upon doing a perimeter sweep, they found 2 dead special ops guys. There were supposed to be 3, but only 2 corpses were found. Jin Qinwu froze to death. His brother and a few others who ran were the only survivors. With the soldiers dead, they don't have a guide to reach the other base camp anymore. Mr. Jiang accepted that today's plan was a massive failure. They must recuperate and rethink a strategy. Meanwhile, in an abandoned room, someone is burning books for warmth. Han Feng woke up screaming about a grenade. It seemed like that was the last thing he remembered. If that's the case, then why is he still alive and where is he? Those are the questions swimming in his mind. Thankfully, there was a familiar face nearby, the one who grabbed him to safety, Li Zhenghao. When asked what happened, Zhenghao can't even come up with a reasonable explanation of what transpired without sounding insane. More importantly, he has gained a general idea as to what Zhang Xueyu is planning. As for the specifics, he has a willing volunteer to get some more answers, paid with blood and torture. Based on what the soldiers had already confessed, a so-called base sent them to conduct a transaction with Zhang Xueyu. Allegedly, they are bringing food and weapons in exchange for the residents. When asked why, the soldier awkwardly mumbled that they simply needed manpower for construction. Anyone with a brain could tell that that's a load of bull. In this situation, no one is trying to take on more mouths to feed. The soldiers insisted that they were just trying to rebuild civilization while saving as many people as possible. To prevent any more lies from being spewed out, Lee Jung-hao continued with the torture by breaking one of the soldiers' fingers. It made him confess that the failure of today's mission would just lead to the base sending more people over. When asked if any superhumans would be involved, the soldier averted his gaze and tried to pretend that he didn't know what Jung-hao was talking about. Well, that basically confirms that the base has mutated people. Making an enemy out of them would prove troublesome. Han Feng had just woken up, and now he's getting a close look at Lee Jung-hao's cold cruelty. Seeing as they won't be able to extract more information, Jung-hao slayed the soldier in the most gruesome way possible. In his eyes, this new base is just another faction with unknown and possibly nefarious goals. They can either get rid of that group, or they can leave and find a new place to settle down away from chaos. For now, Han Feng would like to get back to his crew and discuss. On the way up to the apartment, the young man mulled over the choices they had given all the information at hand. It sounds like searching for another foothold outside might be the safest choice. Before heading back up, he stopped by the second basement floor to check on the armored jeeps and heavy machinery. He tried his best to sneak around until he heard some light footsteps heading in his direction. When he tried to get the jump on the person in front, he quickly realized that he had fallen for a well-placed bait. A familiar figure snuck up from his flank, her fist homing in on his head. Han Feng raised his arm, enhanced by the green and purple light, in time to block. He did it so fluidly without much thought. Much to his surprise, he didn't feel any pain at all. It seems like the earlier incident unlocked some pretty good combos that he can access. As he was about to retaliate, a flashlight revealed that the assailant was Nurse Jin. The allies almost threw hands. Once things calmed down, Han Feng gave his crew a rundown of what had happened and told them his plan to search for a path out of the building. Brother Lee was incensed to hear that Jiang Bastard was exchanging people for supplies. The naive nurse, on the other hand, thought that sending people to an establishment with a better chance of survival was not a bad thing. Realistically speaking, Zhang Xueyu would have already gone to that base if the promised utopia was real. He wouldn't need military escorts for trades. The bottom line is they don't have all the necessary information as of now. Hell, they don't even know if this so-called base is real or not. There's a strong possibility that more people will storm the building soon. For now, they must secure a transport vehicle in case they need to get out. At least they have plenty of choices among the many heavy-duty vehicles parked in this place. Unfortunately, they don't have the keys for most of the good stuff. Brother Lee snooped around the remaining armored jeeps and found a crate of weapons. They should let the little Demon King collect all this valuable loot for future use. The crate was retrieved from the melted jeep. This is Han Feng's first time seeing the aftermath of his unconscious rampage. Meanwhile, the ladies are distracted by something elsewhere. In the corner of the second basement car park, a massive curtain has been placed to cover something up. Nurse Jin swears she could hear noises behind the cover. Demon King retrieved the biggest flashlight in her storage, pointed the intense light forward, and the other three pulled the curtain down together. When the cover was dropped, everybody stared in disbelief and awe. There was a huge tunnel crudely dug up under a pile of cold snow leading to somewhere unknown. Whoever dug this tunnel must be extraordinary. It sounds like what the soldier confessed is just the tip of a much bigger iceberg. The neighborhood is no longer a safe place. Brother Lee looked around the sides and found the neighborhood's frozen drain pipes. Before they got carried away, Han Feng called pause and dragged everybody away from the tunnel. This exploration requires better preparation. They should return and plan ahead for now. So they gathered some convenient survival gear, food supplies, and some explosives just in case. With some handy weapons and a few more foodstuffs, they should have enough to last for a while. Han Feng made it clear that the purpose of this initial expedition was purely just for scouting. If any emergency situation were to arise, they would haul ass and return to camp. Of course, this level of preparation wouldn't be possible without the Little Demon King's convenient storage dimension. Han Feng and Brother Lee head out, and the girls stay back. Han Feng reinforced the walls and doors of the room they would be staying in so intruders wouldn't pose a problem. The girls sent them off, and Han Feng gave them a reassuring glance. Little Demon King professed that her true eyes would bless her adventuring apostles. With what they know now, Zhang Xueyu isn't the only threat anymore. Something worse might come from that tunnel soon. The scouting mission's main goal is to try and find another survival point. The Brotherly officially entered the tunnel and bravely marched forth. They thought the underground would be warmer, but they were sorely mistaken. Everything is frozen, so it's a miracle that someone managed to dig through. 15 minutes into exploring, they had to traverse some tricky terrain. 30 minutes later, the tunnel revealed branching paths extending in multiple directions. They picked a random path, walked, climbed, and descended for another hour. Whenever they find a manhole cover, Brother Lee would go up to see if they can nudge it open. Everything is blocked by snow above. The duo has been walking around for so long that they can't even remember where they came from or which direction they should go. Thankfully, they saw another batch of distribution drain pipes and a sigh from a nearby residential area. They followed the pipes until they saw some brick and mortar structures. Like a gift from the heavens, they came across a map of the underground sewer. They've been at it for half a day, but they're still just next to the neighborhood where they came from. Shushing out Brother Lee's disappointment, Han Feng whispered to turn their headlights off. He heard the sounds of vehicles speeding nearby. It was a caravan of military trucks, and they were heading in the direction of Han City's neighborhood. Han Feng and Brother Lee managed to conceal themselves in time. It's safe to assume that those things are affiliated with the special ops soldiers. They must be using those vehicles and the sewage system to ferry people to allegedly construct the utopian base. Brother Lee had the brilliant idea of following the trail to tail the trucks. Funnily enough, he knows the back door to Han City. A year ago, an old lady from Han City fell into the sewers, and he swooped in to save the day. He swore that he could still remember the way to that spot, bragging about his memory that made him a straight-A student in high school. When they arrived at the place he was boasting about, the manhole cover was frozen shut. It might be a bit off from the location, but they might as well try the other manhole up front. Brother Lee climbed and tried to force his way up 3 more times, but every single one resulted in embarrassment. When they reached the 4th and farthest cover, Brother Lee almost cried tears of joy when it budged. Thankfully, they emerged in Han City's neighborhood basement car park. Man, this series loves parking lots. Han Feng urged Brother Lee to stop bragging about finding a way in and lower his voice now that they're in unfamiliar territory. The duo stayed low and slowly crawled their way around the lot, making use of the cars as cover. Along the way, they saw some frozen corpses and obvious signs of fighting. In the back wall, a few men are slaving away to tear down the concrete with sledgehammers. Supervising them was a pair of special ops soldiers who were dissatisfied with their assignment to guard people in a crappy neighborhood with shitty food. The assault squad has no control over their deployment. It looks like Han City is already under complete control of the militaristic faction. Suddenly, the ground started shaking vigorously. The soldiers yelled at the laborers to run away as the real workforce was about to penetrate through from the other side. The wall they'd been toiling over started to crumble and crack. Before the laborers could run to safety, a massive explosion sent them flying alongside boulder-sized debris. Emerging from the other side was an overgrown baby with a shiny bald head and an unusual glimmer in his eyes. That thing was so massive it didn't even look human. It must be the one who dug the tunnel connecting to their neighborhood without anyone noticing. No matter how you look at it, Han City is a bad place to be. If the duo is discovered, they are finished. After digging a brand new tunnel, the big baby demanded his snacks, and the soldier overseeing the operation promised snacks after cleaning up the passageway. The big baby did not like the sound of that at all. With veins bulging along his neck, he struck the ground and shattered the flooring. The destruction reached all the way up to the duo's hiding spot. That's the biggest sign to get the hell out of this godforsaken place. They crawled away, careful not to attract any unwanted attention. Brother Lee was doing so well, sneaking away, until he breathed in the dust particles from the tremor. He could not hold it in and sneezed out loud. Hearing his partner jeopardize their clean escape mortified Han Feng. The soldiers took note of the bastards crawling towards the manhole and ordered the forces to give chase. Now that they're exposed, all they can do is run as fast as possible and not dwell on their mistakes. The big baby was fast. The duo had a decent head start, but the superhuman was hot on their heels. When he entered his effective range, the big baby slammed into the ground and made the sewer system fall apart. The terrain turned jagged, making it borderline impossible to continue running. With no other choice, Han Feng urged Brother Lee to just run while he stalls for time. Now should be a good time to test his abilities against another superhuman. Using the purple light, he blanketed the torn-up floors of the tunnel. The big baby marched forward and felt his boots sink into the jelly floor. He tried to lift himself out of the sinking ground, but his weight made the process super fast. He's now realizing that Han Feng is a superhuman too, someone worth capturing alive. That's going to be hard now that the young man is mixing in his green light to harden the floor that he softened. The restoration of the soil's original properties was quick and easy. The big baby was infuriated. Now he just wants to kill the dude trapping him with weird powers. Han Feng was sweating bullets. Even with his combined power, the big baby is about to break free through sheer strength and frustration. Brother Lee, who was making some decent headway in his escape, saw that his little bro was in danger. He saw some loose metal pipes strewn around the floor and was struck with an idea. With tenacious and consistent power activation, the big baby is slowly drained. Just a bit more, and Han Feng should be able to trap their sole pursuer completely. He would have won the battle of attrition if it wasn't for Brother Lee's overprotectiveness of his superhuman little bro. The boastful gangster abandoned the escape plan, grabbed the metal pipe, and burst in to contribute to the fight. With the big baby rooted on the ground, he was able to land a clean hit to that big bald head. Unfortunately, he didn't even deal damage with his full swing. All it did was anger the fat bastard even more. This is the second time Han Feng was screwed by Brother Li's blunders. The steadily weakening big baby hit his second wind, fueled by the desire to bury two pesky bugs underground. Brother Li quickly turned around and ran. Han Feng was forced to abandon his trap. The duo is back to square one. Brother Li had good intentions. He didn't want to leave his little bro alone, but it did more harm than good. After a few more minutes of endless running, they miraculously shook the oversized meatball off their trail. With the path behind them walled by loose boulders, they should be cleared from immediate danger for now. Now, they have a different set of problems to worry about. First is finding out exactly where they ended up running. Brother Li assured Han Feng that the map they had seen earlier had been firmly imprinted in his genius brain, so he'd lead the way to safety. The gangster merrily picked a path and confidently strutted forward. Han Feng was not in the least bit convinced. 10 minutes later, Brother Li yelled that he recognized the sewer layout on the left. 20 minutes after that, he continued following some random pipelines. By the 40-minute mark, he was starting to doubt his navigating skills. Thankfully, Han Feng felt a light whisper of wind coming from nearby. He finally wrestled control of where to go and followed the wind. They eventually reached a path going upwards, a literal light at the end of the tunnel. Brother Li jumped to the front and acted as though he was the one who found the exit. They climbed a wall of ice, being careful not to slip on the icy grooves. Finally, they reached the end of the line and laid eyes on the outside upper crust world. It was dark and gloomy, but the snowfall had somewhat subsided. The world they used to know no longer exists. Everything is cold and frozen in time. Brother Li jumped out of the sewer tunnel and confirmed that the surface that used to be water had already hardened. Han Feng carefully observed his surroundings and identified a structure that looked like the Ding Feng building. The Ding Feng is supposed to be the tallest structure within 5 kilometers northward of their neighborhood. That means they wasted a lot of time heading in the wrong direction after running away from danger underground. To illustrate, Xingfu District is located within the southern third ring of Hanchuan City. Right now, they are in the northern fourth ring. With the tunnels compromised, their only option is to travel on land in hopes of returning to the district. To do that, they must first pass through Jingshan District. Under current conditions, it's practically impossible to get home within the day. Once again, Brother Li bragged that he has plenty of contacts in Jingshan. They could probably find a hookup for a good meal and a place to rest. While he was prancing around the snow-covered roads, his foot slipped. Thankfully, the snow cushioned his fall. That's a sign of moving slowly, given how slippery the roads have become. As the night deepens, the snowfall gets heavier. Perhaps they need to find a decent shelter for the night. So the duo tried to cover as much ground as they could while keeping an eye out for a possible camping spot. They are about 3 kilometers out of Jingshan District, but the blizzard is getting worse. If they endured and powered through the cold for another hour, they should be able to enter a familiar territory. A few more minutes later, it became clear that they must either pick up the pace or freeze to death. To make matters worse, they saw a pair of dudes frozen to death in the middle of the road. Based on their packed bags, they seemed prepared for the excursion, but the cold trumps all. There was no food in the bag. Perhaps that's why they were trying to head out in search of supplies. This is just the new normal now. With the snowstorm continuously intensifying, perhaps it would be wiser to rest for now and continue the icy trek tomorrow. No one wants to suffer the same fate as these two frozen blokes. The duo managed to reach the Jingshan district as the snowstorm reached its peak. Interestingly, some of the villas in the area weren't buried under the snow. As they headed for one of the possible campsites, they spotted some silhouettes behind the heavy snowfall. Brother Li volunteered to go ahead first and try to talk to whoever was ahead of them. Before Han Feng could warn the gangster about the dangers of interacting with strangers, Brother Li was already gone. He was captured by 2 men. Now he has a gun pointed at his temple. With Brother Li held as a hostage, Han Feng was robbed. The young man tried to slyly grab his gun from his waist, but the robbers weren't messing around and fired a warning shot. The robbers yelled at him not to try anything funny. Then, the 2 muggers started quarreling about keeping their captives in one piece. They don't want to get stuck carrying dead weight up the hill. Han Feng was forced to surrender his firearm. A muzzle is tapping his forehead. If he fights back, he might be able to handle and heal one shot to the head with his ability. But going down that route would certainly end up in Brother Li's death. So, he surrendered peacefully, and they were escorted up to a hill. The robbers were patting themselves on the back for successfully apprehending some captives who had guns. Han Feng tried to act deferentially. They've already surrendered all the supplies and equipment. It should be safe to let them go now, right? But the robbers have different plans for the 2. Han Feng reckoned that they might be heading into a cannibalistic den as backup food supplies. Still, this is actually a pretty good spot to be in. From the top of the hill, one can basically observe the entirety of Hanchuan City. When they reached their destination, one of the robbers opened a villa gate with an automatic fob. That means this place still has power. Given that the inner city's electricity had long since been cut off, the villa must be powered by a generator. Even though everything is frozen and covered in snow, the quality of the villas in this place is obviously high. Much to Han Feng's surprise, defensive structures were even constructed around the house. At that moment, a devilish plan sprung into his mind. If they can get rid of these incompetent captors, he could turn this place into a fortress with the help of the little demon king. His sly giggle at the notion was noticed, and it earned him a crispy slap on the back of his head. Finally, the robbers ordered them to finish digging near the protective wall. If they did as they were tasked to do, the robbers promised to let them go and even return their supplies. All they have to do is keep their heads down and stop trying to pull any tricks. Kaozi, the bigger and dumber one, was assigned to the first shift of watching the new manual workers. Big Kaozi over here is actually starting to get annoyed at how bossy the smaller one is. He turned to the captives and threatened to fire at will if they didn't start getting to work. When asked to at least remove the cuffs, Kaozi snapped and pressed them to dig with the cuffs on. So, Brother Li and Han Feng did as they were told. The superhuman and the gangster were reduced to simple laborers. It is uncertain whether the bastards would even keep their word and let them go after the job is done. Han Feng looked around the massive yard and saw a huge pile of snow near a truck. Upon closer inspection, he found a bunch of frozen legs, arms, and other body parts sticking out of the pile. This does not bode well for them. Han Feng quietly pointed out the pile of frozen corpses to Brother Li. The hardcore gangster almost passed out when his brain finally comprehended that he was looking at dead people. It is possible that their captors were the ones who made that pile of death. One thing's for sure, they can't just sit and wait for their own deaths. Han Feng devised a quick plan and relayed it to Brother Li for execution. After they went over the details, the plan kicked off with the two yelling and hurling insults at one another. They acted as though they were fighting about their shoveling methods, making the work much harder than it was supposed to be. Kaozi took note of the scuffle, aimed his gun at the two, and urged them to get back to work. The duo continued bickering, completely selling the act. Finally, Kaozi gave up trying to stop them from arguing, but asserted that the digging must be done before the sun sets. As soon as he nonchalantly turned his back on the duo, the wrangling abruptly stopped. Kaozi slowly walked back to his post, unaware that the flat side of a shovel was about to strike the back of his head. The bigger captor is down, and the duo just regained a firearm. Inside the villa, the smaller robber is sitting comfortably with a dirty magazine in hand. He was practically drooling at the pages, thinking that no one was going to interrupt his gooning time. Before he could get his pecker out, a light flashed in his face. He looked up at a gun's muzzle, staring him down. The duo waved the handcuffs provocatively and teased the robber for being such a gooner. Within just a few hours, the situation was completely reversed. The captors are now the captives. According to them, they are just debt collectors who came by the villa before everything went apocalyptic. They swore to their gods that the pile of corpses outside had nothing to do with them. They might be hardened debt collectors, but they draw the line at massacring dozens of people. Han Feng holstered the gun. He believes their story. Since the pair of robbers aren't too bad, they can freely go now. Brother Li did not buy the story at all. He thinks they shouldn't let such threats go. Well, Han Feng promised freedom. Of course, that comes with a little stipulation. Kaozi and his gooner buddy were released into the biting coldness of the icy district with nothing but their underwear. It's only a matter of time before those two succumb to the elements. With that side quest taken care of, it's time to prepare for the hike back home. This day started with the plan to scout the tunnels for a bit. Due to unforeseen blunders, they have strayed from that mission and from the home base too far. Han Feng can only hope and pray that his allies back in the neighborhood are safe. Speaking of allies, Li Zhenghao has joined Nurse Jin and the little demon king inside the reinforced room. They're still anxiously waiting for the duo's return. The old man asserted that rather than worrying about the two, they should be focusing on their own situation. A few hours after the scouting duo had left, an army emerged from the tunnel. Among them was a baby-faced giant who could control Earth's elements. Jiang Xueyu welcomed the delegation. With the influx of powerful allies, the entire district is officially under Mr. Jiang's command. Naturally, that makes Zheng Hao's faction the public's #1 enemy. Right now, Jiang Xueyu must be turning the entire building upside down, searching for Zheng Hao. The old man can only laugh at the stupidity of the residents. That army didn't come to this place as saviors. They won't even realize that they've been sold out until the day they die. The little demon king spoke like a normal person for once. She believes that the residents are just choosing to obey for a higher chance of survival in this chaotic world. Humans are simple creatures like that. After dropping some philosophical truth, she dozed off, and Nurse Jin covered her with a blanket. Somehow, the idea of choosing to be obedient reminded Li Zhenghao of his life. He used to be a formidable boxer. He was a champion celebrated by many. Even so, losses are unavoidable. In the four corners of that ring, he is a warrior, a vulnerable one. In his corner was his trainer, who did nothing but hurl verbal abuse while he was getting pummeled black and blue. All that trainer cares about is getting that coveted victory. He molded Li Zhenghao into the man that he is, and he could easily take everything back just as fast. As an old man, memories of those days still haunt his mind. Zhenghao turned to the girls and urged them to get ready to move. Jiang's dogs must be going unit by unit in search of people who oppose him. They can't stay in one place for too long. Unfortunately for them, it's a little bit late to transfer locations. The unit's reinforced door was forcefully smashed open. Zhenghao, Nurse Jin, and the Little Demon King are completely exposed. It's a mystery how they have been discovered so quickly. Well, that's because the overgrown superhuman baby sniffed them out and is drooling at the sight of his targets. Down in the basement, the military people quickly got to work organizing the massive boxes of mystery sausages and loading them onto trucks. The man in charge of the faction received a headcount report. In total, they will be transporting 97 refugees and 126 boxes of food supplies. Delivering that many assets back to their base should not be a problem. The scarred faction captain smoked his cigar and asked about the 3 special ops soldiers he sent as an advanced party. Mr. Jiang fearfully confessed that the soldiers were killed by a man named Han Feng, washing his hands of any fault. Hearing that his boys died obviously ticked off the scar dude. Jiang Xueyu elaborated that Han Feng is a superhuman. His men would corroborate the story about the dude using some sort of light-based power. To prove that he's a good partner, Mr. Jiang brought up the fact that he did the dirty work and made those sausages with mystery meat. Before his tongue could slip and say something that should be left unsaid, Captain Scar shut him up. Mr. Jiang is desperate to prove his worth for the sake of his personal safety. Captain Scar is actually very pleased with his contribution. He's done enough to be considered one of the boys, and Captain Scar doesn't touch his boys without a good reason. For now, he will send someone to find this Han Feng fella for a stern interrogation. You see, he hates liars. The sleuth he sent to track down the alleged superhuman was none other than the big baby. After busting the door open, the simple brute asked if Han Feng was around. Li Zhenghao grabbed the Little Demon King and shielded Nurse Jin with his body. Anyone who could destroy the door reinforced by Han Feng's power is bad news. More alarmingly, Li Zhenghao's instincts are telling him to flee. The overgrown baby in front of him is giving off the stench of a wild beast. His years of fighting experience is telling him that he won't stand a chance in a brawl. They need to get the hell out of this room. The old man tried to shatter the window using his elbow, but almost shattered his bone upon impact. Unfortunately, the glass was included in Han Feng's strengthening project. Since they can't find a convenient escape route, Zhenghao urges the girls to run away while he tries to hold off the beast. Before things get crazy, Nurse Jin calmly approaches the big baby and insists that they don't know anyone called Han Feng, so there must be some sort of mistake here. Surprisingly, the beast bought her innocent act and even apologized for making a fuss. Nurse Jin breathed in relief while Li Zhenghao was speechless. On the way out, the big baby double-checked the unit number posted outside and read number 1804. He was on the right floor after all. That girl just lied to his face. Big baby slammed his palms into the ground and made the entire floor tremble and shake. Li Zhenghao grabbed onto the window and found that it could slide open. He hurriedly grabbed the girls and tossed them outside the snowy view. Before falling, Nurse Jin saw the beast inches away from trampling the old man. If there's one thing the big baby hates, it is dishonest people. From the 18th floor, the girls made a free fall down to the snowy ground. While the neighborhood is in chaos, Han Feng and Brother Li have just discovered a fun way to get back home. Freaking snowboards! Every blunder Brother Li had committed since they left had been forgiven because of this sick snowboarding idea. Of course, he couldn't resist bragging about how he used to negotiate billion-dollar deals with clients in ski and snowboarding resorts. The boards made the travel back to Xingfu District quick, fun, and easy. They finally arrived outside the neighborhood and are now trying to find a window to sneak back into. At that moment, the eruption from the 18th floor and the subsequent fall of the girls happened. Keeping her calm, the Little Demon King opened her storage in midair and dropped every soft and pillowy mat she had on their landing spot. In addition to the 4-story deep pile of snow below, the girls made quite a bang with their landing. They almost fell on the duo below. Thankfully, the mats in the snow were enough to absorb the shock from their fall. Han Feng jumped into the crater they made to help them up, confused as to what was happening. Nurse Jin detailed how a monster suddenly broke into the unit, muttering Han Feng's name. Speaking of that monster, it looks like he's not patient enough to take the stairs himself. Running purely on adrenaline, Nurse Jin grabbed Han Feng and their chibi mascot out of the snow crater. The beast doesn't like being called a monster. He is a good baby. Just when Han Feng thought he was safe from the tunneling beast, he encountered the same big baby on the surface so soon. Straining over her limit, Nurse Jin yelled at the deadweights to try running by themselves. While the group runs, they all turn to Han Feng for a quick plan to ditch the monstrous pursuer. They are on the brink of a very painful fate. The big baby is hungry, and he wants to snack on human flesh. Finally, Han Feng was struck with an idea. He stopped running, urged the other 3 to continue ahead, and fished something inside his pocket. He found a bag and wound up before doing a baseball throw enhanced by his green light. He threw the bag for the big baby to snack on. The contents of the bag quickly reacted with the green light, visibly growing at a stupendous rate. The big baby welcomed the bag with his mouth open. He bit down like a starving animal and tasted some delicious soybeans. Han Feng apologized for what was about to happen before his green light was completely triggered. The hundreds of seeds inside the big baby's mouth and throat expanded and grew into full-grown plants. Wild vines and leaves exploded out of the monster's orifices in a vicious fashion. As expected, the big baby started choking on those beanstalks, making it hard to breathe. He had to grab the leafy obstructions and pull them out of his maw. The forceful yanking drew some blood from inside his throat, painting the white snow on his feet. His anger for Han Feng continues to rise. He's been getting outplayed left and right. The big baby barked his threats, but his mortal enemy had already vanished. Like the child that he is, he throws a tantrum on the snow. He looked like a spoiled brat who denied his snacks. Finally, the special forces got their asses out of the basement to line up and lock down the perimeter. Captain Scar gave his men a brief pep talk. In a world filled with deadly ice and nowhere to hide, they should be able to smoke some rats out. He made a beeline to his injured star pupil with curiosity. The big baby recounted what happened and how the beans instantly grew inside his mouth. Captain Scar's interest was piqued. With Han Feng's ability, the food shortage problem can be easily solved. He radioed his men who had captured the old man from upstairs, his mind working on a plan to lure the superhuman out. The group managed to run away and put some decent distance between them and the pursuers. Nurse Jin recounted everything that happened while Han Feng and Brother Li were out on their scouting mission. She warned Han Feng about being specifically targeted by that anomalous monster. Someone who can easily destroy reinforced doors and walls is someone to be wary of. After all, Han Feng's strengthening managed to endure even against explosives. Nurse Jin's tears almost fell when she recalled how Li Zhenghao sacrificed his safety just to save the girls. Han Feng coldly accepted that it was highly likely that Zhenghao was dead. All they can do is move forward so his sacrifice won't go to waste. Both Nurse Jin and the Little Demon King refused to buy into his pessimism. They want to rescue the old man. Even Brother Li agreed that they should repay Li Zhenghao. Well, it's not that Han Feng doesn't want to go back. It's just hard to jump in and risk their life with a minimal chance of survival. The girls were right. Li Zhenghao is still alive, albeit beaten within an inch of his life. They paraded the injured old man around the snow while Captain Scar spoke through a megaphone. He's certain that Han Feng and his group are hiding nearby. Captain Scar assured the group that what happened earlier was just a big misunderstanding. Seeing Li Zhenghao being paraded in the snowy streets, Nurse Jin nearly jumped out of their hiding spot. Captain Scar wants Han Feng to join his organization. As long as he's willing to team up, his wife, kid, and brother will all receive proper treatment for an official. That announcement confused the group. It sounds like the enemies have some inaccurate info. Seeing no response at all, Captain Scar turned to the old man and asked if Han Feng was the heartless kind who wouldn't care whether his brother lived or died. Li Zhenghao chuckled and revealed that he had just met the kid a few days ago. That earned him a rough smacking. Captain Scar couldn't believe that this fool risked his life to protect some girls he barely knew. Zhenghao added that Han Feng had also just met those girls a few days ago. They're not his wife and daughter. Captain Scar couldn't believe that he was working with some faulty intel, so he changed his strategy. He tried convincing Han Feng to stop risking his life for strangers. If he's interested in girls, he can just pick as many as he wants from the base camp. For a second, Han Feng almost jumped at that golden opportunity. Brother Li and Nurse Jin had to calm him down. Since the grown-ups are so unreliable, the Little Demon King stepped forward with a plan to help Uncle Zhenghao. Down in the streets, Captain Scar is stepping on the old man's broken arm, torturing him for more information. Unfortunately for these military dogs, Zhenghao is one resilient son of a gun. Instead of answering, he's more interested in asking questions about this so-called base instead. Captain Scar parroted the vague answers everybody else gave, saying that their camp was saving people, a noble sentiment that normal people would not understand. Zhenghao laughed. That cookie-cutter answer was obviously a rehearsed lie. Well, since he's dying soon anyway, Captain Scar sat closer to his ear and whispered the real answer. In the frozen urban areas, what living creature is still thriving and is plenty in number? A population so huge that they can be hunted and eaten freely. Zhenghao already suspected the worst, but hearing it from the culprits was still bone-chilling. These monsters are gathering residents as cattle for slaughter. The living consumes food, and the dead become food. Just as Captain Scar was about to blow Zhenghao's brains out, a bunch of random stuff, big and small, started falling from the sky. Upon closer inspection, the soldiers marveled at the rain of cigarettes, alcohol, and food. There were fresh vegetables and meat mixed in there, too. The big baby led the charge as the soldiers ran up to the snow to grab whatever they could get their hands on. Captain Scar tried to stop his men from going crazy. He fired his pistol in the air to regain control of his boys, but it was ineffective. He raised his vigilance. This is a textbook distraction. At any minute now, the enemy will definitely launch some sort of ambush. Sounds of crushing and cracking caught his attention from a distance. The walls of a nearby building crumbled as a giant bulldozer drove through, leaving an enormous hole. In the driver's seat was Han Feng, ready to get his hands bloody. From the Little Demon King's perspective, her plan goes as follows. First, she will sprinkle some alluring fodder from the sky to attract the starving sheep. That means she's going to throw a bunch of random shit to create chaos amongst the soldiers. Han Feng will then attack the flock of sheep with his metal beast form, rescuing their injured comrade. That means they will break through using a bulldozer to save Li Zhenghao. Unfortunately, Han Feng is the only one in the group who can decipher her delusions of grandeur. With the plan established, the four moved according to the Evil Eye's enlightenment. Disregarding how simple and crude the plan was, they're not even sure if the soldiers would take the bait. As for that metal beast, she already has one store in the storage dimension. Han Feng never would have thought that his evening would be spent driving a big-ass construction machinery. Driving such a powerful thing felt good, though. The dozer made a clean landing, plowing through the thick snow like it was nothing. He swiftly turned in the direction of the soldiers and neatly pushed them away using the front blade. The soldiers were way too busy with scrounging loot to care about being swept away. Captain Scar turned to his big baby. He's their only hope to deter that dozer. As ordered, the baby-faced superhuman jumped in front of the barreling vehicle. With the belief that there's no one stronger than himself, Big Baby pushed against the dozer. Han Feng knows how strong the Big Baby is, but trying to have a contest of strength against heavy-duty machinery is just insanity. Using the front blade, he caught Superhuman off guard, flipping him into the air in one lift. After what must have been a dozen spins, his head dug into the snow. Captain Scar demanded that Han Feng stop, or he would blow Li Zhenghao's head off. Inside the dozer's cab, Han Feng couldn't hear anything from outside. So he drove forward, unafraid of Captain Scar's empty threats. It was a game of chicken, and Captain Scar lost. He dived away from the collision course while praising the young man's ruthlessness. All that's left to do is pick up the old man and get the hell out of here. The rescue operation was a massive success. Next up is the getaway scheme. From inside the cab, Han Feng used his purple light to soften the surface where Zhenghao was lying down for a more comfortable ride. With comfort taken care of, they sped up into one of the other skyscrapers nearby. Han Feng gave the signal to the others, and they picked up. Brother Li, Nurse Jin, and the little mastermind broke through one of the building's windows and boarded the bulldozer's roof. As they sped off to the distance, the soldiers finally recovered, picked up their guns, and rained down on the metallic beast. They quickly boarded their armored jeeps and trucks to chase after the group that dog-walked them with such a simplistic plan. They were firing with vengeance, but their aim could use a lot of work. Captain Scar is practically screaming at his driver's ears to speed up. Unfortunately for them, the snow pileup on the roads had become too thick. Their tires are losing grip, and increasing speed is impossible. They are up against a giant bulldozer that can just barrel through any sort of obstacle in its way. It's a massive mismatch. Even their camp only has a few of those valuable things. Actually, by the looks of it, the bulldozer is their property. It was the one used by the advanced party. That only served to infuriate the captain even harder. No matter how hard they tried to keep up, the lost grip was way too disadvantageous. One of their jeeps swerved and made a mess of the road, implicating the other vehicles and forcing everybody to stop the chase. The captain's car almost blew up from a loose gas canister that flew to their windshield. Looking ahead, they found a bunch of appliances and junk littering the road, obstructing their only path. The Little Demon King had to step in and save the day once more by throwing another batch of random shit on the road, this time as a deterrent. She stood on the dozer's roof, extremely pleased with her contribution to this mission, making the enemies despair before her power. She looked badass until the cold made her sneeze adorably. The group drove for a few more hours, making it certain that no one could tail their trail. The rest of the group had long since entered the cab with Han Feng, and it was crammed in there. Brother Li wants to get a turn in the driver's seat while the old man is freezing in the back. Their next destination is the hillside villa Han Feng and Brother Li found. It's a decent place where they can camp. Everybody agreed with the plan, but the bulldozer is starting to falter. The warning on the meter is blinking, and it seems like they've run out of fuel. Thankfully, they have the Evil King's storage dimension, so Han Feng politely asked her to bring out some oil. This damn delusional freak opened her dimension and pulled out bottles and bottles of cooking oil. At least it's not baby oil, no diddy. At that moment, the dozer's engine finally died. The cab was flooded with bottles of cooking oil, and Han Feng felt a headache coming from it. He cleared up the confusion and asked the little one to take out the fuel he prepared beforehand. The Little Demon King fumbled around her storage dimension for a minute, growing more embarrassed by the second. As it turned out, She accidentally included the fuel canisters together with the fridge, sofas, and other appliances in the pile she threw to clog the road. Even the generators were lumped in. Hearing that mortified everyone. They basically ditched their valuable stuff. Han Feng had 1 year's worth of fuel ready for consumption, but now they have none. The little one tried to assuage him by bringing out natural gas for cooking. She also has buckets of coal ready for use if that helps. Han Feng can't even do anything with this trash. While holding a lump of coal, a wild idea popped into his head. Based on his extensive experiments with his powers, plants that failed to sprout turned into a coal-like flammable substance. Meat, on the other hand, turns into an unknown black liquid that has similar attributes. Since they had no other choice but to throw a shot in the dark, he demanded a metal bucket and some meat. Once everything was prepared, he used his green light on a piece of meat. While it is difficult to enhance meat the right way, failing on purpose is so much easier. A single piece of meat filled the bucket, half full of the mysterious black liquid. Everybody recoiled at the smell of the sticky substance. Han Feng has gotten used to it. He fished a lighter from his coat and set the liquid on fire. Just as he expected, the substance is highly flammable. He was pleased with himself, but Li Zhenghao was skeptical. They can't possibly replace fuel with this stuff, can they? Unless they want to ditch the bulldozer and walk in the harsh snowstorm, they have no other choice but to at least try. So, Han Feng produced a few more buckets of liquefied and putrefied meat juice. He turned the ignition key, and the hulking vehicle miraculously started. It was a revelation. Han Feng truly is a one-man survival kit. Their drive continued, plowing through the cold and dark night. Halfway through the ride, the little Demon King started offering snacks to everyone. She brought out an entire rack's worth of assorted goodies for everybody to choose from. Zhenghao asked her just how many things she had inside that bizarre storage. Then, he recalled hearing the news about a supermarket that got robbed and mysteriously emptied overnight and put 2 and 2 together. While the group munched on their preferred snacks, the hillside villa finally came into view. With the dozer, they could probably charge all the way up in one go. As soon as Han Feng tried to put the pedal to the metal, the dozer's engine finally gave in and exploded. The makeshift fuel they used might be at fault for this one. Thankfully, the dozer held on until they came close to the destination. They're just a few steps away from the comfort of a proper camp, so they made the trek while the blizzard raged. On the way up, they saw the frozen robbers that Han Feng sent out to the wild without any winter clothes on. Paying them no mind, the crew unceremoniously entered the secured villa. By the time they entered, they were shivering from the lethal cold, dangerously close to hypothermia. They found the fireplace, fed some coal into it, lit the fire, and huddled close to the heat. Now they can finally breathe. They successfully survived the hunt of Captain Scar and his elite soldiers. There is nothing more comforting than huddling around the fireplace in the middle of a deadly blizzard. Even the ever-so-serious old man smiled. He had to admit that the villa district was a great place to hole up in. The wind blows the accumulated snow downhill, so the hilltop shouldn't be buried in snow. It's also hard for intruders to climb the hill without getting spotted. The location is easy to guard and hard to attack. If they want, they can use this place as a long-term base. While Li Zhenghao was asking serious questions, everybody was busy reorganizing the furniture around. Han Feng took care of the generator, the Demon King brought out the TV, and Brother Li was gushing over a Gen 9 XPS game console. Yeah, these guys are staying for the long term. Since the generator they prepared has been thrown away, they're lucky that the previous residents of this villa had prepared and fueled a generator beforehand. Han Feng tinkered with the control system for a bit and successfully turned it on. Finally, they have the convenience of electricity again. He announced that they should have a celebratory feast tonight, but the girls were more interested in using the water heater to take a bath. Nurse Jin was particularly pumped upon hearing the word bath. She admitted that she hasn't had a shower since the snowstorm started, so warm water would be greatly appreciated. She got that good stink. The mental image of Nurse Jin showering made Han Feng blush like a tomato. He assured her that the bath would be a priority to set up tonight. He said that, but upon checking the basement, it looks like his work is cut out for him. The water pipes are frozen, and the pre-installed water heater is busted. The bathroom itself doesn't look too good either. Everything has been snowed in and frozen. The pipes are hopeless, but they might still be able to salvage the situation as long as a bathtub is involved. First, they set up a bunch of space heaters to surround the tub, and filled that thing with a big pile of snow. Next is the secret tool to make the dream happen, some high-powered heating rods. With the combination of multiple appliances, they managed to melt the snow into serviceable water. They've been watching the heating rods do their job, but the water is still heating up too slowly. Every time Han Feng checks, it's still basically cold water, and it's been hours. Just as he was about to pull his hand away from the temp check, a spark of electricity leaked from the heating rods jolted him. He hurriedly pulled his hand away and noticed something weird. The spark made his red light surface automatically. Upon checking again, the cold water with hard-to-melt ice has turned warm. It is highly likely that the red light has something to do with the rapid warming effect. With the tub finally ready, the girls hurriedly rushed to the bathroom. Nurse Jin happily stripped naked, exposing her holy grail. We can't show that though. The little demon king is there too, and that's just disturbing. She opened her dimensional storage and fished out a bunch of bath bombs with every fragrance available. She also has every brand of shampoo, conditioner, shower gel, skincare essential oils, and moisturizer. It's girl heaven in there. Nurse Jin couldn't contain her happiness, so she buried the demon king in her mountains. They stayed in that bath for way too long. You can't really blame them. This is heaven on icy earth. With just the girls alone and naked, Nurse Jin commented on the demon king's petite body. She actually felt insulted since she was already 21 years old. They've never asked her how old she is. They all just assumed that she was a middle schooler or something. She claimed that the power of the demon king allowed her to preserve her eternal youthfulness. She must be studied in a lab or something. Just outside the bathroom, Han Feng was eavesdropping on the girls and intently listening to the sounds of water dripping. Brother Lee came over to drag him away to play some games, and Han Feng expertly played it cool. The gangster knows when a fellow perv is on the prowl. No amount of playing it cool could convincingly mislead him. He announced that a true person would openly take a peek at the ladies' peaks without fear. In fact, he would gladly do it right now. Han Feng had to drag him away from that bathroom door before he did something criminal. The boys settled by just playing video games in the comfort of the living room while Li Zhenghao watched. He couldn't believe that the young guns were still in the mood to play games in such a grim situation. The way the duo sees it, they have everything they could ask for. Who wouldn't be in the mood to kick back and play? They are going to stay in this villa for quite a long time. If they don't entertain themselves, boredom will kill them before the weather does. Han Feng knows that Li Zhenghao's background is not normal. As for himself, he just wants to live a comfortable life. As long as the old man doesn't drag everyone into trouble, he can hang and stay for as long as he wants. Since they're on the topic of his background, Li Zhenghao felt compelled to tell Han Feng his real identity. He was about to confess about his mission to investigate superhumans before the young man cut him off. Han Feng doesn't want to be implicated in anything complicated and troublesome, and he'll stand by that. The two looked at each other dead in the eye, and the old man saw the seriousness of Han Feng. He sighed and respected the young man's stance. Zhenghao swore that he would leave as soon as his arm was healed. Brother Li and Han Feng continued gaming and talking trash to each other. At that moment, the girls came out of the bath with new cutesy coats on. Brother Li wrapped his arm around Han Feng and invited him to bathe together so they could conserve water. After scuffling and struggling, Han Feng was forced to accept that this bath sharing was happening whether he liked it or not. He was forced into the water, but it admittedly felt nice. Once everyone was nice and clean, the long-awaited feast finally happened. They went all out and prepared a spread of all kinds of dishes. After stuffing themselves full of good food, everybody retreated to their rooms and had the best sleep of their lives. For the next few days after settling into the villa, Han Feng went to work and strengthened the walls, roof, and fences. Since he has all the time and the means, he also modified one of the rooms on the top floor of the villa into a fully functional shared sauna. He mainly hangs out in there to sweat and uses the massive watchtower window to observe the situation at the bottom of the hill at the same time. Today, there are a few silhouettes walking closer and closer up to their fortress. The figure limped for a minute and finally collapsed on the snow halfway through. The crew went out and grabbed the collapsed mystery man, and Brother Li surprisingly recognized him. He's known as Brother Chang, one of Director Liu's men. Han Feng had also met this guy before. Director Liu is that intimidating gangster who sold him a gun. A few hours later, Chang woke up with a severe headache, confused as to where he was. He looked around and saw Brother Li. He just got even more confused. Chang also recognized Han Feng even though they only met once before. Once the dude calmed down, they finally convinced him to share his story. A few days ago, their office was ambushed by a group of nasty soldiers. A lot of his brothers were hurt or lost their lives. Hearing such alarming news, Brother Li was riled up. He urgently demanded to know what happened to the director. You see, Director Liu followed Han Feng's advice and stockpiled supplies before everything went to shit. They had enough to tide through the crisis for a long time, and the director generously helped hundreds of residents in need. Everything was going great until they were attacked by a group of soldiers a few days ago. They stole supplies and wantonly killed and shot everyone in sight. To protect the civilians, Director Liu gathered his men and led them to a fight to the death. Most of the brothers were injured or worse. The director himself got shot in the leg and was captured by the invaders. Without their leader, the brothers scattered and agreed to meet at another location where most of the supplies were kept. That location is one of the villas in this hillside region. The story made sense. No wonder Chang appeared limping at the foot of the hill. Brother Li was concerned about the director's well-being. Fortunately, it was obvious that the soldiers were trying to capture him alive. Brother Li owed that man a great favor. If it hadn't been for Director Liu, he might have died in the streets long ago. Fired up and motivated, Li dragged Chang out of the couch and demanded that they save the director together. She reprimanded the gangster for trying to drag him into a suicide mission. With just 2 people, they stand no chance against an armed battalion. The way Li Zi sees it, they should take the chance and gamble on the sliver of hope, even at the cost of their lives. Li Zhenghao overheard the story and asked if the director Liu they were talking about was from the uprising volunteer group. When he was an underground boxer, that man was the one who paid his ransom, brought him out of the seedy underworld, and allowed him a second chance in life as a free man. If they are going on a rescue mission to save that dignified man, Li Zhenghao will gladly lend them his strength. He still has quite a few connections in the city. If he can get in contact with them, they can have the manpower needed. Chang finally recognized Zhenghao as the wild dog of the boxing arena, the legendary fighter with 30 consecutive victories under his belt. Han Feng laughed at the old man's corny nickname. Even Zhenghao felt awkward upon hearing that moniker. So, 3 people threw their hats in the ring to rescue Director Liu. Han Feng just sat silently in the corner. He couldn't believe that the gangster who sold him his guns was such a righteous guy. Nevertheless, he has no reason to risk his life for a stranger. So, he preemptively announced that he would be staying inside the safety of his villa. He might not be able to contribute directly, but he won't let the 3 go out into the wild empty-handed. Also, he wanted to remind Zhenghao and Li Zi to keep the superhuman shenanigans secret for obvious reasons. While Chang was recuperating, Han Feng took care of the guy within reason. They can't bring out lavish food today, or they might incur suspicions. They even prepared the most basic room imaginable for Chang, so as not to look too extravagant. When the day of their departure arrived, each bag was packed with plenty of supplies, guns, and ammo. Han Feng could understand the demand for firearms and ready-to-eat food. What confused him was Chang's request for so many cigarettes. Outside of the world, fiat currency is useless now. When major factions exchange supplies, they usually use cigarettes as solid currency. Equipped with some skis, Han Feng saw the 3 off with a smile. Chang bowed in gratitude to brother Han and sister-in-law Jin. He swore that the uprising volunteer group would repay this generous favor. It took Nurse Jin a few moments to understand that the guy mistook her for Han Feng's wife. Upon realization, she blushed, her face heating up so hot it could melt the ice around her. With just Han Feng and the 2 girls in the villa, he felt more driven to keep everyone safe. To have better surveillance around the hill, he installed some cameras around the perimeter. He riddled the whole neighborhood with CCTVs so he could have a clear visual of anything that happened around the area. With security taken care of, he returned to a carefree daily life filled with snacks and video games. Today, Nurse Jin came running and screaming out of the kitchen with a knife in hand. She trembled as she tried to explain what happened to little Chu Q. It was a nightmare. They are now down to their last head of cabbage. Han Feng demanded to know just how many more essential fruits and vegetables they had in stock, and Chu Q answered that they still had a lot. By a lot, she means about 3 carts. She doesn't really like vegetables that much, so she didn't grab too much when she emptied the supermarket. The only vegetable she loves is cucumbers, so she has a shit ton of those. This is a big mistake. They have been using and consuming supplies without doing a proper inventory check. If this goes on, they might run out of fresh supplies. As of now, Han Feng can only use his powers on soybeans, wheat, broccoli, and meat. Every other product he tried ended up as an utter failure. With the last cabbage they have left, he needs to figure out how to produce more. Everyone's health and happiness are on his shoulders. He brought the cabbage back to the living room and racked his brain for a solution. The only real option is to pray to God and hope that his green light will succeed. The first trial ended up reducing the delicious leafy vegetable into a pile of coal. He stripped another leaf and tried one more time. Without changing his crude method, he just produced more coal. He repeated this process multiple times until the cabbage ran out. Refusing to end at a loss, he moved on to carrots and potatoes. The girls just watched him from afar as entertainment. By the end of the day, he wasted every vegetable he touched without even a single fluky success. When Nurse Jin checked on him, Han Feng naturally felt horrible for turning their entire supply inedible. Little Chu-Q doesn't really mind the loss as she has her unlimited cucumber reserve. Besides, they can just make up for the nutrient deficiencies with vitamin pills. Since the superpowered route didn't work, Nurse Jin proposed that they try growing a garden. She used to grow some vegetables on her apartment balcony throughout the year. As long as there's sufficient light and proper temperature, they can make it happen. First, they need some gardening racks, soil, and nutrient fluids. They can also use LED light as a substitute for the sun. While the gardening plan is taking shape, Chu-Q, who supposedly robbed an entire supermarket, asserted that she doesn't have any of the items needed. Nurse Jin and Han Feng failed to take her incompetence into account. Outside the villa, the two tried to get some soil from the yard, but the ground was completely frozen solid, and shovels couldn't go through it all. With her superhuman strength, Nurse Jin gave it a try, and her power sent the shovel head flying into the skies. They are wasting time out here in the cold, so Han Feng proposed that they go back inside and brainstorm some more. As punishment for not having the necessities in her storage, Little Demon King was relegated to making vegetable-growing containers from plastic water bottles. Surprisingly, she was doing well. She already has a lot of finished products waiting to be filled with soil. Recycling is quite a useful skill in the apocalypse. These plastic bottles can house their future food. Since she's been doing her job diligently, Q barked at the two for the soil they were supposed to dig out. They're at the initial stages of gardening, and they're already fumbling. The frozen ground is a huge obstacle. QQ proposed the idea of using the heating rod to melt the ice covering the soil, but there might be some limit to the heating effect. If they have a way to instantly melt ice, they can steadily proceed with the plan. That sentiment sprung the Demon King up from her seat. She called the Apostle of Bathwater to use his true power. Han Feng immediately understood what she was trying to imply. Previously, his red light made the bathwater warm up in an instant. If he can figure out the principle behind that incident, he should be able to melt the frozen soil outside. He's been dipping his hand coated by the red light in a bucket of water for 20 minutes now, and it's not working at all. Han Feng tried to recall every detail that led to the creation of their warm bath, carefully examining what triggered the heat. Then it hit him. The secret lies in electrocution. He turned to the Demon King and asked for some tool that could shock him. She immediately brought out a high-power strip. When plugged in, Han Feng can just stick a finger in there, and death would be instant. She's basically trying to tell this boy to kill himself. After rifling through the storage, she finally found the perfect tool. A low-voltage self-defense electric baton, or as she calls it, a basic electromagic staff. Although the label states it only has a slight numbing effect, Han Feng still felt nervous about using it on himself. Choosing to trust the Little Demon King this time, he turned the electric baton on and dipped his hand into the bucket of water. Do not try this at home. The numbing effect was a little too strong. It made his eyes roll into the back of his head. At least it worked. The water heated up. Han Feng hurried outside, excited to electrocute himself for some soil. He doesn't quite understand the complete principle behind it yet, but he knows that it works. He put his red-lit palm against the ground and carefully stabbed the electric baton on his arm. This time he tanked the shock better, and the thick layer of ice integrated into the soil exploded and melted away. In his hand was a little puddle of warm water and some good old usable soil. Han Feng was hyped. This was the first time in a long time that he laid eyes on some normal dirt. He dug up enough to fill the makeshift pots they prepared, and the initial prep was finally done. Thankfully, Q has a lot of different seed packs in her storage. Han Feng wanted to grab a few random packs and call it a day, but Nurse Jin asserted that the temperature would make it impossible to grow most plants. As expected from a farming hobbyist, she picked out a few that could theoretically survive the cold. The crew used the empty basement for superior heat preservation and filled it with high-power LED lights and furnaces. They went all out, but the temperature was still outside the ideal range. If they can't warm the room enough, the seed will not sprout. Since they already have a pretty good setup, perhaps Han Feng could try supplementing the growth with his green light. He tried giving it a shot, completely in tune with the seed. He expertly controlled the energy and tempo like he was playing a rhythm game. Much to his surprise, it worked. He made some leafy vegetables sprout. Afterward, he used the green light on the other seeds. The results varied, and there were quite a few failures. With continuous experimentation using new seeds, Han Feng and Nurse Jin made dozens of sprouts. Unfortunately, the sprouts started dying a few days later due to the persistent cold. Even though they amped up the heaters, they can barely go up to around 10 degrees. They need to think of a way to somehow increase the room's temp to at least 20 degrees. They could add more furnaces down there, but there's a limit to what these things could do if they can't improve heat preservation. Logically speaking, the deeper underground, the better the heat preservation should be. Maybe they can dig deeper from this basement. Nurse Jin agreed with the idea. With her monstrous physical strength, adding another lower floor to the house should not be a problem. Before they resort to manual labor, Han Feng wants to test if he can expedite the process using his light. He knows that green and red are practically useless against concrete. Maybe he could use purple's softening capabilities. As expected, it was quite effective. Unfortunately, the softened stones might look and act like mud, but they remain as hard as they originally were. At his wit's end, Han Feng tried combining all three of his light arsenal, rearranging the orders of combination, and changing the rhythm of energy output. Unfortunately, they were all failures. Failure turns plants into coal and meat into fuel. Stone, on the other hand, doesn't change its properties. Perhaps this is the difference between organic and inorganic matter. A few days of continuous failures passed, and Han Feng reached his limit. Out of frustration, he smashed his red light-coated fist onto the floor. He found that when the intensity of the red light goes past a certain level, It can shatter anything on its path. To put this discovery into action, he set the plant sprouts aside and started tearing the floor apart. He fully released the red light, expanded the range as much as possible, and slowly increased the intensity. It was a great success. He managed to do a controlled demolition of the flooring with great precision. The rocks that have been giving him a headache for the past few days finally caved in. The effect was terrific. The downside is the toll it takes on his body. Disintegrating a small plot of the floor sent him groveling in exhaustion. Now, he has to get used to using this power as many times as he can every day. With the discovery of the fastest method, Han Feng took charge of digging the hole. Nurse Jin pitched in by using her muscles to transport the shattered rocks outside. The whole operation took a whole week to finish. The team dug 10 meters below the basement and formed a new 20 square meter room. After some vigorous remodeling, the underground greenhouse was finally completed. Han Feng and Nurse Jin felt gratified to see their hard work give home to their little garden of sprouts. Next up will be Han Feng's favorite segment of the past few days. Whenever they climb up to the first basement using the narrow stairs, he always lets Nurse Jin go first so he can savor the sweet view of victory. He is one of us. If everything goes well, they should be able to enter harvest season in 2 months' time. They started this little project 2 weeks ago. Their last stock ran out 4 days ago, and the three have been eating tons of broccoli since then. Han Feng can't possibly endure those green bastards any longer. But he has no choice. That's one of the veggies he can reliably grow with his green light. Maybe they could try planting some bean sprouts. Those things are quick to grow and ready to eat. Or maybe Han Feng can eat some ass coming from above. Nurse Jin's foot slipped, and a pillowy cushion descended upon his face. He was caught off guard and wasn't able to savor the experience. When they got back up to the basement, Han Feng repeatedly assured Nurse Jin that he was fine. He's bleeding out of his nose, but there's a decent chance that this is not because of the crash. Nurse Jin tried to take a look at his heavy bleeding, but he was too embarrassed to let that happen. When they ascended back to the living room, they were greeted by a very weird scene. Qiu drew an occult symbol on the carpet and put a laptop in the middle as she danced and chanted. It sounds like she's trying to summon the so-called fifth evil eye. That's what she calls one of the CCTV feeds. She's trying to repair one of their cameras using magic. Their villa is situated along a cliff and a steep cliff. As long as their cameras are installed on the hill path, they basically have the complete lay of the land. Nurse Jin and Han Feng skid down to the affected camera to do some upkeep. Due to the increasingly troublesome snowstorms, the CCTVs have been malfunctioning a lot more often as of late. While Han Feng was replacing the compromised camera, a faint explosion sounded near enough to alarm them. The visibility outside is severely limited, so it's hard to determine the source. Han Feng dismissed it as nothing too worrying. There are definitely people on the other side of the hill, but they should be fine as long as they mind their own business. In the afternoon the day after, Han Feng woke up and went about his routine. The first thing he did was descend to the second basement and conduct some experiments. After all, the only thing on his mind is speeding up their garden's progress. He got started by sprouting new seeds, but getting the hang of the tempo was quite difficult. He found that the rhythms he can use for certain plants tend not to work on different ones. For every kind of veggie, he has to restart from scratch and figure it out anew. He kept on practicing and doing trial and error for half an hour. Today is a bad day to have a plant in the garden. In just 30 minutes, Han Feng turned most of their sprouts into coal. Thankfully, he didn't touch the first batch of vegetables close to being harvested. Maybe he's overdoing it. Maybe he only needs a very faint usage to speed up plant growth. Risking their progress, he tried exposing the first batch to just a little bit of green light for another half hour. He's careful not to overexpose the greenery, so he only uses limited lighting every day. On the 5th day, the crew's hard work finally bore fruit, veggies in this case. Holding the giant Chinese cabbage pot in his hand, Han Feng could not stop smiling. Weirdly enough, he grew a radish shaped like a foot and tomatoes that looked out of this world. The worst one is the absolute chungus of a green cabbage isolated in a corner. Sure, the vegetables enhanced by his green light microdose look weird, but at least they're all healthy. In their circumstance, they would get anything edible, no matter what it looked like. That radish foot is very sussy though. They cooked most of their harvest and had an all-vegetable feast. All that busy work for 2 weeks was devoured in a single sitting, and it was totally worth it. Even Demon King had changed her mind about gardening. She wants to grow strawberries and honeydew for next time. Among all the veggie dishes, their only leftover was a bunch of sautéed green cabbage from that giant thing. No one wanted to touch that stuff anymore. They simply have too much of it. Moments like this remind Han Feng of Brother Li. That guy could probably finish whatever you put in front of him without complaints. It's already been 2 weeks since he ventured downhill. The food supplies they left with are probably depleted by now. All Han Feng could do was hope for their safety. While they were finishing the feast, another explosion boomed from afar. Today is the 6th day that they've been hearing such alarming sounds. Confident in their pristine location, it's not too big of a worry. The explosions only happen once a day anyway. 3 days later, the blasts ramped up exponentially. This time a barrage of detonations shook the hillside. It's gotten so bad that it is messing with Han Feng's peaceful life. Those annoying eruptions are getting under his skin. Finally, he grabbed a ladder and climbed to the villa's roof to scout what exactly was happening down there. Even with the help of his binoculars, Han Feng could not make out what was happening in the other icy hills. He wonders who's brave enough to cause such wild commotion. The culprit must not be afraid to reveal their location. Although there's still quite a bit of distance from the villa, if the bombing continues to get closer, it will definitely prove troublesome. Han Feng doesn't want to test if his strengthening can withstand a full-on blast. The problem is their wall. It's a bit too low and thin. Maybe he should do some more remodeling. Although what's happening out there is still a mystery. Upgrading their walls to be taller and thicker, just in case, sounds like a good plan. QQ doesn't have any cement in her storage, so conventional means are not an option. Thankfully, they already have the materials ready to use piled up nearby. They have tons of rocks lying around, dug up from the basement. First, they pile up the stones neatly. Then, you just pour some water over that thing. Before long, the water will freeze and form a pretty strong ice wall that will never melt. With the temperature at a constant low, an ice wall filled with stones can even be stronger than a regular cement wall. The Three Stooges went all out on this new project. They build taller and thicker, each one playing their role diligently. When the stones ran out, Han Feng got some more by tearing down the empty villas next to theirs. With non-stop hard labor, they completed the giant ice wall in just 3 days. They built that thing so tall that it covered the whole house. They can finally rest easy for now. The bombers didn't even give them a moment to appreciate their handiwork. The explosion started once more. This time, the blasts are near enough to be clearly visible from the villa. To make matters worse, the blast epicenters are getting nearer with every explosion. The bombing increased in volume. The next one hit one of the villas in the neighborhood. The blast sent debris flying all over the hillside. Some of them even hit the newly constructed ice wall. Up on the roof, Han Feng was grazed by a tiny wild stone. That little thing flew so fast that it cut his cheek. They're lucky to have finished the wall when they did. It could have been really bad if they hadn't. Han Feng hurried back inside the house and urged the girls to get to the second basement. They hid in the underground garden for exactly half a day before heading back up. On the second night, while he was bathing, the bombardments restarted and nearly drowned him in shock. He had to hurry to the basement with just a towel to cover his junk. On the morning of the third day, the villa right next to theirs got blown to bits, and one of the bombs directly hit the ice wall. In the afternoon of the fourth day, Han Feng was about to drop a bomb in the toilet when the real bombs made him pucker back up. To make matters worse, he almost exposed his Johnson to the Demon King. On the fifth day, he's finally had enough. Han Feng grabbed his sniper rifle and put on ski gear, ready to venture out into the war zone. They've been hiding in the basement every day. They can't eat, drink, or sleep properly. It is torturous. Armed to the teeth, pissed off, and absolutely dripped out of his mind, Han Feng intends to find out who's the madman turning the icy world into their personal bomb site. He reminded the girls to take care of themselves and follow their protocol until he gets back. The ski down the hill went on without a hitch. On the way down, Han Feng saw the destruction caused by those bombardments up close for the first time. He found remnants of military uniforms scattered around the area, a sign that the military might be involved. Maybe that Big Baby and Captain Scar are mixed into this bullshit. As he went farther and farther into the center of chaos, Han Feng saw more and more blown-up corpses along the way. To be safe, he decided to go to higher ground to observe the situation below. The higher he got, the worse the cold got. It was very tough on his lungs. Looking through the binoculars, he found a huge cave that looked like a secret military facility of some sort. Hidden up in the walls were a bunch of cannons. Maybe those are the source of his headache for the past few days. Outside the cave's entrance, the soldiers were acting sneaky as though their enemy was inside. Then, they entered the complex while letting their trigger fingers go nuts. Maybe this is some sort of internal strife. Before the soldiers could fully funnel into the cave, they were vigorously blown out by a domineering invisible force. One soldier was pushed out high enough to land where Han Feng was spying. When he carefully looked at the poor sap, all he saw was a pile of mangled body parts. It seems like that group of soldiers got wiped out in just a few seconds. Turning his attention back to the cave, Han Feng saw a group calmly walking out. There were 3 of them, a little girl with a bazooka in hand, a little boy who had some decent drip, and a white-haired woman wearing glasses and a stylish coat. For a split second, she looked as though she had just detected something interesting. The woman looked directly at Han Feng's concealed position and smiled, her purple eyes bewitching. This is peak mommy design, if you ask me. Han Feng felt his blood run cold. He was hundreds of meters away and above her, but he felt like a helpless prey being hunted. Han Feng stayed in a prone position. No survival instincts at all. When he looked through the binoculars a second time, He saw the little girl holding the bazooka aiming at him with an unhinged smile. She pulled the trigger and blew up the top of the hill he was hiding on. Fortunately, he managed to slide out of the blast radius in the nick of time. It is basically confirmed that he was spotted from afar somehow. Those three are bad news. Han Feng decided to hide further before deciding on his next decision. Following the explosion, sounds of gunfire filled the air. There were still some surviving soldiers trying to hold their ground against the trio. They are fearfully retreating while emptying their mags. Unfortunately for these helpless soldiers, the little boy is there to cut their escape route by manipulating the snow to surge like a tidal wave. He did so while wearing a blank expression on his face. When he pressed down harder, the snow imploded and caused a massive icy blast. Han Feng has to accept that he is out of his depth at this point. The implosion caused an avalanche, and he was in no position to dodge this one. Tons of snow came rampaging down the hill unimpeded. It went on for seemingly forever until the terrain was altered. Once things have calmed down a little bit, a red spark can be seen leaking out of the snowy surface. Using his red light, Han Feng managed to dig his way out of the deadly pile with another person in tow. He almost got smothered to death, but he survived with quick thinking. Now he's dragging an unconscious soldier down the snowy path. Luckily, he spotted a dam and moved to use it as cover. Otherwise, he would have been pressed down by that white mass, miserably dragged to his death. That little nonchalant boy must have the ability to control ice and snow. That's the most overpowered ability in this apocalyptic snowscape. Hopefully, the soldier he rescued will be able to provide him with some useful information about that three-person army. Han Feng walked around for a little bit and finally found a building high enough not to be completely buried by the snow slip. He dragged the soldier into a derelict room and tied that dude up for safety. Now that they're out of danger, Han Feng slapped the man with his gun for a wake-up call. When the soldier opened his eyes, he immediately folded and begged for his life. Han Feng hasn't even asked his questions yet, and the dude is already down to snitch. He had thought of so many interrogation methods. It's a bummer he won't be able to use them today. Han Feng pulled out a chair and demanded to know about that woman and those kids who dog-walked an entire military complex. The soldier shuddered at the mention of his worst nightmare. Those three are simply inhuman. One practices ice magic, the other can release energy waves, and the last one is a walking bomb. Han Feng demanded a more thorough description of those superhuman abilities, starting with the woman. That Dami Mommy can release energy waves at the wave of her hand. With a simple gesture, she can send an entire battalion flying like loose kites. The crazy little girl is an explosion magic superhuman that can turn anything into a deadly bomb. And that boy is a menace to society. He can freely manipulate ice and snow, making him untouchable. While the soldier is cursing out the superhumans for being monstrous beasts, Han Feng is deep in thought. Given his own overpowered abilities, he can't really fault those three for using theirs freely. As time goes by, more and more superhumans are cropping up left and right. Han Feng has one more question for the poor soldier boy. He wanted to know who was directly responsible for the bombing near the hillside villa. The soldiers swore that they had nothing to do with the bombardments. Their camp has long been taken over by those three monsters. Today was actually the battalion's last effort to retake the camp after getting reinforcements from their HQ. Those bombings still piss Han Feng off, but punishing the culprit might be easier said than done. The corpses that he passed by on the hills earlier were most likely killed by that woman and her gremlins. How can you even go against such an outrageously overpowered bunch? The fact that their peaceful life is being threatened by lunatics really grinds Han Feng's gears. Since he has found the answers he's looking for, he lets the soldier go freely. Afraid that he would change his mind, the soldier boy ran into the snow without even asking to be freed from his restraints. It's all good. He will never need his hands anyway. As soon as he came out to the open field, he was blown up and deleted from existence. What followed was a series of explosions that covered the general area where Han Feng was hiding. One of the bombs nearly blasted him off the face of the earth. But Han Feng managed to reinforce the wall in time to shield himself. Those bombardments weren't just random blasts. They were clearly aiming to blow him up with accuracy. He made sure to hide multiple hills away from those discerning monsters, but he still got discovered. The three-man army wasn't even in a hurry. They're still in the military complex, and the little girl is flexing the destructive abilities that she has been practicing for the past couple of days. Dami Mommy sensed that after the barrage, their target's ability signature didn't disappear. On the contrary, they became stronger. Whoever it is they are targeting, he must be powerful enough to survive both an avalanche and bombs. The woman ordered a few more explosives for good measure. If the target lives, they will make chase. They can't let a possible enemy go free. The little boy seemed unenthusiastic about the whole thing, but the crazy explosive girl was pumped. Back in his hidey hole, Han Feng slumped into his chair. Today is full of deadly close calls. He briefly considered bringing the fight to the enemies, but fighting three superhumans, 3-on-1, is a one-way ticket to hell. If he runs back home now, the bombings will probably continue. For the sake of a peaceful future, Han Feng must take it upon himself to get rid of the threat to his way of living. If you liked this video, feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description.